has approximately 25 years of teaching, research and administrative experience. He was awarded PhD from Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, for the thesis on a framework for network forensics
turn off your
in
video.
2012.
I request
He
Pradeep
completed a
to
research
please turn
project
off the video.
investigating the source of spoofed email from UCOST, Dehradun in 2016. He has co-authored a book, Fundamental of Network Forensics, a research perspective for Springer in 2016. He has guided many MTech and PhD students in security and forensics, cloud computing, big data, and IoT. He is senior member of both IEEE and ACM. He is member of Cloud Computing Innovation Council of India, CCICI,
I
and
request
Forensic Science
Pradeep to
working
please
on cloud
turn off your
computing of
video.
NIST USA. He has published many high-impact research papers in IEEE
Even
transcription,
Dr. Manoj
SCI
Kumar is
journals,
also
and
here.
conferences. I once again welcome you, sir, and invite you for today's talk. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry, plus. Hello. Hello, sir.
Yeah, hope the screen is visible.
Yes, sir, it is
Yes, sir,
visible.
it is. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we will basically I'd just like to give you an introduction on virtualization, which is the key aspect of cloud computing, because I've heard that you had an introduction on cloud computing. What is cloud computing? What are the different types of services and all? But kind of thing that I just wanted to emphasize, and of course I'll go a little fast because there are many things that I want to share with you, and let's hope that we'll try to complete. So whatever, if I am going a little fast or if you need any clarification, you can just pause me or if there is something which is not clear, right? So I'll give you a break in between and ask you any questions, right? So we can go ahead. So basically, a cloud infrastructure looks something like this. You have underlying physical infrastructure. Physical infrastructure, when we talk about kind of storage, you can have earlier we think of, when you think of storage, we think about hard disks, but it is not. When you look at storage these days, is there are two things which are used, which is called network attached storage, NAS. That is what they use. And the other thing is storage area network, SAN. Like how we have a local area network, we have what is called a storage area network. Now both these things together form what is called this physical infrastructure at the storage level. Then you have different servers which are at the compute level. We call them different processors that we look at. They are the servers, right? The servers are the compute level, and also there is network switches or routers which become the network layer. So you have physical infrastructure which comprises of storage, which comprises of network, which comprises of compute. So these three things becomes the major aspect of cloud computing. And what actually is cloud computing? If you look at, this was also there earlier also. We had storage.
Dr. Manoj Kumar,
if you talk about
am I audible to you?
Network or network attached storage,
Dr. Manoj Kumar Gupta,
a couple of years before cloud has come. So what was
Sir, I think he is not there.
to offer, or why it
I removed him actually.
So the major important aspect that we
He will rejoin and will request.
the concept of virtualization. So I want to spend a little time because if you want to understand the heart of cloud, the heart of cloud is the virtualization. If there is no virtualization, there is no cloud. Now, if you look at, I think it was introduced to you in the earlier days, in the earlier sessions on cloud computing, that what is cloud? In other words, in simple words, what is cloud? Cloud is a
We
grid
request
computing
Mr.
plus
Pradeep Das to
virtualization.
kindly turn
That is
off
what
the
is
video.
cloud, if I would like to put it. Because earlier
Mr. Pradeep Das,
also networks existed. Earlier also
Mr.
group of
Pradeep Das,
processors or group
kindly
of servers
turn off your
got
video.
together. A cluster was created.
आप अपनी
A grid
वीडियो
was
बंद
created.
कर लो
To
सर.
understand those two concepts.
आपकी वीडियो
Cluster
ऑन
is
है.
a homogeneous collection of machines, collection of servers and storage and network. And if you look
I think
at a
he is
grid,
not
it is a
getting,
collection
some
of
problem is there.
heterogeneous. Heterogeneous means
So he will rejoin, I suppose.
multiple.
Let him rejoin that.
Hardware. When you talk about physical hardware, or
So Mr. Pradeep Das,
physical
yeah, I think
if you talk about, you can have AMD processors.
he'll rejoin again. We'll see. Okay. Should we start, sir?
Like that, a variety of
Yeah, I am ready.
mechanisms are possible, right? you can
Okay, let me
you could
start
have
the
a
session.
variety of
Good morning,
that would form what is called
participants,
a grid, a
and a
cluster of
revered
machines together.
speaker
Now, cloud is
of
also
this
a cluster
session,
of machines together,
Professor T.
cluster of
Ravichandran.
storage, network, and
First of all, I would like to
compute
congratulate
together,
you all
servers,
on this
storage,
auspicious
and network
Krishna
put together.
Janmashtami.
Now, what actually
Happy Krishna
differentiated was the
Janmashtami
layer
to all.
virtualization. So hence, that is
And
something which is very
let
important.
me
Because earlier,
thank
the
Professor T.
clusters or the grid
Ravichandran for
to be
giving
what is
such a
called a data
wonderful
center, other word
session
that is used
yesterday.
for a
He had
grid
rightly addressed
or
the
a
issues
higher level
related
cluster
to
of systems is
digital
called a data
technology which
center.
we are
Because
using,
the
how that
world moved
technology
to
is
data center,
governing our
because we
minds.
moved from
And it is
being
very
simple
important to
systems to
convert
what are
threats into the
data
opportunity.
related systems.
Nowadays,
Data
the mobile phone,
inside
which has so many advantages,
the word that
has
is used
been
is
a
to
big threat to the
we moved from
youngsters.
compute centric
And this is
to
very
data centric.
important
So that's where
to
we
look
have a lot
into
of
the matter and
data lakes and
to
all these things coming in,
precisely
right?
control our
Data
minds
science
so
and a lot
that
of
we are
this
able
grew
to use this
because
technology
earlier
to our
the
benefit.
emphasis was on
And
compute
today
programming and
we'll be
this thing.
speaking on
That was an important
email
aspect. The
etiquettes.
faster the algorithms, the better.
As you are all
Now the whole
aware, in
emphasis on
this
data
COVID
because data
duration,
earlier was
we have
very rich.
witnessed what is the
Biggest data
importance
you
of
think about
digital
was MB
communication,
or
because we are at
gigabyte.
homes,
Now
we
it
are
goes into
connected with
petabytes and
nobody. Despite
exabytes
that, we
and
are
all that
connected
10
with
power 20,
everyone.
10 power
And
20
each
power
day we are
multiplied.
doing
It
all
will
the
only
things.
grow.
We are
Earlier,
communicating
we were
to
talking
our
about big
students,
data,
to
we're talking about
our fellow colleagues,
lakes.
to our
So the
business,
movement was
or whatsoever we are
what is
doing,
called
we are
data
doing
center.
it
Now a classic
through
data center
emails.
would
So
have
it is
something like
very
a
important
server
that
complex,
you should know
servers,
how to
then the
draft an
network,
effective
the
email
switches
and
and the
what
routers,
are the
right?
flaws
Then the next
that
level, the
needs
lower
to
level was
be
the
taken care
storage.
of
So these three things
while
were
we
the
draft the
main
mail.
component, and you could have an
Sometimes
operating
common
system, a
mistakes,
VMS running on
and
these
that we'll
servers,
be
and an
addressing
application
through
on top of that
wonderful
VMS. So
case
this is the
studies
classic
and
data center that
anecdotes.
we look
The
at.
beauty
Now,
of
when you
Professor
look
T.
at
Ravichandran
a
is
virtualized
that he
data
has
center,
so many
what is
examples, so
virtualized?
many
Virtualization
stories, so
is
many
where the
illustrations
compute is
that
virtualized, the
every
storage is
topic becomes so
virtualized, and the
live
network
with
is
examples
virtualized.
that we can
Now,
never
when these
forget
three things are
what he has
implemented, then you have
elaborated.
things.
So thank you,
Now,
sir.
to the
Thanks for
surprise,
taking
we will
these
look at
topics so
when did the
wonderfully.
concept
Thank
of
you, sir.
virtualization come,
So I request
or
Professor T.
when did you hear
Ravichandran
the
to
word
please
virtualization?
start with the session.
Right.
Okay.
So many of you know.
Very good
When
morning
did
to
you
all
hear
of you.
the word virtual
First
machine
check
first
whether I
time?
am audible to all of you.
I don't know whether you can
Yes, sir, you are
answer
audible.
or not.
Sir. Yeah, you are audible.
If you go
Okay.
back to your memory,
So
the first time you heard about the word virtual
somebody
machine
said
was
that
because everybody has an
in the
excuse now
chat
here.
that it is
Sir, we never
unfortunate
studied cloud
that we are
computing.
talking
We were
about
never interested in this or
effective
that.
communication in
But
digital
nobody
era,
can
and
deny
our own
that we
audience are
learned
not
Java.
following some of the
Sometime or the
norms.
other, we have had our
So
hands
as I
on
was
Java
telling
programming
yesterday, like
language. And in the
it
Java
first the
programming language,
self-awareness
we
has
came
to
across
come.
what is called a
So we
bytecode.
need to
And he
realize,
said,
just like the
bytecode
COVID
can be run
situation,
on
we
any
need to
machine. So
realize
I
that
can write the code once
we
and
need
run
to
it on
put
any
mask
machine.
and we need to take
Any
precautions
machine
so
can
that we
understand
don't
the
affect others.
bytecode.
So
And
once
any
we
machine can
develop that
understand the
civic
bytecode
sensibility that
if it has what
as
is
far
called the
as
Java virtual machine.
we are okay,
So the
we should
first
not think
time
we
the
are
word
fine. We should
virtual
also
machine was
think others
introduced,
should also be
maybe if
okay.
Java
So
came
I
in
always tell
1995, so it
that
is
in the
almost
digital
25 years old.
era,
Virtualization
what
was there. Only
Gandhiji
thing is
kept on his
virtualization
table,
was
the
not
three
applied
monkeys,
to networks
so
in
are
that sense that
still
we are
valid
applying
now.
now. So
So
hence
if
that
you
is
are
the
an
broad
audience,
difference. Now, how does
so just mute
virtualization
yourself.
help
So that
in
is
compute?
like do not
Now, let
speak,
us tell me.
and then
Let me tell you about
also
our own experience in
stop
MNIT Jaipur. Here
the
we have
video.
a data
So don't
center,
try
and in the
to
data center we have,
show
let us
yourself.
say,
And sometimes
some
I think you are not even
16 blade
knowing.
servers,
All
and
of
each of the
the people
16
are
blade
watching
servers
you, and
has
then you are
a
like in a
12
very
socket
inadvertent
CPU. Each of them
kind of
10
situation,
socket,
and people
10,
are
10
just
CPU,
looking at you, and
sorry,
it's
10
also being
sockets
shown
of,
on YouTube.
and
So
each of
be
them
very
have
careful
10
about
cores in that.
not
So
pressing
how
that
many
video
cores in
button.
all, if you
And the
count,
third one,
right? So
the
it is
most
something like,
important, is that do not press the
120
present
in each server,
button.
right?
Okay,
10,
so that is going to disturb
10
all of
sockets of
us.
12
There
cores
are
each.
around
So for 12
600
sockets of 10
participants
cores,
enrolled and
120,
around
it is 120,
300
120
are
cores there.
attending,
And
and
16
it's
such
going to
cores,
affect all of
maybe
us. So
somewhere around
keep these
900
things
to
in mind.
1000 cores, right?
With that,
Now
let me
these
go to
cores are
the
available, and
session.
these cores are available available.
And today, let us not
16 gigabytes, be it
waste much
servers,
time. Yesterday, due to
16
inauguration, we had to
different
spend some
machines,
extra time.
servers, they're all
Today, I assure you, we will
by
start
high
in
speed
time and
network.
we'll finish
So
in
that is
time
what is
also.
available. So this
So,
1900
to
cores,
start
now
with,
how many
again, we are
virtual machines
continuing
can I
with
create?
the
Simple answer
short-term
is, if
course
you give
on
only one core, you can
this
create
effective
1900 or 2000
communication
virtual
skills in
machines.
the
I think
digital
1920,
era.
I think is the exact number of cores that you can think about. So I can create, and if I divide
And
into 2 cores, then maybe half of it. If I divide into
today
4 cores,
and
even less than
tomorrow,
that. But the
Today
point is,
and tomorrow, we are
I
going to
can
focus
create
on
more
communication
virtual
skills.
machines. Why I can
Today
create more
is
virtual
different
machines?
from
Because
tomorrow.
at a given instance,
Today, we
I
are
will
going
do
to
all of them
exclusively
using at the
look
same
at
time.
netiquette.
So what can happen? We have
Okay.
given to about 3,000
And
users virtual
what are
machines.
the norms
Many
that we
times the
need to
virtual machines
follow
have been
when we are
created
using email
with a bigger
communication?
size.
Although I say
Sometimes
email
some people we have used
communication,
64
it's
cores,
going to
some people we
pertain
have
to
used 32
digital
cores, some
communication
people
in
have
general.
16
I'm
cores,
taking email
depending
communication
on
as a
their
kind of
requirement for the
case
virtual
study
machine
so
we have
that
created. So what has
knowing
happened?
mastering
The
one
compute
thoroughly
server
is
has been
going to help
virtualized.
us to
Right?
work
So
out all
what has
other
happened? The cores have been
communication
virtualized. Now, what is the
mode
advantage that
through
I have?
the
So
digital
if
one.
somebody was using in the night and somebody was using
So
in the daytime,
tomorrow we are going to
so
talk
those who
about
are using in the
effective
night time and those who
communication
are using
in
the
general
daytime, they
because
are all using the same course,
like
but they are all
yesterday I was
connected
telling
to a
you,
different virtual machine.
if you are a
So
good
virtual machine, the
communicator
word virtual
offline,
machine,
you will be a good
surprising.
communicator
What
online
is
also.
the
Okay. So in fact, when MHRD wanted to start online lessons through NPTEL and through Swayam, they actually identified people who are effective communicators already in offline, and then they translated that into online. So although I'm trying to focus more on the digital aspects, but the essentials as far as communication is concerned is going to be the same. So if you're a good communicator offline in general, you will always be a good communicator online also. Now, having said this, let us actually go to the topic, that is the importance of netiquette.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. Your voice is not
Okay.
audible now.
Now, before I start, actually, just want to, I just want to start with what we did yesterday. So yesterday, although I said so many things in general, in particular, I wanted to make certain things very clear to you, and I hope those things have become very clear. So, what are the things that I wanted you to understand clearly? First, I wanted to make it clear as how not to send bad emails. So emails which are totally ineffective, emails which actually do not create the desired end result. And I took the case study examples of my own students who came to me as an instructor asking for courses, and the kind of mistakes which they did would not actually get them the end result, despite the fact that they were following some of the typical norms of
Hello.
writing a good
Hi,
email.
Moiji, sir. I think
So, what are the things that you
sir's
should
net is
keep
not
in mind if at all you want to write
yes, yes, sir. Not the netting
good
one.
emails?
So
So,
what
use
we
of
can do, we can
formal
wait for another
salutation. Most
5-10
people
minutes.
think that
If
salutation is not
is not
required,
able to
like
join,
dear
so fine, we
sir,
can.
dear madam, respected sir, respected madam. But it is required even in emails. Avoiding excessive use of capital letters, which again I'm going to talk about it. Avoiding slang and colloquial language. Avoiding mixing up of two languages like English, Hindi and English. And using that in WhatsApp chat is fine, but you should not be using that in the formal communication. Showing regard for punctuation, spelling, and grammar, which again I am going to discuss in detail. Mailing only to the concerned person. So these are some things which again I am going to tell you in the form of etiquette norms. Now, before we start, once again I want to re-emphasize certain things that I have been telling you through another quote. Look at what Sidney J. Harris is telling about the digital era and the kind of situation that we are all caught in. So he says that the real danger is not that computers will begin to think like men. The real danger is not that computers will begin to think like men, but that men will begin to think like computers. What he means is uh, we are already moving into an
yeah,
era
am I
where
audible now?
artificial
Yes,
intelligence
sir.
is trying to get
Till
imbibed with some
where were you
human
connected?
qualities.
I
But
Your
on
voice
the other
breaking from
hand,
end side, Vibha.
human beings are
I was
slowly
talking
becoming
about
machine
where
like.
the
So
compute was
that
divided, right?
Sidney Harris is saying that is the
Yes, sir.
real danger.
Yeah. So
Human
similarly,
qualities such
storage,
as
if you
empathy
look at the storage
is
is divided into
completely
similar
lacking in
size.
most
The
of the
storage also,
communication, and
you
he says
have,
that that is something that we need
storage
to
area network, you have
bring
multiple
back.
storage devices, and then
So in this
more
context,
storage.
if you
Obviously, you
look
will
at
take from multiple
netiquette,
locations. Otherwise,
so what is
you can
this
split one
netiquette?
storage
Netiquette
device
is
into
actually
multiple
a
hard disks
portmanteau
and make it
word. A
available.
portmanteau
Virtualize that
word
hardware
is
and give it
like
to different
two
virtual
words
machines. So
put
virtual machine
together,
is
and a third word
constructed.
or a new word is
Similarly,
formed
we would have
out of
heard the word virtual
the two
LANs or
words.
VLANs.
Now
We'll come to
here
that.
it is
So we'll
combined
move
from
ahead. So what has
internet
happened was
or
the classic data
network
center
and
has been
etiquette.
converted to
Now
virtualized
what
data
is
center. What has
etiquette?
happened? The storage has
Etiquette
been virtualized. The
always
network has been virtualized.
referred to
The
in the
compute
singular
has
form,
been
not
virtualized.
etiquette,
The operating
because
system
etiquette
and then
itself is an
what's called
umbrella
the
term
virtual
for
machine,
the
which has been
general rules
created as an operating
governing
system.
socially
So
and
operating system is
culturally
talking to some
acceptable
CPUs,
behavior.
which is built on some
So,
network and
for
some storage.
example,
So this becomes
on the
what is
road,
called a
pointing
virtual
a
machine,
finger
and this
to
becomes a
someone
virtualized data
to
center.
show to
So the
someone
entire
else, so
physical
that
data
is
center or
impolite.
classic data
So
center
the
has
social
moved to become what is
norms
called a
that have
virtualized
been
data
told to
center.
you,
Now, classic data center to
picking your
virtualized data
nose in
center, and on
public.
top
So
of
it
that,
is told that
you
it's
add
not
a
good
cloud
etiquette.
service or a
While
cloud
having
management
food,
software that
munching
becomes a
and
cloud.
making
So this is
noise
how
is
the
not a good
journey to the
etiquette.
cloud was.
So those
So
are
what happened first
etiquette which we
initially,
have taken from
compute was virtualized,
socially.
then storage
But
was
while
virtualized,
these
then
norms
network
are
was virtualized,
somehow
virtualized
implicitly
data center
known to
happened.
us,
And so that is what it is. So
the
let me
norm
just try
about
to
how to
explain to you.
use
Maybe
that
an
in the
introduction was
net
already
is
given. So
not
let me quickly go through
officially
compute
told to us. No
virtualization.
proper
Today,
training
what is
is
happening?
given
We
to
are
us.
using
So
only
that is
one
why
set
we
of
need to
hardware,
know cause and
only one set of
awareness as
hardware, CPU,
how we
a couple
can
of cores, and
inculcate
then network
a
interface
good
card,
norm
the
of
memory, the RAM,
using
physical
internet.
storage or the hard
So
disk. This was
netiquette
the kind of
thus
thing.
refers to
And
the
if this is
correct,
virtualized, now
proper,
what has happened when I
polite,
virtualize this? I get a
acceptable,
virtual CPU
social,
here, I get an
official,
NIC card, I get
professional
memory, and
norms,
I get a part of
behavior
storage.
patterns,
So this is
and
what it becomes. So
expected
if you have
decorum for
installed
using
a
the
virtual
internet
box,
or the
right, you would
cyberspace
have
for
created what is
communication
called a
purposes.
VDI5, virtual
Etiquette is
desktop
about your code of conduct on the
interface, or
internet. In simple terms,
some this thing VDI file.
when you know
So
how
that
to
VDI
behave,
file is stored as part
when
of
you
your
see a
C
person
drive or
on the
D
road,
drive somewhere,
when
right?
you
So you have given some location and it goes and stores there.
want to
So
pay respect to
basically,
an
if you want
elderly
to
person,
move one
so
virtual
you know how
machine from one
to
system to
interact.
another
You say
system,
namaste,
it is very
so
easy.
you
What
touch
do I
the
need to do? I
feet,
just
take
have to copy the
blessings. So
VDI
these are
and take
all
it to the other
simple
system. But
norms
the
that you
same
have
kind of
learned. But how do
hypervisor,
you
that is what I
conduct yourselves
introduced
on the
shortly.
internet
If
when
it
the
is
person
used, then
is
I
not
can
before
restart
you?
the machine on the other system.
So
So
you
it's
know
very
what
easy.
to do
So
when the
that is
person
something
is
that we
just
can try
before
to
you, face
look
to
at,
face.
right? So
But when
that is
the
what is
person is
compute
not there,
virtualization. So
how
when
do
you
you behave?
look at compute
Or are you
virtualization,
behaving in the
so
right
before
manner? So that
virtualization,
is
only
what
one operating
netiquette
system
will
could run.
teach you.
Okay, I
And
could take
then
two or three operating
why
systems run,
netiquette?
but at the same
So you
time,
may be
only one operating system
thinking
could
that
do,
why
because
should I
we
know
used
this?
to do what is
Already I
called
know
a
a
dual
lot of
partition, or maybe
etiquette. Why
double
should I go for
partition. We can do
netiquette?
that, right? So that was what was possible. You could
Now, if
split
you look at the
a machine
internet
into
as
two
such,
operating systems, but both the operating
what
systems
it
do
has
not start at the
done,
same
it
time. In
has
my the
actually
machine that I am
contracted the
taking a
world
picture now,
into
I have
so-called
a Linux,
global
that is
village.
the Red Hat
Global
Enterprise Linux,
village
and
is
I
the
also have
term
Windows
given by
10
Marshall
installed. So what
McLuhan,
can happen? Either
whom
one
I
of them
referred
can
to
start, both
yesterday,
of
the
them cannot start.
Canadian
But I also have a virtual
media
machine
theorist, very
on the Windows
renowned, world
environment, so I can
famous,
start them, right?
and
So
he
the
says
virtual
that
machine is equal to
all
one
this
again, right? So
technology,
that's a kind of a mechanism
internet
that I have built.
technology,
So you can take
nanotechnology,
that
so all
the
these
systems
ones
also
have
earlier.
contracted the
One
world and
operating
made
system
us
could
a
run at the
global
same time.
village.
But when you
Now,
have,
what did
like
he
for
mean by
example, you
this?
have a virtual
In a village,
machine
the
monitor, what you
communication
can
is
try to
so
do
quick,
is you can have multiple
transparent,
virtual
and it is
machines
quick.
running. So that is
So
something
if you
that
are
you
from
can
the
try to
village background, you know that when
that
you
is
go
what
for
you can try to
home on an
look at, right? So these
vacation,
are the differences
as
before
soon as you get
virtualization and
down on
after
the main
virtualization. Now
road
the
in the
main thing
bus
is,
stop,
what is the main thing is a
you have to
hypervisor.
walk,
So the
let's say,
hypervisor
about
thing that
5-6
that
kilometers through the
differentiates. So what has
fields,
happened? The hypervisor
open
has
areas
is the
before
layer
reaching
or the
home.
virtualization software
But by
the
the
word
time
is
you get
hypervisor.
down, you
So
are taking a
hypervisor
tea,
actually
and by
creates
the
an
before you
environment
reach
where it
home,
is
the
taking the
news has
resources
reached your
from the
parents
physical
that your
infrastructure
son has
from
come.
the physical
So from
machine
somebody
and
who took
make it
chai,
into
he
virtual
went out and
components
then told
available
somebody
on the
working in
virtual
the field.
machines.
So
So
that
that is a
fellow
layer
passed.
which sits in
And then
between.
before
It
you
is
reach
called the
the
hypervisor.
communication
Earlier,
reaches
you had
very
grid
quickly.
computing software or
So
cluster
in a
computing
village,
software.
the
What
network
would the cluster
is
computing software
quick,
do? It would sit on
transparent,
the cluster of physical
and then
machines
very
and
easy,
would give you
and then no
a layer,
hassles.
a common layer.
So
Similarly,
that's what
a grid computing
McLuhan
software, what
says,
it
that
would do,
today
it would
our
also sit on the grid
globe,
and
the
would give
entire
you
world
a
has become a
unified
village.
picture, or
So much
what
so
is
we
called
are able to
a
communicate
single
so
system image,
quickly,
SSI,
so much
a
with
single
ease
system image
from
would be
one
there.
side
And a
of the
single
world
system
to
image would look
someone
like a very
in the other
beautiful,
side without any
kind of a
difficulty.
computer, because it was running on
Now,
100 computers put together,
this is
made
on
to
the
look
one
like a
hand,
single
but on
computer.
the
That
other
was
hand,
what was being done. Now, what is
are we
happening?
communicating
100 computers are
effectively?
now made
No,
to
we
become
are making
1000
it much
computers.
and much a
That is what
complicated
hypervisor is
process
doing.
instead of making
Earlier,
it more
a grid
effective.
computing software
As
or a cluster
yesterday I
computing
was
software
telling
could
you,
combine
I
100
told you
machines,
how
make
when
it
we
look look a
use
very powerful
multi-channels,
server,
for example,
right? Now,
pager, email,
100
and
physical
then
servers are
WhatsApp,
made to look
Facebook,
like 1,000 physical
telephone,
machines
mobile.
or
So when
1,000
we
virtual
use
machines. So that's
multi-channels for
something which is
communication,
what is the
we are
concept of
instead of
hypervisor. There are
simplifying,
two
making
types of
it much more
hypervisor. You
complicated.
have been already maybe
So
introduced to
despite
something
the
which is called a bare
flow
metal
and exchange
hypervisor,
of
which
information
also
in
has
various
an operating
channels
system
that we are
inbuilt. So that is
using,
what is
like
the bare
Facebook,
metal hypervisor. But there
mailing
is a
lists,
hosted hypervisor which is
blogs.
operating
So
system
like
based.
today
So you have an
teachers are
operating system. On top
invariably
of that, you
using
have a
blogs
hypervisor which is
and
called a
making
hosted
students to
hypervisor.
write
So
blogs,
these are the
communicate
advantages
with
of
them in blogs,
compute virtualization.
forums,
You have
and
reduced
chats.
costs. You are
Despite
running more
all these
servers on
things,
less
the
machines.
question
So these
still
are an advantage.
remains
Earlier,
whether
if you wanted 10
communication is
servers, you
taking
would buy
place in
10
all
physical
these forms
servers.
in an
But now, if you want to set
effective
up 10
manner or
software
not.
servers, you
And
can
obviously the
manage it with a
answer is
single
not that
physical server.
effective.
So that's 1 is
And
to 10.
why
So
are
like
we
that,
here
these
to
are the
learn
things.
how
A
to make
little,
it effective?
maybe I don't know whether this
And
was
why
covered. So I just wanted to
netiquette
begin
again?
this.
The
So
internet
when people did not understand
has
virtualization, or
actually
processors
enlarged
did not understand
to
virtualization, like
discuss the
AMD or
avenues
Intel
of
processors
human
are now
mind,
quite popular. They were new on
limitless,
virtualization. So
infinite
initially virtualization
possibilities
came as a
of
little
communication.
afterthought.
But what has
So the first
happened,
level was the
ironically,
operating system
unfortunately,
would be sitting on
is
ring
that it has
zero. Maybe
actually
some of you would have
narrowed
studied
down
operating systems
values of
maybe
the
in one
human
level.
heart.
You would have read these
As if,
levels of
as
rings
mentioned in the
is the
beginning,
privilege
we
levels
are
it indicates.
literally
So ring
functioning
0,
like
ring 1, ring
robots
2, ring
without
3.
any
Ring 3
hearts,
is
without
the
any
upper
biological
layer which is
component
available for the
that can
users, and ring
pulsate
0 is
human
sitting
impulses.
exactly on top of the
So
hardware,
that is the
and ring 0
problem
is where the
with
operating system will sit. So that is what it
trying
was.
to
So what
understand
was to
netiquette
do
and trying to
was
implement
to
in
do
our day-to-day
virtualization. There were three
communication.
methods. Okay, one was full
Conversely, what is
virtualization,
happening?
para virtualization,
Increase
and
in
hardware
hate
assisted
mails.
virtualization.
People
Let me
write
quickly take you through this.
abusive
What it means. Full virtualization.
mails.
Full
Today,
virtualization
they
happened
troll on the
when
social
guest
media.
OS
They
was now
troll,
one
they
level
write
higher. So what
abusive
happened
mails,
on the physical
abusive
machine? The
comments after
hypervisor name
comments
sat,
on the
right?
Twitter
So
account, on
don't confuse
Facebook
it with
account.
what you
And
called
then more than
hosted
that, they
hypervisor and
go to
bare metal
silent
hypervisor. Here we are talking about bare
certain
metal
sites
hypervisor,
which
because
actually violate
hypervisor
your
is directly
privacy
sitting on the physical
policies.
machine, right?
And then
So
hacking
bare
of
metal
email
hypervisor, you have
identities,
three types. One is full
hacking
virtualization, one
of
is para
Facebook
virtualization, and one
identities,
is
hacking of your
hardware
identity
assisted
in general,
virtualization. So what
and
actually
even
happened here?
stealing
The
of your
hypervisor
email
gets top
password, bank
priority.
password,
So the
Facebook
hypervisor sits
password.
directly
Now,
on the
where
most
are we
privileged layer.
heading
It
to?
decouples the
So,
guest
if we
operating
all
system from
agree
the
to
underlying
follow
physical
the
hardware.
acceptable
So
netiquette
directly
now,
it
so
interacts with
this
that. So the
kind of
guest OS is
threatening
not aware of
situation
the
will be
virtualization.
minimized and
Actually, guest
controlled.
OS is being
But
virtualized,
people
but the
misunderstand
hypervisor
and
actually
lose
sitting. So
precious
what is happening?
relationships built
So
for
some
years
of the
just by a
privileged
casual click
instructions
of
which the
send button.
OS would send.
If only they
Now,
didn't
what would
send that
happen?
hate mail,
They would be
it would
directly
have
sent to the
restored
hypervisor. The
25 years
hypervisor would
precious
have to
relationship.
convert them
But they
so
just
that the
pressed it
physical
and then they
machine or the
regretted
physical
and then they cannot
hardware
delete it.
would understand. So that
So
is what was the role. The hypervisor
sometimes
had
like
to do the
sometime before in
customization of
WhatsApp,
the
you
operating
cannot
system
even
instructions.
delete the
So
message
what
you
would be
sent. So
happening here was
then much later they said that okay,
a
you
level
can
would come
delete
where
two
a
options, delete
word would
for
come which
you.
is
You will
called a
delete only
hypercall.
for you, and
Now
then you can delete
hypercalls
for
were being
everyone.
created. You have
But then
heard
there
of
is a
system
time limit
calls.
in which you can
System
delete.
calls
If you
are where the
regret little
operating system is
later,
talking
you
with
can
you
never delete it
directly.
also.
In
So
C
once it
language,
is
you have some
sent, it is
system calls.
gone.
Maybe
I'm
malloc is an
coming
example.
back
You
to
have a
that
function
aspect
called
very
malloc.
soon. But
Malloc is a function
like
which
in
calls the
the
system
introduction
called
only, I
for
am
malloc or
highlighting
mloc.
some of
That
the
is what we
norms
say.
which we are
So
going
the
to
system calls are there where
discuss.
the
Now,
operating
why
system
again
interacts with the
netiquette?
hardware through
Sending
system
emails.
calls.
I'm taking
Now,
emails
an
as a
operating
case
system sitting
study
in
so
ring
that we are
0
all
would
using,
obviously issue system
abusing,
calls to
misusing,
talk to the hardware.
profusely
But now
using.
what has
So
happened?
let us try to
The guest OS
understand
issues
how
the
we
system
can
calls
use this
to the
effectively so that we
hypervisor.
know
But
how we
because the
can grapple
hypervisor
with this netiquette
is the one now
overall.
talking to the
So sending
physical hardware.
emails
So
has
what it
become
has
the
to
most
happen is
used and
you need to
abused
have what
form
are
of
called
cyber
hypercalls. So the
communication.
guest OS
And in the
will
past,
send the
if you look
instructions
at
in the
it,
form of hypercalls.
uh,
The
we
hypercalls
used to
are
have
understood by the
stenos.
hypervisor. The
Okay, these
hypervisor
stenos,
converts them and
they are
sends
very
it to
good
the
in
physical machine. So that is something which is done. So this is a full virtualization. The
typing.
hypervisor
They
plays a
also
huge
are
role.
very good in
Now, in the case of
shorthand
para
writing. So when
virtualization, the
the
guest
boss is
OS
dictating,
knows that it is
the person
virtualized.
can can
So
take in
now, first
shorthand
level,
and
what
then
would happen
type it
was
again.
now virtualized operating systems.
And the person also knows
virtualization
how to
oriented
write
operating systems.
a proper
The
letter.
operating system knows.
So if you have the
it could be
steno, you
virtualized.
just
What
have to
happened?
tell the
The
steno,
virtualized OS would
write
still
this
run
letter
zero. So
in the
then
form
what
of
would
an
happen?
order.
Virtualization layer,
Write this
hypervisor
letter
has
in
to
the
go
form of a
one level
complaint.
down. So
Write
it
this
would run
letter in the form of a request. The steno knows how to do.
-1.
So the
So
later version of steno is personal assistant. You
Where
had personal
because
assistants.
the OS now understands.
Today,
So instead of
what
sending
communication
those instructions, it would send
has
a different
become.
kind of
Like
instruction which
yesterday I told
supervisor
you,
can easily understand.
it has
And
made you isolated,
the
quarantined,
OS
and it has
also
made you
knows
wired.
that I am a virtualized
You are
OS,
left
and
all
hence
alone.
the
Okay.
way I react will be
If
something
you have to
different.
write a letter,
So in
it says you
Microsoft
write it.
Windows, it was
We
not
cannot
earlier
afford to give you
available,
someone
but
who
of
is
course now
trained in that.
even they are also
Besides,
going for para virtualization.
there
The
is
last level
no
where we are
training
now moving to what
system.
is called
So
the
there is no
hardware assisted
college.
virtualization, where
Okay, there
the
is no
processors
schools
themselves have
where
now
actually
moved
people
into
go
that
and learn
virtualization away.
how I can
So let us look
write
at
good
processors
emails.
like AMD V
If at all
or
some
Intel V. These are the
companies are
processors. So
claiming
if
that
you're
we
going
are
to buy a
teaching
new
you in
laptop,
2 hours,
look for
3 hours,
Intel
they are
VT,
like looting a lot of
Intel VT
money.
enabled.
But the
Virtualization
end
enabled
result is not,
processors, please
it's
take.
not
If
done
you
in a
want to
very
do research on
formal
cloud
and
computing,
professional
that will be
manner.
a very important aspect. So
So
at
the
one point
ironic
of time,
situation,
my
nobody
student
receives
was
any
working on
formal
cloud
training for
security,
sending
wanted to
emails.
buy a
There is
laptop,
no
and we were making
office
a
staff
decision, i7,
appointed
i5,
who
and all that. So
has
i5 was
already
50,000,
learned
i7 was
how to write
70,000.
an
What
email.
should I do?
So the onus
So
is
that was
now
the question
on
she was
each one
asking.
of
And I
us,
said, yeah, you see
on the
whether
individuals.
there are any
If you are
issues
sending the
with reference
email,
to
now they are
virtualization or
saying that
any
you be
work that you
clear
would like
about
to
what
do
you
on
are
that
sending.
hardware
So you
on the
cannot blame
laptop should
anyone.
must
If
support.
anybody
And
has
suddenly
to
she
be
realized
blamed, it
that
will be you. So
those
you know all
i5
rules,
was
you know
not
all norms,
virtualization
and then
support
you
was
make
not
your
there.
email
So she went
effective.
for i7, and
If
it was a
something
good
goes
decision.
wrong,
So that
take
is
the
something that we look
responsibility.
at. So
Now,
from a
how can
user's
we make
perspective, a
that
logical
effective
compute
and how
system,
can we
it's like
understand the
it's like a physical
importance?
OS. It's
Now,
like a
most of
physical
the
machine
times,
that I'm
like
running on.
yesterday I
But from
was
a
telling
hypervisor's
you,
perspective, everything is a file. Like in the
five
Linux
P's
philosophy,
I
everything is a file.
discussed.
So from a hypervisor's
Okay.
perspective, it
Now,
is like
most of the
that. So
times,
you have a
emails
BIOS
are
file, you have a
written
swap file, you have
without
a
any
disk file,
planning.
you have a configuration
And in
file, and
fact,
all of them
for
are
some of you
virtual
who are
files. So
hearing,
these are all the
it may sound
everything,
like
every component is treated as a
should we really
file
plan
in the
anything
case
for
of
an
Linux.
email?
So you tend to
So
understand
it
it.
may
And
look like you
similarly,
just
if you look
start
at the
writing and
file
then
system
click
or
the
the
send
storage
button.
mechanism below,
No,
you have two
a
types
very
of file
good,
systems that are supported
effective
for
communicator will
virtualization. One is called the
always
virtual
spend
machine
time
file
in
system.
planning,
The other one is the
then
network file system.
preparation.
So this is
Instead of
basically
sending
VMFS and
abruptly
NFS.
and
VMFS is the kind of
carrying
storage
so
which
much for
is required, and it
presentability.
is deployed
So
on a fiber
presentability,
channel.
I told
And
you,
I2C
comes in the
storage.
way
Now,
it
what is
looks
fiber channel? And
aesthetically.
many of you would have
Elegance
heard
comes in the form
the
of
word fiber channel, but
typing it
would
without
not have
spelling
realized,
mistakes,
or you
making it
immediately
look neat by giving a lot of spaces in between,
the fiber
and
channel
most
optical fiber
importantly,
cable, OFC.
giving that
OFC is
human
different, optical
aspect
fiber
of
cable is different,
communication
fiber channel is
involved in
different.
the transaction
One is
process.
FIBRE,
They should
fiber,
feel
okay,
like
and one is
you talking
FIBER.
to the other
So fiber
person,
channel here
flesh and
is a
blood.
fiber channel protocol,
When
right?
you are
So
writing,
the
the other
NFS
person
is
should feel that,
basically
yes, I could see
working with
you,
the
I could
network
feel
attached
you,
storage. The
I could
VMFS is
understand you
working with
through
the
the
storage via
expressions.
network. We will get a
So
little
that is what
deep into
is
this. So basically, this
required.
NFS will work on a
Now,
TCP/IP
when you don't
protocol.
do
A
this, what
VMFS
happens
will work
is
on a fiber channel protocol that
the
we will also look at. And
invariable
this is a kind of a virtual
miscommunication.
machine hardware. A lot of these things
So
can be
tomorrow, day after tomorrow,
easily
like
you can
I'll also
understand,
try
and
to
all of these
highlight
can be
how
virtualized. Your mouse, your
miscommunication can
keyboard,
happen. But let us
whenever
focus
you are
more
running
on
a virtual machine,
communication and
know
the
that
effectiveness
when you
of
move a mouse
communication.
onto that window
You can
of
actually avoid
virtual machine takes
miscommunication
control of it. When you are
if you
moving it to the
learn,
side, again
understand,
the
and follow some of the
guest
simple
operating system
norms of
takes control of it. So
communication in
these are all the
cyberspace,
virtual
that is
hardware
etiquette.
components. The CPUs,
So,
the cores are
etiquette,
virtualized,
again,
right? So you get
I'm
things
going
called
to
a
start with
virtual
some of
CPU. You
the
can have
norms.
more
The
cores,
first
but a virtual
basic
CPU.
central
Virtual RAM,
norm,
your
which started with the quotation
RAM
I
that is
gave you at the
available in a
beginning,
server is also virtualized. The hard disk is
do
virtualized.
not
Network
forget
interface,
that the
network
receiver
interface
is a
card is
human
virtualized.
being.
Amazing, right? A physical server has one
Never
network interface
ever
card,
forget this
but there
fact.
are 10
Like
virtual
you are
machines running.
sitting before a
So each of the
machine.
10 virtual machines will
Now
have 10 virtual
I'm
addresses.
also sitting
So 10
before a
virtual network
machine.
interface cards are
I'm
created.
sitting before a
And then
laptop,
you can
before
have
a
a virtual
computer.
CD-ROM drive
But
that
I'm
drive can be
visualizing,
attached to any
I'm
one of the virtual
addressing
machine.
hundreds of
Floppy drive, in
people.
this case a
I'm like,
controller,
I'm
USB
focusing
controller.
more
All of
on your
these can
faces.
be assigned to
I'm
either
just
of the
trying
guest
to
or any
see
of the
how
virtual
you are
machines. So
feeling,
now when we
what
look at
I'm trying to
storage virtualization,
communicate. So
storage virtualization, what
how
is
are you
storage
receiving?
virtualization? Earlier we
So
have seen
then
virtualization
the way
with
I
the
speak
hypervisor
changes. If I look at this as just an electronic board, as just a blank screen that is there, so then I also try to behave in a mechanical manner. So what happens when you behave in a mechanical manner?
Whenever you want to
Then you send communication without any empathy. So the cardinal rule, the basic rule in any communication on cyberspace is that remember that the person at the other side is a human being.
And after that, it is automatically getting attached.
Even when you sit and type on a blank screen, visualize the person at the other end.
The virtual network
Put
component
yourself
added to
in the
virtual
shoes of the
network.
other person.
Storage is added on the
If
virtual
I'm
network
sitting at the other
immediately.
end
Then
and I'm
logically
receiving
components get
this
added,
mail,
and then it can get assigned. So
how
you
would
don't
I
have to
feel?
shut down the
Will I feel
servers
happy
to
to
add more
receive this?
storage. You
Will I
can
get a good feeling at the
use
end
the
of it?
storage effectively,
Will I feel
right? So
angry? Will I feel
that way you
hurt?
have the
Will I feel
total cost
offended?
of
Will I regret
ownership
why
is
I
reduced,
opened and
right?
read the
So
mail?
it's reduced,
What is
and
the
data
impact I'm
migration can
trying
be
to
easily done
create
when you
on
want
the
to move
other
data
human
from
being who is sitting
one
on the
physical
other
server to
side?
another physical server. It's very
So
easy
type messages
process, and then
as
you
if
can
you
have
are
multiple
interacting with
multi-vendor
him or
storage
her
platforms. You
face
can
to
connect a
face.
NAS and a SAN
In
together
fact,
onto
it
one
would be
cloud. So
nice
this is something
to
which you see. So what actually
visualize the
happens, you see that
conversation,
on the below lower
write
level
a
you
rough
have the
draft,
fiber channel
and then
storage,
convert
FC
that into
storage.
email or
FC
proper
storage is
message and then
basically
send it.
storage area
How would
network,
you
right?
talk to the person on phone?
A SAN
You write
system.
it
But when you have a
and
NAS,
then make
NAS
it
is what
formal
is
and then you send it.
based on an IP network. Okay,
When
or
you
a
will keep
network
in
attached
mind the
storage.
human
And
element,
iSCSI
you
can
will
also
not
be
send
working on
curt
an IP
messages
network. So you
that
have
will hurt the receiver's sentiment.
iSCSI
So
storage,
that
you have
automatically you will
iSCSI, you
avoid.
must be knowing.
What are the other
SCSI,
things
small
that you
computer
can
system
do to make
interface.
it human?
So you have SCSI hard disk, you have SATA hard disks, SATA,
You should use
advanced technology attached to
adjectives.
SATA, and you have
Okay.
SCSI,
And then
small
when you're
computer
joking,
system interface,
within bracket you
and
may
you
say
have
that
NAS, network
this is
attached
just a
storage. You
joke,
have
do not take it
SAN, storage
seriously.
area network, which
So
is
you may try
otherwise
to
called the
create that
FC
kind of
storage. So
human
all of these
quality.
combined together from
Although in
SCSI
a
storage,
formal
FC
mail,
storage, it becomes
we are
a
not
virtual
supposed to
machine file
create
system. From
like
the NAS storage, it
emoticons,
becomes a network file system. Again,
but
you see the
still
difference
in
here.
today's
iSCSI and NAS
communication,
use
if you
IP
want to
network.
lighten the
FC storage
situation,
uses
like you can see,
FC SAN network. Right?
I'm
So
discussing a very formal
fiber
one,
channel
but
protocol.
I'm
So that
trying
is
to
the
use
difference
as
that we
many
look at.
images as
So
possible,
the root file
sometimes
system,
images
virtual
which
machine
look
file system,
comical to
which
you,
you have the
so that
SAN
you
based
feel
network
the
file system, which is the
situation is
NAS
light,
based.
but
NAS means network
message
attached
is
storage.
strong.
Now,
So
what
in
is the
order to
difference
do
between
that,
SAN and
you
NAS?
try
Right?
to
Network
create
file system, it is based
graphics
on network
if
attached
required,
system.
so that
In
the other
NAS,
person
what is the difference between
misunderstand your
NAS and
intent.
SAN? So the difference you try to look at.
Also tell the
Basically,
receiver how
NAS and
much
SAN
care you
also
take in
differentiates
communicating your
the two
message
kinds
with the
of
right tone
storage:
and
block level
attitude.
storage and file level storage.
Consideration
So
for
the
others is
network-based
thus
virtualization,
the
it also
cardinal
embeds storage
netiquette
virtualization
principle
intelligence
one
in the
should
network layer.
always bear
So
in
what
mind.
happens? You can
Consideration
pool
for
heterogeneous
others.
storage
So
resources. That's the
you are
basic
writing
advantage
not
of
for your sake, but you are
storage
writing it for
virtualization,
the other
right?
person.
And then you can do
So the
migration. You can
next to
do
know that you
single
need to
management
remember,
interface. You can manage
and the
all the
most important
resources. Now,
one,
what is
most
the
of the
difference?
times we
Block
forget
level
this.
means based on
So
SAN. File level
remember,
means based on
written words
data
can be
storage. So
stored
the IP traffic
permanently.
which comes handles the storage at the
Most of
file
us,
level. Now, when you look at
most of the
storage area network,
faculty
it
at least
handles
who are in
it is based
official
on what
communication,
is called
we think
the fiber channel traffic, and hence
10
it
times
is block level,
before
right?
sending
So
one
you
single
also, if you look
message,
at if some of you have
whether
worked
it is
with Hadoop
WhatsApp message
or
or a
read
messenger
a little
one,
bit
we
on
think
Hadoop, you
so
know that
much
the block
because
level
we know that
storage,
once
right?
you send it, it can
Blocks
be
are
stored
created
permanently.
in the case of storage.
It can be
They
stored
divided the
permanently.
whole data into
And
blocks, and the
electronic
blocks are stored in
medium,
multiple
you may
locations. The
say that I
files
deleted the
may be
message.
split,
There
but
are
here when you look at network
umpteen
attached
ways
storage,
of
it is stored as
restoring the
file level
message.
this thing. So if you look at the
You
difference between
send
storage area
something
network and
as
network
an
attached storage, this is how
undergraduate
it looks like.
student,
Storage area network, you have the
and
tape
later you
devices. You
became
have
an
here
eminent director of
something
an
which are called
institute.
tape devices also.
And that
RAID is
message can be
redundant array
retrieved
of
and
inexpensive disks.
put it
So
on
RAID,
media, and
lot of
people
RAID
can
devices,
try to say that
and
this
they
is what
are
you wrote in
on
undergrad and now
SAN
you are
fabric. So
talking
here
differently.
the storage area network, this is
So
on
when
SAN.
you
So
send something on an
these
electronic media,
switches, if you
remember
look
that
at, they are
written
SAN
words can be
switches. SAN
stored
switches
permanently.
run on fiber channel protocol. So that is a difference.
What are the
This is how it looks like.
implications?
All the servers are running.
You
All the
should be
servers
very
are
careful in
interacting with
choosing
all
the
the
right
storage
words for
through these
communication.
networks. Right, so that is
So
something that
anybody can communicate.
right?
That is
So
going to be very
switching can
easy.
also
Tomorrow I am
access
going to tell you
this
why
big
choosing
server
the right
obviously
word
through this
and the
network.
almost
So
right
any machine
word
on this
makes
can
lot
access
of
any of the
difference.
storage devices. They are all
The
on
email
a storage
sent
area network.
casually
So when you look at the
can
network
written with
attached
so
storage,
much
there are multiple
malignity
workstations and
that the
servers and
sender
all that
regrets
going on.
throughout
There is a
his,
TCP.
her
They are
or
all connected by
life
a
for
TCP
having
IP network
sent that
and
one
to a single
thoughtless mail.
network attached appliance.
people
Network
are
attached
today
storage is a big appliance.
saving the
All
mail
the storage is at one place.
so that it
Here,
can be used
it is
after
a
20
network
years,
of storage.
30
Storage in a
years.
network is a network of
At
storage.
the time you are
Follows a private key
retiring,
protocol.
at the
This
time the
follows
person
a
is about to
IPv6
die, they can come and show the email. Oh,
That is
this
the
is what
difference
you
as
wrote, and then you are
conversation as
contradicting
telecom is fiber
yourself.
channel. There the protocol is
So written
TCP/IP.
words can be stored
Communications basically
permanently.
SAN,
So
mission
have good
critical and
thoughts
centralized
if you are
backup,
sending
fast recovery.
a
So
good
there are a lot of
email,
advantages of SAN.
and
As
send
it
only
is
good
easy because
thoughts,
of
good
it is
ideas,
used in file
so that
sharing,
even if they are
small block
stored,
transfer,
you don't have to worry about it.
database access and all of
See,
it.
even if it is
So many
quoted,
for SAN, because SAN
frequently
is a advanced
referred to,
technology, and
so you don't have to worry because you didn't say anything wrong.
I'll share the slides so
Then
you can read through it in detail.
the next important now,
Comparisons of SAN versus NAS, and file level and block level.
Sometimes we very naively,
heterogeneous storage,
even foolishly, stupidly think that
and then SAN
we
is
control the
created,
email.
virtual appliance is created. So
Okay.
you have the
But
block level storage here.
Ironically, it is the receiver who controls the sent email.
A similar thing, if you
Same
look
thing
at
as I
NAS,
said,
you have
any
a NAS
message,
and there's an
WhatsApp
IP network
message
which is
or
followed,
Facebook
and you have
message,
what is called a file
anything
level
that you
storage,
send,
right?
once you send it to the
So there is something
electronic
which is
media,
a very important concept here, virtual provisioning.
no way you can
Maybe
take
if
it
you look
back.
at the
The
storage,
receiver is
we
the one
have
who
some 30 TB
is actually
of storage,
controlling the
and
sent
in fact
mail.
we are trying to
And
increase even more.
what the
30
receiver
TB
will
of
do,
storage, and 30 TB of storage, you may be feeling, "Arey, 30 TB of
even if you
storage,
tell
will it be
you, even
sufficient
if
for
you tell the
3,000
receiver,
users?" Yes,
I'm sorry
obviously,
sir, I'm sorry ma'am,
30
please
TB
delete
is,
the email,
if you
I
give
didn't
1
intend to
GB,
send
or
it to
if you
you.
give 10 GB,
Now
or
the
if you give
receiver
100
is
GB,
the one who decides.
it will still be, you will have
Even
still
if you
some more,
request that the mail should be
positions available.
deleted,
So just
it is that person who
imagine
decides whether to
how I
store
can
it
allocate. So what
or to
we do
delete
is
it
we
or to
allocate
keep
100
it for
GB
the
to
time
every
being for
student.
some
And
use.
what happened?
So you cannot
Everybody
have
will not
control
use
over
100
other
GB.
people. You can
Everybody
have
will use
control
only 10
only
GB
on
or
you
5 GB.
and
Because
the
it all
send
depends on
button
the
that you
data.
are about
Whenever
to
there
press.
are people are
So
storing
think
movies and all,
10 times,
common movies, and then there
20
is
times
a
before
mechanism
pressing that send button,
inside
especially
cloud.
if that
This
mail is
mechanism
something
keeps
that
only
you are
getting
likely to
populated.
regret for your
Whenever it
life
sees that
later
similar data
for
is
having
coming,
sent
so
it.
movies
As I said, this
usually are
applies to
downloaded from
any
the same
message that you are
site
putting
and
in
all,
the
and
digital
then
era,
there's a
the
common theme.
digital
So it
media.
sees that this data is already
Don't
existing.
put it,
If the data
you
is already
cannot take
existing,
it back.
doesn't keep another
Even
copy,
orally,
right? So these are all
ironically,
things which are
when you are
available,
angry,
and of
like
course
it
time is a
happens between
limitation. We will
parents and
explain all of
children,
them.
sometimes
But let
even
us look
teacher
at
and
only virtual
students.
provisioning. Virtual
So the
provisioning is
teacher
another word for
shouts
thin
or even
provisioning.
the
Thin
student gets
provisioning is
angry.
we give
Okay.
a block
So
resource, but
both of them
actual
apologize.
resource
Yeah,
what
and
is
then they forget.
allocated is maintained.
But
So we
what
know.
happens
So
to
what
the
I do is
written
what is
word?
called a
Even if they
logical unit
apologize
number
and
when you talk
forget,
about LUN.
whenever you
So
look
a
at the
memory
written
storage
word,
is shown
so
in the
it
form of LUNs,
actually
okay,
kind of
or
pinches the heart.
logical unit
It
number.
gives that
Logical unit
heartburn.
number is
It's
misleading.
not going to
It
go
is not
away
a
just
number.
like
It
that.
is actually
So be
a
very
part of the
careful
storage,
about
right?
this,
So
and
you can
this is why
actually
you need to
create
understand
a
the
storage
etiquette
share
now.
pool. A storage area network, everything is
The
virtualized. You
other
use
interesting
huge
thing,
data with you.
the
Now the
receiver
huge
also
data,
can use it
you split
against
into
you.
chunks of
Send it to
storage,
numerous
what we
others.
call logical drives,
Get a
and then
print out
whenever
of it
somebody wants to
and post it
pick
on
from that
public
thin pool
notice
and
boards
assign
and
it to
put
the
you to
thin
shame.
pool. Okay,
I give
then
you
a
one
part of it is
example.
only
It's a
used. So
very
what is the
famous
advantage of thin
multinational
provisioning? We
corporate
look at this.
company,
So earlier, if
and
somebody was
this
using, let's say somebody was allocated 42 GB,
employee
somebody was allocated
has
550
been
GB,
working there
somebody
for
was allocated
5 years
800
or
GB.
so.
The actual allocated
And then a
use
new
was
employee
almost
joined, a
1550
very
GB,
pretty
right?
looking
So
girl.
1550 GB is
And then
allocated
this
in a 2
man
TB
got some
system, so only
fascination
150
for
GB is
her.
available.
And
What
then
do you
he
want to do? We
used
have to
the
buy more
company's
hardware. When you look at it,
email
if you
ID.
do thin
Like
provisioning,
my
right?
company's
You know
email
what is
ID,
thin
all of you
virtual
know,
provisioning? What happens? You actually, though
trc@itk.ac.in.
you say
So
allocated 500
NITJ,
GB,
if
you only
whatever
track
follows,
how
these
much
are all
employee is
company's
using.
email
Okay,
ID.
100 GB is only
So
being used.
company's
So
email
totally,
ID,
I look at only
once
350
it's
GB is used. Oh,
given
I
to you
still
by
have
the company,
1.65
you should
GB or
not use it for
1650 GB. You
personal
don't have to buy
purpose,
more
first of all.
storage immediately. When this
Secondly, you
reaches to
should
1500
have
or
that
1600,
awareness
then I
that
have to plan.
there is a
So this is
master
the advantage
password.
of virtual provisioning.
Whatever
And
password
next
you
level
use,
is
company can always
virtual
retrieve your
networks
deleted
or
mails. Company
virtualization. Very
always has a
important
backup. Company can
concept here,
always check
because
what you
this
are
has
writing.
logically
It
segmented
is a professional ethics
grouping of
norms
physical
that they
networks,
don't
right?
peep
So
into
that
your
was a
account
wonderful
all the
thing. So
time. They don't
earlier,
do.
what
But
are
if required, they
VLANs?
can always
Okay, a concept which is
recover
very
your
important,
deleted mails.
and all
So
these
many
were
times we
already
do in
available
IIT Kanpur.
in
I
corporate networks,
lost
in the sense when
15,000
we have
mails
been studying
last month
virtual
due to
LANs.
some
So VLANs.
transfer. I
So
told
when you
them.
look at
So
VLANs,
in 1 hour
what
they
are the VLANs?
restored
What
everything
is the
for me.
logical area
So I
number?
was
How is it
so much
created? You
tensed
will have
because
one switch,
those were my
and
very
then you
old
have
mails.
30 systems
For
connected to
25
it.
years
All
also
the
I've
30
been saving
systems
those
cables
mails,
are
and
coming into
so
the
they I recovered it.
all the
Now the
Ethernet
point
ports,
I'm making is,
they are
in this
connected to
case,
a Cat5 cable through a
the person didn't
RJ45
know
connector,
that
and then you
his
plug it
mail
in.
can be
The
read
other
by
other
his
ends of the
boss.
connections will also have RJ45.
Okay.
They plug
Now
into
what the
what's called
boss
a
did,
single switch. So what will happen
he
on one
wrote a
switch in
very
these 30 machines?
romantic
So what they
love
do, they
letter. He
propagate
read
locally again.
Shakespeare. He
But
used
no,
quotes
I
from
want
Hamlet.
two
He
networks
from Romeo
within
and
that
Juliet.
30
He
systems. I want to
wrote
have
lot of
15 systems on
shairis,
one network,
and then he
15
wanted
systems on
to
one
make
network.
that
How do I do that? So the
powerful
switch
impact
must
that the girl
act
reads
like
and then immediately
two
falls for him
switches.
and then
That is
comes
what
and
I see.
agrees to get
Network
married with him
virtualization. So what do?
immediately.
I
So
take
that was
half
the
of the
intention of
ports
writing that
and
long
configure
mail,
them to
impressive
a
mail
certain
with
level,
all this
and
kind of
half
thing.
of the other ports I will configure to another LAN.
Now,
So what will happen? The switch
when he
will
went for
act
a cup
like
of tea,
two virtual
he
networks.
saw
So you
people
have two
like
VLANs working
smiling,
on a single
laughing at
switch. So that
him,
is something which we can
and he
do.
didn't
So earlier
understand
the
what is
physical
there
network
while
would look
taking
something like
tea.
this. The
He just
physical network
wanted
would
to
be
see
a
what
physical
is there
server,
on the
a
notice
physical
board.
server
Normally, they
connected by
put
a
so
physical
many things on the
network
notice board.
connect to a physical
What the
storage.
boss has
So this is
done,
the physical network,
he has
simple
just
network
put
that we
the
have.
entire
Now when you
email,
have a
5-page
virtualized
email
network, not
in
only are
block
you
letters,
virtualizing the LANs, the local
printed,
area
and
network,
then
but you are also
uh,
virtualizing
put on the
the VM.
notice
So what is
board,
happening here? There is a physical
and with a
network
caption
interface
that
card. In the earlier day,
warning: do
there
not
was one
write
physical
any
interface card and there was one
emails like
server
this
which
to
was
any
running
of the
for the national
colleagues.
system. But now, because of this
And
physical
his
network
all
interface card
details
being
were there.
virtualized, I can run
He
three
was put
virtual
to
machines,
shame.
and these
Not
three
only
virtual
that, he
machines
could
I
not
can
do
put on a.
anything except leaving that company
That is
because
what is
he lost
one
the
more level
reputation
besides.
that
It
he
is
has
a
been
physical
building
network
up
here,
for
and there's
so
a
many
virtual
years.
network
And
inside
just
the physical
one
server
impulsive
on the
moment,
virtualization layer. So you can create
he
consist of
did
logical
that
switches,
mistake
which are
that
called
costed his
virtual switches. So you can
career
have virtual switching
as
here,
well as
which is done. So
reputation.
virtual switch is not
So
a
be very
physical switch.
careful
Virtual switch
that
is a
the
software.
receiver is the
It is
one who
part
is
of the
controlling the
hypervisor
sent email.
that what we will do.
And so be
Understand
very
it. Take the
careful
next one,
because
physical
they can
network.
always
Now
embarrass
to
you and
understand
they can
why
always
there are
expose you to the
this is
general
one
public,
switch,
even
one
if you
physical switch
didn't
here, there is
intend that
another physical switch
to
here.
happen that way.
Two
So
physical
be very
switches are
careful
connected,
about
so
it.
there are two
And
networks
then
on the either side. So VM1, VM2 are actually on one network.
when you
VM3
write
and
an email,
VM4 are actually on one network. So what I
unless
am doing,
you
I
have
am
a
virtualizing
sensible
this switch.
thing to
I am also
convey,
virtualizing this switch.
do not
So what is
write an
happening
email.
on this physical switch? I am trying to create two
Which means
networks. So VM1
when
is
you
going on
write
to virtual
makes
network 1
sense.
and VM2
So
is
it is
going on to
very
virtual
difficult
network
to
2.
do
Similarly, I
in
am
this kind
virtualizing
of
this switch. So what will
situation
happen?
because we
VM3 is on
create
a different
entropy,
network and
lot of
VM4
disorder.
is on virtual network 2.
Meaningless words are
So what I
accumulated
can try to
together
do is
and
I'm
meaning
going to
gets
try to
lost.
create a virtual switch here
Now,
where this
what I
what
mean
we
by
call
this
the VM2 and VM4 are on one network,
is that
VM1 and
it is
VM3 are on
easy
one
to
network.
write
These two are two
nonsensical
different networks.
emails,
So what you are doing, you are trying to
especially
create a
because
virtual
people type
LAN network.
whatever comes to their mind.
So
They don't
the
bother about
advantages of
organizing, they don't
virtualization
bother
enhances
about
security,
cohering,
enhances performance.
and
You
then they
can use
just
a
write
single switch and
what comes
create
to their
multiple
mind. And
local
most
area
of the
networks. So
times,
that was the
our
advantage of
mind is
virtualization. Now
compared to
there
a
are some
monkey, it jumps
network
from one
components
thought to
also.
another
So
very
virtual
quickly.
NIC, you know,
And
network
before we
interface card, you
complete
know,
one thought, it
but
goes
there is
to
something
another
which is
thought.
called
It's very
host bus
difficult to catch
adapter,
it and then put
HBA.
it in
So
coherent
HBA is a
manner.
new word.
So if
So
you
where
write
does HBA
whatever
come
comes
from?
to your mind,
HBA comes from
so
the word that
then
it
you know
uses,
that
it
you are
handles
not
the
making sense.
fiber channel
Often,
traffic. So if you have
if
a
you
fiber
remove
channel traffic,
three
you will need
paragraphs,
a
the
host
last
bus
line is the
adapter.
one that
If
you
you
are
have
actually
IP
making
traffic
sense.
which is coming
Or
from
sometimes
attached
at the end of
storage,
the second
you will need a
paragraph,
network
one
interface
sentence you
card,
are making some
NIC.
sense.
But then there is something also
So how
at the
can
lower
you
level you have
make
what is called a
sense?
CNA, virtual
This
NIC,
means
virtual HBA,
you
virtual
need to
switch. But
curtail
physically,
some
NIC,
bad writing
HBA, and
habits
CNA.
which are
CNA stands for
accumulated over a
Converged
period of
Network
time.
Adapter. CNA is a
Okay.
converged
Now,
network adapter.
how have you
So converged
accumulated
network
this
adapter is
habit?
required. We will see
This
that
again has been
shortly.
given
So
to
you
us
understand
in the
after seeing these
classroom. So
diagrams.
we wrote things
So I'll
without
leave that
thinking
suspense
and
for
then
some
not
time. Here you
properly
see,
edited, and then we
this is
continue
only
with that kind of
mass
thing.
and ISCSI
So how can
storage.
we
You have
actually
already
make
realized that
sense?
mass and ISCSI storage works on
First,
IP traffic.
plan your email
IP traffic works on
beforehand.
Ethernet physical switch. So
So
there's an
do not
Ethernet
go
switch
and
here.
sit
So
before
what
the
you will need is a
computer
physical
and then
network
send it.
interface card
So in
with
fact,
these all
most of
virtual
the
machines.
computers
Now
allows
the
you
second
to
question that we
write a
try to ask
draft.
here,
Okay,
if I
you
move
create a
here
draft
ISCSI storage
and
and I
then
put
send it, or
SAN storage,
even
what
you
happens?
open Microsoft
There is a
Word
question. The
or
second
any
level,
kind of
what I
Word
will do
document,
is,
you
let's
write
say
it
I have a
first,
fiber channel traffic.
check
Now,
the
if it is a
spelling,
fiber
everything,
channel
and
traffic,
then you
what
do
should I
cut
do?
paste and then
Because
put
if
it
it's
in
a
the
physical
email.
traffic or a
So note
physical
down
server
what
or
you
a
want to convey
network
and
attached
prepare
storage server,
yourself
I
by
need this
writing
one
a
is called
rough
a physical
draft
switch.
and
Then I will
present it
connect it
in
to
a
a
readable
physical
manner.
network interface card. hard. But
Be
now,
clear,
if I have a fiber
concise,
channel
and
traffic,
coherent.
an ordinary
Now,
Ethernet
I
switch will not
give
work.
you some very
Switch
quick
will work on
tips
TCP/IP
as
protocol.
how you can
And
make
here,
it clear,
you will need a
concise,
physical
and
switch will work
coherent.
on fiber
So
channel
one of the
protocol,
ways in
right?
which you
So
can
you will
do
have what
is
is called
that
an
you
FC
can
switch.
avoid
So that FC
using
switch
one-out
handles
phrases
the FC
that
traffic,
does not
and it
make
can
any
also
sense in the
iSCSI
context.
storage array. It can
Okay.
handle this traffic because
Idiomatic
also
expressions,
iSCSI storage
metaphors, and
is internet
similes
based.
which
But the
do
fiber
not
channel
hold
traffic
any
or the
meaning
SAN traffic moves
And
through
especially
a
if you do
fiber
not
channel
know how to
structure
use
called
them properly,
transmission.
they
So
may
here
actually
a physical
confuse the
network is
reader
not
and
sufficient,
can
but here
actually
you
cause
need what is called a host
miscommunication.
bus
So use simple
HBA.
words,
So the HBA
make
can
it
directly
short and sweet,
connect to the virtual
and
switch and
avoid
go to the
florid
hypervisor. It is
and
part of the
polysyllabic
hypervisor. So you
constructions,
need a
long
physical
and
component which
complicated
is
sentences. People
HBA, host bus
don't have
adapter,
time,
and you move
patience,
it. Now,
and they're
when
not
you look at
interested
this
in reading
diagram,
those
immediately you will
long,
get a question. Hello,
convoluted
sir. Why use
sentences.
two devices,
So very quickly,
PNIC
some
and
practical
HBA? What should be the
hints in
logical
terms
thing to
of
do?
writing
Obviously,
very
in your mind,
clearly.
you're
When I
thinking,
say
obviously, why
conciseness,
use two
look
devices?
at
I
this
should combine these two
quote from
devices
Frank
and make a
Clark. He
single
says
thing.
that
Obviously, that is
you can
what
suffocate a
CNA
thought by
is. What
expressing it
happens?
in too many
CNA
words.
facilitates,
Normally,
it
we
can
think that
handle
writing more
either
means
iSCSI storage
clear.
or
No,
NAS storage or fiber channel
writing
storage, that is
less
the
and
SAN storage,
conveying
or
more.
either SNAS,
Writing less,
SAN
if you
or
can
NAS or
write less and
iSCSI.
convey
Any
more,
of the storage can be
you will get more
facilitated
credit.
on the physical switch.
In
Now,
most
the
of the
physical
essay
switch is also
competitions,
combined. Surprising,
okay,
wonderful. What has
good
happened? We have
organizations
what is called a fiber
makes
channel
it
over
clear on
Ethernet
the
switch,
top that
FCOE
in
switch.
this essay
Right? So the
competition or
FCOE
in your
switch is
answer to
connected.
this
It can
question,
receive both the
if you
NAS
are writing
traffic and
4
also the
pages
SAN
and
traffic and
conveying
also
something,
normal
and if
storage.
there is
I can
another
receive from
person
a
who is
client also.
writing
I can
only
receive that
one
traffic onto
page
the
and
Ethernet
conveys the
switch.
same
I can
thing or
receive
even more than what
fiber
you have
channel
conveyed through
iSCSI
4
storage on
pages,
the
the
fiber
one who
channel
has
part of the
written
switch. So that is
one
called
page
fiber channel
is
over
the one who
Ethernet.
will be
Similarly,
selected
you have a
or
concept
is
called
the one
voice
who will
over
get
IP.
the
Right?
maximum
Why
marks.
voice over IP is
Why
you are
this?
having now
Why so?
calls on
Because
all
they
calls
know
are
that
free
writing
because what
that
is
one
happening?
page
People
is
are
not that
charging you for
easy.
the data.
Writing 4
So what is
pages
happening? The
easier.
data is anyway
You
carrying
can
your
write
calls
randomly
also.
whatever
Hence
comes
your
to your
calls are
mind. But
free. If you
writing,
pay for the
choosing
data, if you
exact
pay for
word,
the IP
exact
packets which are
sentence,
coming in,
brick
your
after
data
brick,
packets are your
constructing. You remove one brick,
packets,
the
voice
building
packets are also coming
collapses.
in
So you
because the
remove
voice is
one
coming
word,
through
it doesn't make
IP.
any
So if you are
sense.
charged for
But you
IP,
remove hundreds of
your
words,
voice becomes
it
free.
makes
So that is
sense
how
in the other
all our
case.
mobile
So
calls are
that should
free
be
and
avoided.
data
So
is
every
charged.
word
If
should
data is
contribute
over,
something
you
to
need
the
to recharge the
meaning.
data
Words are
again
like
because
leaves
they are earning more
from
money
Alexander
because of
Pope,
this new technology
and where
called
they
voice
most
over IP.
abound,
In
much
similar
fruit of
sense,
sense
you have what
beneath
is
is
called a
rarely
fiber
found.
channel over Ethernet, and that
Words are
is
like leaves.
connected to what
So
is
there
called
are
the
so many
CNA,
leaves,
that is the
and if they
converged
hide the
network
fruit,
adapter, and it is
so
connected to
you
the
will not
virtual machine.
see the
So,
fruit.
and
The
then there is
fruit is
also
like
what is
the
called
meaning. So
virtual
he says
switch.
that if there
Okay,
are less
virtual
leaves,
switch
less
is
words,
like
you'll be able to see the
a
fruit.
layer 2 switch which
And
actually
then
supports Ethernet protocol, but
another
now it is
interesting
sitting
quote from
inside a
Charles Colton.
hypervisor,
He says
right?
that
So there is
the
a
writer does the
virtual switch
most
which you
who
can
gives
load.
the reader the
The
most
good example
information
is
and takes from
OVS,
him the least time,
open virtual switch,
most
or you can
information and
download the
least
software
time.
and play with it a little bit. So
So
as simple
this is
assignment
something you
to
should
you,
also
whatever I
keep in
told,
mind whenever
I
you are
would
conveying
expect, I would suggest
anything. So if
just
you are
bring
in
a
a
laptop or a good,
webinar, if you are giving a
what do you say, a
lecture,
desktop
if you are giving a
notebook, just
presentation,
ensure that you will have a
audience will
10 GB
like
RAM,
you if you are
2 to
able
3
to
virtual
give
machines,
maximum
right? Set
information
up a
and
network
taking less
quantity
of
of
the
data,
time.
right? And try to assign IP
Audience
addresses and send packets from
may like
one
if you are
virtual
using
machine to another
very
virtual machine.
flowery
Start up
words,
all the 3
making it
virtual machines
very
at the same
interesting
time
for an hour.
on an
But
open
at the end
virtual
of it,
switch and
if
try to
somebody
see
asks,
the
what did you
virtual
learn from this?
connectivity.
They say, no,
So that
I
is something that you can
didn't
try
understand
to do.
anything.
So these are
So
the
there's no point.
differences between
So you try
HBA and
to
CNA,
give
iSCSI
more
HBA and
information in less
FCHBA
time,
and CNA.
and
So
for that you
the
need to
basic idea
work.
is
But this does
CNA
not
is
mean, when I
combination of
say this,
FC,
you do not
HBA
use
and IC.
shortened forms
It
of
combines
words.
both of them, and HBA is
Although
only
certain ones are
for
acceptable,
iSCSI
which I am going to tell
multi-tenancy.
you
That
later.
is what you can look
So
at.
writing
So
like
the idea is
DETN for
virtual
between
local area networks are
NO,
created with NATs, and then similarly VCNs
NO
are
should be
created.
avoided,
So I
NO
give you a
dot,
break
because
here.
most
I
of the
also
times you
take
write without that dot.
a glass of water.
You think
So
number,
maybe
but
just
actually people think no.
ask if you have any questions.
So, and then contractions like is thing, doesn't, can't, won't. So all those things should be avoided. It takes slightly more minute, but then if you follow these hints, your emails and then the communication in digital media will be very effective. The other thing that you should keep in mind is plainness. Be very plain and
Yeah,
simple.
no
So
need
look
to
at the
be
example that
you
Charles
just check
Dickens
your
has
chat. Are
given.
there any
Use
questions?
simple words. He says, when a man has anything of his own to say and is really earnest that it should be understood, he does not usually make cavalry regiments of his sentences and seek abroad for sesquipedalian words.
Sir, this is Arul
Okay.
Kumar from
What Dickens is simply saying is
So
that
my question is related to like that
do not use polysyllable words, do not use words which has many syllables, because that will confuse the reader. So use something that will be easy for them to understand. But while doing it, he
Yes.
deliberately uses difficult words so that you find it difficult.
SDN and
So plain
virtual
words
switching,
are
what
usually
you
the
talk about.
short and
Yes, sir.
familiar
Yes,
ones.
yes.
You can
See,
catch the
SDN
reader's
is
attention
the same.
more easily by
Because I'm
using
here
such
first
words.
time.
Both are different.
Uh,
Both are different. SDN,
Okay, okay.
and the
SDN is
style
basically the
does not
switching layer,
consist in
and
displaying your vocabulary.
create
So it should not
you
be
can
like that
create
when somebody is
what you
reading your
call
email. Should keep
basically SDN stands for again hardware.
encyclopedia,
Virtual switch
dictionary,
is
go
literally
to
virtual,
Wikipedia
virtual,
to
right?
understand what is it
Okay.
that you are
You
saying.
But
understand that
here also you
Okay,
SDN
said that
so they should be
the
able
physical
to
switch only
understand even
virtually
without going through
converted
dictionary.
into main virtual,
Your
sir. The
word
physical
should be
switch.
contextual so that
in
even
SDN
if
what
the word is
different
difficult, they should be able to
the data
get the
plane and the
meaning
control
and
plane,
guess through the context.
Yes,
right?
data plan, yeah, south
Look
and
at
north.
a
Yes.
simple
So
example.
South and North
While
together,
going
right?
through
Two
the
of them that still
blackout
together.
instruction
But
during
of course,
World
you
War
can have an
II,
SDN enabled
President Roosevelt crossed out
right? So
Yes.
that is also
Okay.
there.
terminate the
So you can
illumination.
try to create
Okay,
that also.
terminate the
Here again,
illumination and substituted turn out the
what is
lights.
the
The kind
difference
of
is
So what
the
he
kind of
thought, like people
SDN
who are in
has
the
a control,
military, army,
okay, sir.
they may not be
centralized control
that
over everything. Here there
educated
is
to
no centralized control
understand
in OVs,
the difficult,
right?
the
Okay. So all this one has
sesquipedalian
a
words like
advantage. Okay.
terminate the illumination.
Which one
Different
will
So
be
why
users,
don't we say light for
different
illumination?
users,
And why don't we say
different
turn
users.
out or
SDN,
put
if you
off
need a centralized control
instead of
network,
terminate?
right? You want to
So
control the entire network from a central
when
location.
somebody like
You want to push the
Roosevelt,
policy from a
the
central location,
president can
then you
think
will
of
use that. But otherwise,
toning
of
down
course,
the
SDN
language,
based
why
cloud
can't
is
normal
obviously a
human
better
beings like us, when we are
Okay.
communicating,
So okay.
we should also think about toning
So
down
so for this
this
particular
kind of
switching, so
difficult
sorry, sir.
words and then try to
Yeah, go ahead.
reduce
May I
it.
proceed? May I proceed,
Now,
sir?
few more practical hints
Sir,
before I go
see,
to the
when you are
next
talking
one.
about the virtual switch
Cliches
cloud, so
should be
this one
avoided.
again form a
Now,
network
cliches
of
are the
right?
overused
Yes,
phrase.
yes, yes.
So so okay, fine, sir.
They look very
Yeah,
cheap
Thank
but
you,
if
sir.
you
and
want to
then they
create
look cheap
a
in choice
software defined virtual switch,
because
then
of
you
the
can do
fact
that. That's
that
what I'm telling, right?
Okay,
they
fine,
are
sir.
actually
Yeah, yeah.
overused, often used to save the trouble of inventing new phrases. Most
Yeah,
of the times, they are the ones that comes to your
yes, yes.
mind very quickly when you are writing something. Burning question, food for thought, last but not the least. So these are like idiomatic expressions which come to your mind very quickly. But when you write something like this, look at the example. If you have no axe to grind, why are you towing his line and helping him to fish in troubled
No,
waters?
the passive
If you
in the
write
sense of you are
continuously
talking
with
about
these
cables,
idioms
right?
and then
We are
worn
not,
out
we
phrases,
are only
so it will not make
virtualizing
sense.
the
But some
infrastructure.
of
You
them
are
are still
only
vigorous, like hit the nail on the
enabling
head,
the
wear and tear.
virtualization of the
So
physical
use
infrastructure. When you talk about physical
only when they
infrastructure,
are
these are different
relevant and when
components.
they are
You're talking about
appropriate,
storage,
otherwise
you're
you
talking about
don't
servers,
do
you're
that.
talking about network
Now,
switches, network
just a
switches,
funny
and
cartoon
routers. They are the active components. The passive
which
components are the
tries
cables.
to
So we are
tell
not worried
you
about the cables. Hence,
how
fiber channel
corporate
traffic
offices
is not
have
traffic
informal
coming through
communication, people
optical
use
fiber.
this.
So
Look at
obviously
this.
optical
To
fiber
make a
cables are
long story
used
short,
for fiber channel
what
traffic.
it all boils
But
down to
fiber
the
channel
final
traffic is not
analysis
the
is
traffic
that
which is coming
what you
only
should
through
take away from
optical
this
fiber
is
cables. It is not
now if you look at
fiber
it,
channel is a
the
protocol,
boss
and
is
optical
using
fiber
or the
cable is a
speaker is
physical protocol.
using
So we are
too
not
many
combining them,
cliches
right?
and till now he has not come to the point.
So yeah, let us
Till now he
continue
has not come to the point. So
yeah,
this is how
Sorry to
you
stop
will
you.
meander.
One question
You
from
will waste the
Shalini.
time of the audience when you are writing email.
OneStack
So
and
be
virtual
careful
box.
about
And one
this kind
question
of
from Yogesh. What is the
phrases.
difference between
Avoid
virtual box
using this.
and container?
And then the most important ones
correct.
when you are
Coming to that,
like engineers, when you are
containers, yes,
scientists, when you are
containerization. So the first
mathematicians.
thing that
So
you can look at the screen
be
now. Are you
very
able to see the
careful
screen?
about
This is
avoiding
our
this
software. As it is
jargons.
said. So hypervisors
The
aim to
language full of
introduce, there are so many
technical or
hypervisors, but
special words.
prominently if you want to do
Sometimes
some
like
research or
lawyers,
something,
for
you can look
example,
at
will
this Zen,
use lot of
VMware,
legal
KVM,
terms which
kernel
may be
workloads,
difficult for
KVM
the
stands for
common people
KVM
to
and Zen
understand.
are
In
basically
good
open source,
communication,
and Zen
intelligibility by a
server
population
is the
larger
version
than
that you should use,
that for
because
which
there are
it
like
is
Ubuntu and
intended
Ubuntu server. You
should be
have two
aimed at,
machines,
which
right?
means
Ubuntu desktop
like
and
even
Ubuntu
if I
server.
am
Similarly, Zen and Zen
addressing
server are
something
there.
to the
So we
final
want
year
to use Zen
students,
server.
I should
And then
write
similarly
in such a
VMware.
manner
And VMware is
even the
proprietary
first year student
from
should
the
be able to
VMware company.
understand, even
And
the
then
students who are about to
it's
reach
called
first year
KVM. So
should be
these are
able to
what are called
understand.
hypervisors.
So good
Hypervisors are sitting
communication
directly on the bare
should
metal
be
hardware,
using plain
right?
words,
Now,
simple
hybrid
words
cloud
instead
software,
of
when you look
flowery
at it, there
words,
are
and
different
the
examples
large
of cloud
number of
software.
audience should be able
So
to
one of
understand
the
that.
example that you
So
already
let us
heard
look
is
at an
OpenStack.
example.
OpenStack is the hybrid hybrid cloud software. I talked about earlier.
So,
Before,
like this is an example for a
physical data center was virtualized
badly
or what
written
a virtualized data center. The
sentence with
virtualized
lot
data
of
center
jargons,
was a cloud
and you will
computing
find that
layer was
this is
put on
like
top of that.
the typical
It became what
official
is called
communication. Look
a
at this.
cloud.
The
So
decision
the
to
layer that sits on
eschew
top,
an immediate
one
price increase
virtualizes is the
has been
hypervisor.
taken by
The
the
management layer
firm
which sits on
in the
top is
interest
the
of
cloud software.
facilitating
So sometimes when you look at
agreementation
OpenStack has
within
two
the
flavors,
industry as a
built Zen
whole
or
on a
built KVM.
standardized
You can have
policy
either one of them.
of
So
simultaneous actions
the
or
KVM or
prices,
Zen is part of the OpenStack software.
which
Another
will
version
it
is
is
the
on within the
CloudStack.
next few
Earlier,
months. Okay.
initial when
Now,
I started my
what should be the
research work
correct
with
one?
this thing, it
The
was
firm has
eucalyptus.
decided to
Earlier,
postpone an
it was
immediate
purchased by
price increase by
HP,
a few
Hewlett
months.
Packard, and it has become HP Helion.
It
And
is
then you have
hoped
Open
that
Nebula.
within this
Also,
period, the
earlier the
industry
first
as a
open
whole
source
will
tool came from
arrive
Open
at an
Nebula.
agreement
But the
about
most
simultaneous
popular now is the
action on
OpenStack, right? So OpenStack
prices.
and CloudStack are two
Now, you can see
open
the
source cloud
difference. The
environment,
one on the
cloud
top
computing environment.
is
Now, if
technically
somebody
too
wants to work on
difficult,
cloud
full of
computing, what he should
jargons.
do,
The
he
one
should try to
below
first set
is
up
making sense
hypervisors,
even to all
KVM or
people.
Zen.
Uh,
Try to see because both are open
Somebody is
source.
messaging
Try
that
to
I'm not
put the
able to see
keyboards and
PPT.
see
Already it is
how it
answered
looks
that.
like,
Try to
what
ping
actually
like my
are
name
the
T
functionalities
Ravichandran is
of each of these
presenting. So
softwares.
ping
Then you
and
need
then
to
you'll
set
be
up an
able to see
OpenStack.
that.
Now,
Otherwise, it will be
I'll be
lost
moving to
with
that. I'll give
one
that
of the many
instructions in detail.
faces
So
which
I
are
have
shown. So you have to
the
identify
second
that
question
and pin it.
that I would like
Others
to
are
answer.
able to see.
So hope you have
I'm
understood
just
what is
going
the
ahead with
difference
the
between
next
KVM and
important
OpenStack.
point. Email
OpenStack is
etiquette.
the overarching thing, and KVM is the
Spend an
inside
extra
thing. It is
minute
like a heart. KVM or Zen
to
is
save
like
an
the
hour
heart,
of the
and
receiver.
OpenStack is like the body.
One of the
OpenStack and
crimes
CloudStack is
that
like
we
the body.
commit
Now,
on
talking
digital
about Docker,
communication is
when I talk about
utter
Docker
disregard
or a
for the
container,
time of others.
container doesn't have a
How many
hypervisor.
webinars, how
Container
many
has a software
seminars, how
called
many
Docker
lectures,
or a container software, you can
and
call it.
most of
The
them
common word is like Docker,
sometimes
but
end
Docker is
up giving
also the name of a
nothing.
software, right?
Complete
So
utter disregard
Docker
for
and
the
containers
other
are
people because
interchangeable
just
words.
junk is given,
Docker is the name of the
less
company
meaning
also, and
is
hence you
evoked
cannot say
because
that
neither the
Docker, but
sender
Docker is
nor
also the
the
name of the
borrower
software,
is really
right?
concerned
It is like a
about this.
Xerox machine.
Now, if you are
Earlier,
going
we would
to
call it a
create
Xerox
a
machine. Why
very
would call it
good
a Xerox machine?
etiquette,
Because only a
email
company called
etiquette,
Xerox would
so
make it.
spend an extra minute.
Xerox
When I say
Lego.
extra minute,
Then
I'm
we
just
now call it
using that as
photocopy
a
Lego,
figure
right? The
of
actual word
speech.
is the
In fact,
photocopying
you may
machine,
have to
but we
spend
used to
more
call it a
time
Xerox machine.
to save
Similarly,
even
Docker.
few
Docker
minutes
is the
of
name
the
of the software also,
receiver.
and the
Now,
Docker
how
is the
you can
name of the
spend that
concept
extra
also.
minute?
The other word is the container. What is the difference
You
between
should spend
container
that on
and
editing the text,
container and this
checking the
thing?
spelling,
The difference is
inserting
virtual machine is
emoticons,
not created. When you
making
look at
use of
virtual machine
punctuation
not
marks,
created, you don't have a physical
dividing
operating system.
lengthy
What
matter
happens?
into
You have
readable
you have
paragraphs.
it is something looks
It
like a
cannot be one long
what is called the
two-paged
hosted
paragraph. It has to be
hypervisor. If you look at
divided.
the hosted
One
hypervisor, it has
idea, one
hardware.
paragraph.
On top of the hardware, it has
And
operating
remembering
system.
to
On
type
top
a
of the operating
descriptive
system, it has a
subject
layer
line.
called the
And
hypervisor. In
finally,
this
by
case
not
of
sending
container,
an
you don't have the
unsolicited
hypervisor
and
layer, but you have
irrelevant
a
mail.
very thin layer hypervisor to begin
Yesterday,
with,
I've
and
been
it is
telling
called the
you in
container.
so many ways
On top of the
that
container layer, you have what
do
are called
not call
container
someone
routines, which
just
are
because you
created.
have the mobile
Containers are
number
not
and
machines
you have a
because
mobile
containers don't have
and
operating system.
your call
Where
is
is the
free.
operating system?
So I
Operating
said,
system
do
is
not
below.
hijack the time
Operating
of
system
others.
sitting
The
exactly
same
on
thing
top of
goes
the
with emails
hardware,
also. Do
right?
not
So that
send
is the
an
difference. Now, what does the
unsolicited,
container have? The
irrelevant
container
mail.
has some APIs which are
Let us
needed
briefly
to
look at
interact
each
with
of
the
these aspects in
bots,
the following
right? So you create a
subheadings.
container. On top of the
I hope
container, your
the voice is
application will
clear.
run.
If
Then yes,
somebody is
the
not hearing
hypervisor
it, I
based thing,
think
what
you
will
have
happen
to
on the
increase the
hypervisor? You
volume
create an
of
operating
the
system.
system,
Again, you have
put it in
an application running on the
full
OS,
100,
because on the
or
OS you have a
use a
compiler,
headphone and you'll
some
be able
APIs,
to
and you have
hear
some
it clearly.
whatever
Now,
environments that you require, IDs that
before
you
I want
require, you
to
create that,
conclude this
and then
part
you
of the
put on top
session,
of
I
that your
want to
application.
emphasize
Application
on
runs on
one
OS.
important
OS
part
talks to the
which has been
hypervisor.
already
Hypervisor talks to the
raised
hardware.
yesterday
In this
about
case,
ethics
there is a
in
container. Container has
communication in the
all the
digital era.
requirements
Ethics is
for
relevant
application to
whether you are
run. Here
communicating
again, it
offline
talks to the
or
Docker
online,
software. Docker software
and
talks to
be
the
ethically
operating
correct.
system. Operating system
Now,
talks to the
you know that I'm
hardware,
fond of asking
right?
you questions.
what is the difference.
I just want to
I will show you a
quickly
slide towards
take
the
your
end.
views on
Permits. This is
what
the basic
ethics mean
architecture
to you. I'm going to look at the chat,
maybe
and then
slightly
before
bigger
I give
version.
my answer
You can see
and
here,
what is
this
it
how
that is
these are all
required,
the
so
software
shoot your
components inside
answers in
a
the chat
hardware
very quickly.
OpenStack. So when you look at any cloud system,
Okay,
if you look at,
Ananya
there will be
Chatterjee,
some
a
100
code
servers.
that one should live
The
by,
100
fine.
servers
not only one, everybody should live by. Be considerate of others. Dr. Sabir Nawaz, core values in life. Okay.
I somehow missed that picture. I wanted
Arul
to take
Moli,
the picture
not
also.
hurt others.
So,
Okay.
what happened was I wanted to see how a cloud looks like. So I went to the IBM Bangalore.
Any
office,
other
and they took me to
answers?
their cloud. And when I
What
went inside, on the
does
left hand side
ethics
were
mean
all
to you?
servers.
Principles.
They
Okay.
are all storage
Principles,
devices or storage
predefined
racks,
value in life.
right? So they on the right hand side, the whole lot.
Ethics are those which add
So
meaning to
there
life,
that many
values,
storage racks were,
moral
and
principles.
all of them were
Yeah,
connected with
Arnava,
cables
yes, I like the
via
word
and
moral
what is called,
principles, moral
a cloud
values.
network.
Uh,
So that was a physical network.
Yeah, it comes
On
from
top of the
honesty,
physical network, all those
doctrine of
100 or
life.
1000 or I don't know how many servers
Ethics
were there.
actually
Thousands of
simply
servers
it's defined
in
as
that
moral
machine or thousands of storage
philosophy.
devices on that.
Yes, Mrityunjay is also
The
saying
entire
moral
ground
principle
floor,
that govern a person's behavior
ground floor, the
or the
cellar,
conducting of an
entire
activity.
cellar
Yes,
was
full
completely,
definition you have given.
made into
Sarabjit
a
is
big
saying moral
network,
principles
right?
of
So
behavior,
that was
right?
their data center.
Moral
And the data
principles
center was
in terms
virtualized
of
for them
knowing
was
what
was
is
the
right, what is
cloud.
wrong.
So
Okay,
after you
and
virtualize,
as
you
far
have
as
a components
the
like components which are
digital
mentioned here. Maybe when you find time, you can
media
look at
is
these. These are
concerned,
some
so ethics
services.
actually
The dashboard service,
tells us
like
this,
maybe you
and
would
this is
have
a definition of
accessed
ethics I
Google
want you to
Cloud
keep in
or
mind.
Amazon Web Services, or you would
Ethics is
have
knowing
used
the
what is
difference
called
between what
Rackspace or
you
any of
have a
these
right to
companies,
do and what is
Windows
right to do.
Azure, or any of these
Now, as I said,
applications that you have used.
you
Would have
think
seen
you
all
have
of
a
them.
right to
And
call anyone
the front
anytime.
end that comes
You
in
think you have a right to
dashboard,
send
that's
a
called the
hate mail.
horizon. The network
You
service
think
is
that
the
you have a
neutron.
right
The
to
compute
touch
service,
that send
actually
button
creating a
without
VMs,
even
is
bothering
the
to
Nova.
edit it.
Bare
You think
metal
you have.
part is handled
But
by
what is
Ironic.
right
The
is
identity
where
service of the
ethics is
authentication
involved.
is
What is
handled by
right is you
Keystone
should not
service.
hurt the
Image
sentiments
service,
of others.
where you create
You should
ISO
always put
files are
yourselves
kept.
into the
They are
shoes of
called the
others,
glance. The
and then
object that is
you
storage,
should
block storage or object storage,
create that
Swift and
humanity,
Cinder. There is a database,
even if you are
storage
sending it through
trove,
the
and all
machines.
of these are
So what is
orchestrated
right
by
to
what is
do?
called heat. As
That
you
is
see,
where
this
what
is
is
the horizon, this is
good
the
or
keystone.
bad
Ceilometer keeps track of
is
the monitoring
implied.
of the network,
Now,
and then
most
you
of the
have
times,
heat,
good,
which
bad are
orchestrates
relative
all of
terms.
them.
That is why
All these are
ethics is a very
orchestrated by
slippery term.
heat.
It's very
Then you have
difficult
a
to
Swift,
pinpoint.
Cinder, Trove.
What
These
is
are
good for
again
one
storage
may not be
related.
good for others.
Ironic is
But
the
then
hardware
there are
related.
some universally
Bare metal
acceptable
related.
norms. The
Neutron is a
single
network
norm is
related. Nova.
like do
This is the
something that
heart of
doesn't hurt
game when
others,
you look
as
at the
some of you
hypervisor
are
in the heart.
trying to
Nova does
tell.
the compute
And
part of it.
do
The
something
glance and
that
all the
you
VMs
want
are
the
all
other person to do
handled
it
by
for you.
Nova. And
Okay, it's
glance
like give
keeps the
respect and get
images.
respect.
Images are the
So
ISO
you
files.
treat the others the way you
These are
want to be
something, and there are
treated,
so many
and that is
services
something
which are still
that
getting added. So these
refers
are
to
some more
as
services,
ethics.
and like this, these
Now,
are all the other services. So you can
you
go
should
on
be
and see
ethically correct.
as time permits, and all of them are connected like this. How
There
it
is this
works.
old
So if
saying
you
that
look
says
at
all is
one
fair
part of
in
it, this
love
is
and
the left
war,
side part of it.
and
On
it
the
looks
left
like
side,
people
this
who
part
are
of
on
it,
the
you can see the
cyberspace
next
are saying
slide.
all
You
is
can
fair
see
in
the
love, war,
connections.
and cyberspace.
These are all
So
available
we
on
can do anything
OpenStack
unethical.
documentation. You can
So we can
directly
hack,
download the
we can
latest version of the
take the
documentation, and you
idea of
can find
someone.
all these
So
pictures
you should
from the
understand
OpenStack material. So you have
that's
a
a
bare
common
metal
thinking.
service, the
And
Ironic.
now we are
You
talking
have
at a
a dashboard
professional
service,
realm.
Horizon. You have
Okay.
a
Whenever I am talking
there is
about
the heat,
effective
there is the
communication,
orchestration
I am
service,
looking
the
at you
compute
as a
service, which is the
professional
Nova,
who is fully
and the
coded,
database
who
service is
is
the Trove. This
with
is the object
full
storage, that
moral
is the Swift.
fiber,
And then on the
and
other side, you
who
have
is
Keystone,
trying
which
to
does the
communicate with people
issues,
in all the
Ceilometer, which does the
presentable manner possible,
keeping
and
track
who
of
is
what
trying to
has
persuade
metrics. The
others
metering
and try to
is done
make
here.
them things
Block storage,
clearly and then
Cinder, and image storage,
create that
glance,
desirable
ISO files.
response. So
And
for
then you have
that,
the network
if you are
related things,
ethically
the
correct,
Neutron.
your
Sahara has
integrity
the
level
data
will be very
processing
high,
requirement,
and
right?
people will
So
have that
another simple
credibility in
diagram
your
on
communication,
the
which is very,
RHEL
very
side, the
important.
enterprise Linux side.
Okay.
OpenStack hardware
So,
looks something
do
like this.
not
OpenStack
lower
and
your ethical
enterprise Linux
standards
work
for
closer
anything
together.
on
So
the
you can
internet.
actually try to set up
So that is something that
using
you keep
the
in mind.
RHEL also. You can use
While
RHEL.
unethical means may
KVM is
bring you
inbuilt
some
into
short-term
Red Hat
gains.
Enterprise Linux, RHEL.
To gain
So
a
you
truly
can get
professional
RHEL
image, one
free
has
of
to
cost. This is
maintain
usually
highly
proprietary. But if
ethical
you say that you
standards in
want to
cyberspace too.
get the developer
But
version,
because
you
of
can
the
enroll as a
risk of
developer. You
being
can
caught in
explore as a
unethical
contributor,
practices
and then you can
very
get it.
high,
It's free. So
and
I
also also the fact that if caught, it can damage reputation gain for years. One should be ethically correct. So all of us, as I said, I'm assuming are professionals or would be professionals. So it's very important that you maintain ethical communication so that even at a later stage, if your email is quoted, misquoted, So people know that
Swift and then dashboard.
you are ethically
Now,
right,
you look
and
at
nobody can
physical
prove that
hardware,
you are
right?
ethically
That is
wrong.
the software components. Now, if you look
Now,
at the physical
towards
components,
the
there are two
concluding,
nodes. One
I'm
is the
just
computer
taking a
node, and one is
diversion
the
from
compute. Only two
Network,
nodes
and
are
just
there.
to
Then
make
I'll
it
have this thing. If I have three nodes,
vibrant and
then I'll have
attractive
what
for
is
the
called a controller node
youngsters,
and a network
some
node and a
Facebook
compute node.
ethics.
And
So before I
if I
leave
have
it
100
open for questions,
nodes, let us say, then there will be one controller node, one network node, and
Facebook,
98 compute
just like
nodes.
email,
If I have 10, there
is
is one controller node, one
very
network node,
often
and 8
misused,
compute nodes.
confused,
So that is how it
not
looks like.
used
So what
properly.
actually happens here, if you have a controller node and
I use my
so
Facebook.
this is a Windows
Those of
like
you
the
who are
network
already
which
my
is
friends know
interacting
that I
between
use it
controller and
only for
compute node. And there's one
motivating others
external
and then
network which is
sharing
there. But when you
useful
have
information.
more
And there are
powerful
many
cloud
followers
that you want to
who
create,
just
then you
follow
need to get
because
into
the
three
quotations are
network
trying to
architectures
motivate
with a
them.
minimum of
So
three node
that
where
should be
you
the
have
one
three
that I have
networks
put
also.
at the
As you
end.
see,
Let your
the blue
Facebook
colored
give an
network is an
inspiring
external
look.
network. It
Okay.
is connecting from
Now,
outside.
what is
Then there is a
normally
network
happening?
between the network node and the compute node.
You use
So from
this
here,
as a
the
kind
data
of
is coming
bait,
in,
as a kind
external
of
users
trap
are coming
for
in.
other
From there, it
people,
is going to
and you try to be
the
dishonest
three
as much
network,
as
that is
possible.
the
So Facebook is
tenant
not to
network,
be
and
used
from the
that
tenant
way.
network, it is
If you
connected
are
to the
trying to
tenants.
become a
And then
professional,
there is a
it is
control
very
network. The
important
control network
nowadays.
is the
Be
red
very
color one.
careful
The
with your
control network is
Facebook
the management
page
network. The management network
because
also has a control
whether you
network.
want Google
Now,
or
Tata
Microsoft
use the management network and
or
also manage the tenant
Infosys
network. Tenant network
or
is when we talk
any
about virtual
company
machines which
today,
are hosted on the compute
in your
servers.
career
Right? These
profile,
are the
they
servers.
are
This
asking
is
you
the
to
server
give
which
your
is again
Facebook
used as a
or
network
any
node,
social
and on
media.
these some server services are
It may be
running.
your
Here some
Instagram
services
or
are
your
running. Most
Twitter
of the
account.
services are running
They
on the
want you
controller node.
to
Right? So
friend
this
your
is what
boss
is
in
actually
that.
happening. So this is a three node architecture.
Now they
Another
are studying 10
SDN
years what you
based
have been
cloud
doing in
network that we
Facebook.
look at it.
Okay.
So here these are the
No,
external network.
it's
Users
important
are
that you
connecting
show
from
your
here
real
and they
face.
are directly running
What
onto
do
the
I mean
network
by
node.
show your
From the
real
network
face?
node, there are two
You
connections. There are two ways I can talk with the
you
network. So I can
do
talk to
not
all the compute nodes
you're not
and I can
so
talk to some
young,
service nodes,
you're not
and the network node
looking
is
that
what
good in
connects
your
all these compute
opinion.
nodes.
So you put
Right?
the
And there's
picture
another
of a very
network which
young and
connects
good looking
all these
person, whether a
nodes
boy or a
and
girl,
the
so that you think that
and
friends
the developer
will
server gives
more
access
friends
to
you
the
will have.
network
So
node.
that
Network
is
node is a dashboard
not
in the
the real
horizon, right?
face.
This can be happening.
Or you
So
put the
this
picture of a
red
model,
network and
or
blue
you
network,
put the
why
picture of an
this red
actor
network and blue
or an
network is
actress,
required, right?
and you
Now
hide your
when
real
you try to look
face.
at any
Now,
Indian
have
based
the
cloud
courage,
companies,
have the guts,
fortunately we have some
be ethically
Indian
right
based
in showing
cloud
your real
companies
face.
now, cloud
Put
computing
any
software
of your
now.
pictures,
Earlier it
whichever
was
you think
only
is the best.
major
Because
companies were
people today are
Google,
using
AWS,
Facebook
and
as an index
Microsoft. But now
to
you
judge
have
your
one Indian
character,
company
to
called
judge your
NetMagic.
behavior,
And NetMagic
and to even
supports
appoint
the
you
Hindu
in a
newspaper and
company,
also
and even to use it
Flipkart.
to
So when you
determine
have
whether you
Flipkart
will be
users,
staying in the
okay,
company,
Flipkart
whether you can
employees
be given
and
training
Flipkart
in the
users.
company, or
Now, when
looking
you
at
have
your
Flipkart
profile.
users, Flipkart
So you are
users
a
are coming
cheat, you
onto
are a crook,
NetMagic.
you are a
This is,
dishonest
let us say,
person, and you
NetMagic
should not be
office.
appointed
On
in
the
the
NetMagic
company.
office, maybe I have taken these
So
3,000 nodes, let us say, and I have
if you have
some
not thought
Flipkart
about
software.
it,
Flipkart software is
go
running
back
on
and then
these.
revise your page
So there are
accordingly.
other hardware also. There
And
are
while
other
you are doing it, do
servers and
not
other
post
companies
anything
are
that
also
can be
running their
misused.
tenant networks here.
So your
So the
intimate
Flipkart network is
pictures,
maintained here.
your
So the
personal
Flipkart
habits.
users are also
So
there,
you
and
just shared
Flipkart
it, but then
employees or the
somebody
Flipkart
cropped
system
it,
administrators are also there,
somebody
and they are doing
mutilated it,
something on
and
the
then put
Flipkart
it
software.
somewhere.
Users are
You
accessing the
don't do
Flipkart
such things.
software.
And do not
Now
use
they
the
both
messenger.
have to be on two
So
different
once you
networks.
connect to
So the Flipkart
Facebook, you
employees
can
and the
also
Flipkart
connect to
system
the messenger.
administrator comes onto this network.
Now,
And the Flipkart
if your
users like
close
you and
friend,
me, they come like this, they come
you
on the external network
actually
node,
try
they are
to
sent onto
send
the
some casual
network node.
messages, that
So
is
I can
fine.
only
Your friend
access
can
the guest
tolerate,
services
forgive.
of this, and I cannot
But
access the management
most of the
services.
times
If I
today
am
we
an
are also
employee,
using Facebook
I
as
get my
a
access to
mode of
this management network. So that
formal
is a difference
communication. We are even
between these
connected
things. So
to
if you have a three node
most of
architecture, it
the
is going to be
colleagues
this
and
like.
professionals.
So hopefully
So,
this
like
part
even
you
when I
understood the
make
physical part
friends,
of it.
I
So now we
just
have looked
see
at different
whether somebody
companies
is
which
already an
provide the
assistant
different
professor,
levels
somebody
of
is a
the
teacher,
hardware
somebody is
as you know,
engaged in
IBM, Dell,
education,
HP,
somebody is a student.
Oracle,
So I just
all
see
these big
the
companies,
profile
they provide the
and then
servers,
connect
right?
the person. Even if the person is
Virtualization
unknown,
software,
I
these are
feel
all
that okay,
virtualization software.
let us be connected
Cyber
academically.
Hyper-V is also
So
Microsoft.
when
KVM,
you are
vSphere is
connected, when somebody
VMware.
is connecting
VMware
you,
also is there.
you do not
I run
send
VirtualBox,
requests.
both
That
are
should be
there.
done on a
Then
formal
Parallels,
mail.
so many
For
companies. Then the
example,
cloud platform, so CloudStack,
if
Cloud.com,
a
Elasticstack,
professor or
Eucalyptus
an
Open,
eminent scientist is connected
OpenStack,
to you,
VMware, vCloud, right?
or a very high
then
profile
infrastructure as a
person
service,
from the ministry is connected to
Rackspace
you.
and Amazon Web Services.
So do not
Platform as a
immediately
service,
ask for a recommendation letter by sending a messenger. Okay,
MySQL
that
server and
message
all.
in the
You can
messenger.
have Google App Engine, the software as a service, Google Apps,
Interestingly,
NetSuite, Salesforce, they are all software as a service.
I don't want to
Then
tell
you
the
have,
name of the person.
companies which
There's a
set up
colleague
cloud
who
for you.
wanted to connect to
Right?
me.
Earlier,
She's
when you
assistant
want to set up a
professor.
cloud, you can go
So
to Google Cloud and create
connected,
your own account
and
and you
then
can do that. But
one
let us say
week
you want to set up a company
after
and
connecting,
you
the
want to
first
run
message
direct
comes
servers for
saying
you,
that
but you don't know how to do it.
can you just
Cloud
give me a
management,
reference
somebody
letter?
who
I am applying for
actually manage
this
the cloud
job.
for you. They will set up cloud.
I replied in the message
So these
itself
are
by saying
different
that
softwares also which
what
can
can
do
I
cloud
say in
management. Then there are
the
cloud brokers. Now, which cloud should I
reference
choose?
letter?
Where should I take the
Except
connection
that
from? I want a
I know
combination
you
of
as a
2 3 cloud
Facebook
environments.
friend,
So you can go
and
to cloud broker platform.
one
And
week
then there's
I
a
know
cloud
you, and in the
marketplace.
1
What is
week
cloud
you have
marketplace?
sent
We sell
messages
cloud.
related to movies
Amazing.
and
So you have
music,
a gravy tent,
and then
you can buy
some
everything,
useless
so you can sell
information.
this
So
thing. So these
only
are
this
the
much I can tell
companies
you
that you can
based
look
on
for
what
when
you
you're
have
looking at a
interacted with me.
cloud environment.
So I hope you are
Now,
understanding. So if
I
you
don't know
want
how much I
really
can
an
justice to this,
academically
but
committed
quickly
reference letter,
introduce this is
you
our
should prove your
Zen server
credentials
looks like,
and
right? So
send your
you have
CV properly
virtual machines which
in the
can be
formal
created
mode of
here.
email,
These are
requesting
virtual
formally
machines, and
instead
then
of
you have
using Facebook
a
Messenger
variety
to
of
make this
this thing. So
request. So this is again
optimization
violating
of
the ethical norm.
inside if you
It
set
is
up
again
Zen,
violating
how it
some of the
looks like,
norms
right?
that
So
we
these are some
decided,
here, and
where
similarly
you are
there
trying
is
to
something which is
hijack,
called
you are trying to
AVM.
force, and
So
then you are
AVM looks
completely violating the
I'm sorry,
soft
I'm not
skills
able to
norms, and then you are
give you
trying
time
to
on this.
push yourself,
Hyper-V
which
is
is
the Microsoft
unwarranted.
version.
And
The
then
vSphere is for
do
the
not like
hypervisor, the VMware
do
version.
not write any
So maybe you can read
sarcastic
through
or
this right
hateful
later.
comments
Let me
because
come
as I
to
said you cannot take
the
it back.
other aspect, and I'll
And
give more
do
time
not
for
like
questions.
everything,
So
even your
this
likes,
is how a physical
even your
hardware
likes.
looks like.
Be
This is some
careful.
of the work that I
You
want
don't
to
think
share.
that you are
Let's
pleasing
have
everything and then
things
putting
in
the
hand.
like. You just
Maybe
be careful
before
about the
I
like,
venture out onto what
because your
actually
likes
did
are
in
also
NIT
steady,
Jaipur,
and then your
let
likes
me
are also
give you some time
determining
for
and
you to ask
deciding
some
your real
questions.
personality. So
Rennie.
when you put something on Facebook, and then let's say even the topmost person in the institute is connected to you, the director is connected to you, the principal is connected to you, okay, and a very well wisher is connected to you. Now you have put hundreds of items for only one. That person is
So
putting
as
the
you see
like,
the
and
diagram
you
here,
feel so
this is the
good.
diagram which we
We
created.
feel
It's
that
published in a journal
this
called
man is liking
Journal of
this, sir
Networking
is
and
liking this.
Telecommunications, one of our
Okay,
paper
that means really it is
by
a
my
credit
PhD
worthy
student.
performance from my side.
This is something
So
that we are
remember this, when you like something, although you are encouraging someone,
so
the person should
the
not
controller
feel that,
server
oh,
and
she will
networking
like
server,
everything I
two
do.
servers are
He will
created,
like everything I
and
do. So I cannot take this kind of thing seriously. So beware
1
of
minute.
it. And as I was
Sir,
telling you yesterday, people are even studying the likes and then doing that data mining and trying to determine your character. So do not cross the stipulated time decorum while communicating with the opposite sex. I asked one of the girl students why you are not
So when I look at this
joining this
attack
fellow.
surface, the
Most
attack
of the
surface model.
male
So you
students
have
was
these
not connecting.
two servers.
She said that sir, they don't know the
You
limit.
can have any
So
number of
first
servers,
they
but
will
we
send a
have two
message at
servers.
6 o'clock.
So this
Then
was
if I
a model
respond,
which
then
was
they'll send it
designed.
at
So
8
you saw
o'clock
the
and
previous
test.
diagram
If I
also.
respond, then they'll send it
Based
at
on
12 o'clock and
a
check.
Zen
If I
kind of
respond, then they'll send a
architecture.
message
Again,
at
when
2
you look at a
o'clock.
KVM architecture,
So respect the
KVM based
time. So there's a
architecture
time
is
when
slightly different.
somebody is supposed to go to bed,
OpenStack based
and then there's a time
so
like
OpenStack based
beyond
architecture where
office
you have
hours.
controller server,
You cannot
networking
interact
server,
with
and
some
then you
people
have
unless
two compute
you are
servers,
really
right?
intimate and
So
unless you have
and then
created
you
a
have these
kind of
networks called tenant network and management
rapport with the
management
other
network
person.
consists
You
of
cannot
all
presume
the
that
nodes.
you will message someone at
Management
3
network excludes controller
a.m.
server.
Although the person is
And then
awake,
you
you can
have
see that the person is
users who are
available.
connected
The
to the
person is
internet,
available
and they are
means the
coming into
person
the
is
network.
available for
So
something else. The
we
person is
actually
busy
set
with
up
some
this
other
kind of
activity,
a
or the
hardware
person is
within our
entertaining himself or
organization.
herself
We have
using her
VMware
own private
public
time.
cloud.
But
which we have set
that's
up.
not the time you can encroach into the privacy of others by sending a message. So that should be avoided. And as I said,
that is at
use the
knowledge level
Facebook to
keep it
give
as
an
a separate for
inspiring
use.
book. Let
But we are trying
people
to
come
build
to
an
you.
OpenStack
Yesterday I
software,
told you
OpenStack setup,
about
and we are
mobile
trying to do it,
communication.
on
I
our
said
own,
that
and
do not be in the
that
block
is where
list.
we try to set up.
So like that,
on one server,
let
we needed
people do not
network
unfriend you.
connections, 3 network
Okay,
interface
so
cards.
periodically I
So we
just
did
check
that,
my thing and then I
initially we could
unfriend
not
people also
get
if
this
they are
because we
sending
could not
wrong kind
offer
of
a server, but
messages.
that server
And
had
if I
only
think that it's a nuisance,
inbuilt
I do
cards,
that.
only
Not
2
only
cards
me,
for
many
that.
people do
There was a
that.
provision to
So
add one more network
if you want to
interface card.
value
That we can
relationship,
enable to,
keep your
but there was a
Facebook
provision to
also
add
ethically
space to add one more
integrated,
network interface card. So at
inspiring,
that time, but
motivating
we were
for
not getting
others.
other hardware.
Do
I'm
not
talking
share
about the
junk
practical
trash.
difficulties when you want to
Okay.
do some
Create a
research.
professional
Correct?
look
So we
so
got
that
4 servers.
tomorrow
And we
if your
got a
boss
network
says,
to
I
set up
want
an
to be
internet
your
network.
friend,
We got
so you should
switches.
be able to
And
say,
all
yes
these
sir,
things
you
were
can become.
possible. But
So or yes
what
ma'am,
was
you
not
can
possible
become.
was
So you
now
should not feel
there was
embarrassed.
no
No,
switch.
you,
So
I don't
later
want or
I
you
researched
avoid.
somewhere suddenly.
No,
How can
anybody
I
should be
run
able to become your friend
two ports
because your
on a single
Facebook
card?
is
So they said
an
Intel
open
then
book.
came up with an
Okay,
advantage,
and
and they said
everybody can
we have
see
what is
you,
called a
see through
dual
you.
port
Although
Ethernet
it
card.
is a
Dual port
kind of
means 2 ports on
social
a single
media,
card.
your individuality
Wonderful,
is
right?
very
So
much
I was
expressed
amazed
in
at
that.
the
So
way the
with that
technology was moving ahead, right?
thing,
So I
now
actually
I'm
needed
just
3 network
giving
interface
you
cards. It was already
some
inbuilt.
time for
Also, what was there?
questions, comments,
How do I
doubts,
manage
suggestions,
this
and
slot? So when I put
appreciations,
it, when
whatever
I
you
looked at
have.
both these slots, I
And
saw that there is one
after
more
this, we
slot
can take
that
a
could be
break.
run. There was no one more
So,
slot. So
Monsha
3
Gauri,
cards cannot be
informative
placed. One
session.
other
Thank
card
you.
could be placed.
So,
On that
Sabir,
card,
thank
2
you.
ports would be
Okay, your
placed.
questions,
So
doubts?
you should not get stuck. Array, now it is not possible. Now I have to buy a server which will have 3 Ethernet ports, was what we were thinking. But no, there is an alternative
And
way of doing
Dr.
this.
Shyam, if I
So that
had
is how
missed any
technology
question, you
has
can
evolved. That is how
also
technology has
highlight
improved.
that.
So then we set up this, and then we connected these things, and then we could understand how the communication is going on, where the
Okay, sir.
virtualization layer
Like,
is actually sitting, where VM
Yeah,
is coming,
start.
can I
where
ask a
virtual
question?
switch
Like,
is
how
coming.
do you deal with
All these
people who
software
send you
functionalities
late
as
night
you set up
messages, like
controller
office
servers. When I
messages
call it a
late
controller
night?
server, how does it become a
So
controller
should we
server?
respond at
So
that
when you
moment,
look
like
at
at
the
1 o'clock or the
OpenStack
next day?
manual, you will
What
have
should be
to
our
set up one
approach?
server and run some
Okay,
simple code. You have to install the same software,
Dr.
but
Shyam
you run
Kiran,
some
thanks for
codes
asking this
and give
question.
some assignment of
Like
an IP address and
late
all those.
night
Then it
message.
becomes a controller server.
Okay,
Then you
if it
have a
is
set of
encroaching
software
on your
and a set of
privacy,
commands what you run on another
okay, you
server.
have
And
every
once you
right
run on those
to
servers and you
delete the
see that there are
message,
3 ports,
respond
it
rudely,
becomes
or
one
not
slot.
even
And then
respond
you
to that
create 3
on the one
network
hand.
addresses. So
On
you
the other
connect
hand,
network virtually
let's say it's
lands.
a very
Then it becomes what is called a
professional
network server.
message
Then you set
seeking
up
your
every
help
compute server
at a
that you
late
want to
night
add.
time,
If you want to add 5,
and
you
then
have to
the
set up
message is
5
sent so
servers. If
that
you want to add
you
one,
do not
you add
miss
it
an
to the server
email
side.
or
So
some
like
other
that. So
thing.
we had
So
5
it's just
servers
to
wanted to
alert
set up a
you.
compute server
So
on 3 machines.
then
And then
the
once
choice
all
is
of them
still
were on the
yours.
same network,
Like
then it
if you
worked
don't
fine.
mind
But then
the other
initially
person
what was happening
knowing
was we
that you
combined
are
both these
awake,
networks.
you can
All
still
the
respond to
networks were
that.
on the same,
Or you can
what do you
still
call,
say that
they are
I'll think
all on the
about that in the
same
morning. I'll get
network.
back to you
So
in the
then it was a
morning.
little
Or in
difficult.
the
So then
morning
we
also you
realized
can
that this is
respond
not
to that. See, that is
this is
why
not
I
how it should
said
be. They have to be
always
on 2
the
different
receiver
networks
is
because
the one
after
who is
setting up
in control.
everything, we started running it.
Always you can
We were
tell
totally
if it
discouraged.
is a
Then we
professional
realized
message
that
the boss
okay,
has
now
sent.
you can't
Always
have
you
the
can
users
say
on the
I
same
just missed
network
it.
and you cannot have the
I was
management
just
network on
checking
the
my
same
email,
network.
and even if
So
they say
obviously
it
you
showed
need to
available,
differentiate these
like for
networks.
example,
So user network,
if
there
you
was
see
one
my
address on the switch.
Facebook now,
And
it
these
will show
networks were on one
I'm
side of the
available.
switch. So
Okay,
we had to set
that
up
doesn't
3
mean that
networks.
I see
So
the
the
message
whole
and then respond to
configuration, the whole
someone.
amount of
So if there are
learning was
messages,
a
I may
great,
see even at
great
night, or
achievement.
I may see
So
even after
later,
2 days.
when you look at these
So
diagrams,
you need to make
this
it
is
clear to
basically a
them that
cloud
Facebook
security
message is not
related
my
diagram.
priority,
So where all
and you can
attacks
tell
can
them
happen.
normally I
And
check my
amazing
email,
to
and then
realize
if
that
you are
attacks can
sending us a
happen.
reminder,
And
then it is fine to me.
between 2 virtual
So the
machines,
choice is
between 2
yours.
virtual machines on
And if
different
it is
physical
somebody who is
systems,
encroaching on your privacy and you don't tolerate it, you have to put an end to it.
Virtual machine.
But if it is a permissible
there are
leak,
hardware level attacks,
and then it is a professional message, and you want to treat it professionally. Like for example, I would like to be seen as a professional person, and even if a student is asking a doubt, and if it is a genuine doubt at 3 o'clock midnight, like most of my students know that I can ask doubt anytime to sir. So they have that test. So tomorrow examination, and their entire night they are awake, and 3 o'clock somebody is asking me syllabus. I will not feel annoyed to give a response and say don't study this much. If I could do that. But if I'm too sleepy and then I don't want to see that message, I will also not respond and respond in the morning.
a virtual machine introspection tool.
That's it. The
So
choice is yours,
VMI
but make a discrete
would run on this,
response
and the
depending on
DOM
how
would
personal
actually
and how
run off
professional it is.
VM12,
Okay.
VM13,
So
and
there
so
are
on.
other
Sir, which
questions.
Server 1. So we have VM
Yeah, yeah.
1,
There are
1,
so
1,
many
3, and so
questions.
on, 1, 2, 1, 3, and so on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But here
Okay.
you have cloud computing server 2, so you have this.
So if I miss something, you can also point out. Yeah. Shalini Mood, how can we manage family, friends, and professional messages on Facebook? As I said, like one thing, it's only one Facebook. You don't have 10 Facebooks. Okay. So if you're transparent, if you're ethically correct, so you don't have to tell that your parents cannot join yours because your friends are there. So this is not something that is a private one, especially in today's digital era. Even if you think it is your most private one, you will be really foolish because it can be made. It's already public. Anybody can see that. And then today, as I said, it's high time that you need to come out of this exclusiveness in Facebook. There is no exclusivity there. Anybody can see anything. Anybody can take back from that. So try to make it professional. Try to make it open to all.
And here we see
And Shubham,
that these things can be done.
yeah, Shubham Sachan is asking, is it not high time to start educating children in school about etiquette? What are your thoughts on this? Shubham, already it's in progress. Like in some schools, already through EVS and all that, they are like a 1 hour lecture, they are doing it. But yes, it's right time that we have a full-fledged syllabus also. So Akshina is saying sometimes the receiver does not respond. So should we send a mail to him, her again? Yesterday this question was asked. I said send a polite reminder, and then if the receiver is connected to you through other forms like messenger, you can also send a message through that messenger. That is also possible. And if you need to call, you can take permission or fix an appointment and call the person also. So Shubham, so that it becomes natural habit to them. Yes, yeah. So that see today, for example, wearing a mask, although initially was forced to us, slowly it's becoming a new norm and it's becoming a natural habit to many of us. At least to the children. Children are more alert now. So yes, you are right. If you are introducing that to the school level, so it will become a natural norm. Mohan Sharma, which one is best salutation? Dear sir or respected sir? Although like I have another one on letter writing. You can search that online and from the communication skills. And today, like it's not in the purview, but I can tell you, dear sir,
itself doesn't
is slightly informal. On the one hand, respected sir, if you are writing to higher authorities like director or principal or any higher authority or respected ma'am, it is followed by yours faithfully. Dear sir is followed by yours sincerely. But if the person is known to you, and if it is your favorite teacher or even like for example, if I write to my director, I may not write respected sir because we know each other, and I will write dear sir. In that sense, dear sir is not that informal. So today in the normal parlance, dear sir is used, yours sincerely is used. Some people think respected sir is too like colonial, and then it's doing that. But still in official letters, respected sir is still used to people who are higher authorities. Okay. Arnava, this might be off topic, but it is good to add students in Facebook. Arnava Chatterjee, all my students are in Facebook. Okay. And in fact, like I encourage them to become my friends because it's very easy to communicate with them through the messenger. And they are also, we also create WhatsApp group, and then they are also in my WhatsApp group, and each class has a group, and sometimes they communicate using WhatsApp. It is the students sometimes decide that they don't want to be a friend in the Facebook because they want to maintain privacy. And there are some students who tell me that they do not have WhatsApp, and there are some students who tell me that they do not have Facebook. So I keep both options open. So keep the students. So sometimes you also learn a lot from them.
This is
Javi,
these are the three
Eastern, is
things,
there
and
any
when we
feedback
combine them
form?
and
Yeah, I think they'll
gave it
send
as
it.
a cloud edge
Shubham, sir, I
ideas
think,
that we looked
yeah,
at
I
here.
think the same
So this was
question.
the three modules that we looked at,
Moral science as
and
a
we
subject
tried to
in
convert this,
school,
and it was successfully
baby
defended
Ritu, yeah,
2 years
actually,
ago.
even I
So
had this moral science
publications,
as a
and now I think
subject,
already
but in many
both the
schools,
journal
they
papers
are
have
out
crossed
now.
100
Computer has
citations
come and
each.
then replaced
So
that
that's
moral
one good
science,
thing.
or something else has come and
Why I'm
replaced
sharing
it.
all this,
And
and the
today
other
again,
paper
there
which
is
is
a
slightly related, but it will
thinking
not
that
go into the
this
thesis because
value
the students
education
or
should again
professors were
become
not
part of it, and
appropriate
we should also
because
add
mechanisms which
etiquette
came in.
and
But
ethical
this was
communication.
a hybrid paper
Chaitanya is asking,
combining
is this
network layer and virtual
unethical to
layer,
use
so which
words
should
which
actually
has
result in
some
more
emotional touch to it
better
in the
results.
formal
But
conversation?
unfortunately,
Like,
we
please did
did
no,
the network
absolutely
experiments
no.
later, which got even better results.
I'm
So you
happy to
can't say
receive
that
the email. I'm glad to
less
receive.
results
I'm
if we
pleased.
just ignore this paper.
I'm
So this is not
extremely
used as
happy.
a
I'm
conference
delighted to
speaker,
receive
it
this
became a
communication.
journal paper as
That's
well.
all
So but
fine.
then
Give
we
it
excluded
emotional
this one
touch.
from our
That's wonderful.
thesis point of view.
Jaspreet,
But for
again,
your
thanks for
publications
the
are
nice
available,
session.
you
After
can look
listening
at
to
that.
you, I have
We
also
look at
sent
these
friend
virtual
request
bridges and
on
all
your
those things
Facebook.
together.
Okay, I'll
The
accept
internal
it.
bridge and
But
external bridge of
maybe
the web server.
tonight
So
or
all these
tomorrow.
things
It
can be
may not
explored.
happen immediately.
You
Let
can
me
do that.
see.
Why am I
Mohit
sharing all
Chopra,
this
if you think so
is
much while
many times we
replying to
think
somebody on
only
casual
cloud SIM is
platform
the
like
solution.
Facebook,
We
so
stop
somewhere
there,
we are
right?
losing
Cloud
who
gives
we are.
cloud
We
SIM.
may be
No,
faking a
cloud gives
personality
cloud
that in
SIM. Yes,
reality
cloud
we are
SIM
not.
has
I'm not
a greater
saying
strength of
think
energy
so much
efficiency
while
calculations,
replying.
virtual
Be
communication,
spontaneous, but be ethically
resource
correct.
allocation,
Use the
all
right
these
words.
mechanisms.
So,
My student has worked
like
on
once you
cloud
are used
broker
to it,
and
like
cloud broker platform and all, and
somebody like
extensively
me,
he
I
has
am not
used
going to think
cloud SIM,
10
right?
hours
So
before
there's
sending a
nothing
message.
wrong in that. But when
While
you look at
sending only, I know whether
security
it's the right
aspects,
message or
please go
not.
into
So
either
train
some
your mind to
hypervisor
think
or
correctly.
cloud
That's what I'm
hypervisor and
trying
try
to
to
tell you.
look at that. So that is
Uh,
something that you can
just Jabir, yeah, wonderful and highly useful session. Thank you.
any
Nilakandan, thank
questions.
you so much for wonderful. Thank you. Bhuvan, is it good to give intro first in
Sir,
mail than explain
hello,
the
sir.
content, or receiver will get it from the mail ID
Sir, I'm
format?
audible, sir.
So I'm
Yes,
going
yes.
to tell
Sir,
you
you have
about
mentioned
subject lines. If you make a
VM
descriptive
profile
subject line,
scheduling.
then there is no need
Uh,
for intro,
so,
because intro is okay in long letters, but
as a
email is
beginners of
very
this
crisp
particular role will be working
communication.
on the
So
virtualization
if
alone.
unless it is a formal one, we can avoid that long
So
intro.
from where they have to show you
Vijay
have mentioned some
Bhaskar,
few steps.
is it not
Previously, I
necessary to
briefed
use
you
social
and
media
followed
sites,
by
right?
KVM
So
and
how
SIM.
can companies
After that,
judge by
only
looking at
showing
the
the
profiles?
virtualizer. So from there, you can
Vijay,
start
you
to
may
work,
feel it is
or
unjustified, but
any.
companies are
See, it
doing it.
depends on the problem
Companies are
statement that you want to look
demanding.
at, right?
Companies are
If you are
telling
taking
you
a
put one
problem
of that in the profiles
which
and
is
tell us how many
energy
other
efficiency,
profiles you have.
resource
You have
scheduling,
to share
resource
that
management,
information.
some of the
Okay,
aspects
so
of cloud automation, some of the
even
concepts,
if you have
you can
used it for a
actually go to
limited
cloud
time and
SIM,
deactivate,
right? You
Okay,
don't
they
sir.
need to
wanted
go
to
into
know why
physical.
you did
But
that.
if you want to
Okay,
understand how
so
cloud
be very
actually
careful. That's why I'm
works
saying that
or how
uh,
things happen
these things
inside
have
the
become
cloud,
like time
so
bombs.
just to get a
Okay,
feel
you
of
never
what
know when they
actually
will burst.
inside what
So
is actually
try
happening
to
if
be
you want to
very
understand.
discreet in
System,
using that.
get full
So
system with 16 GB RAM. You can get
Jasprit Kaur,
one of
thank
the
you, sir,
system
for
must
an
have
amazing session. Thank you for
dual port,
encouraging me.
triple port Ethernet
Mohit, if you
adapter,
think so much
three
while
Ethernet
replying,
ports,
I think I
and
answered. I think some of the
three
questions
machines
are
must have dual port Ethernet
Yes,
coming
sir.
adapters.
again and again.
And then you can
So
Yeah,
other
connect
three
okay.
systems you have
Manavalakan,
if
amazing
you are connecting a full
presentation
system, let
is
us say a
made by the
controller
host.
and
Okay, thank
two
you.
nodes must have two
Uh,
ports. Network node must have three ports. Once
okay,
you
sir.
have
yeah, Dr.
this thing,
Shyam
then you
Kiran, if I
can
missed
read the
anything, you may
cloud
highlight.
hypervisor. You can install and all of that,
One
and
question
then
is, what is
configure open
slang?
stack on it.
What is
So
land?
open second, all
This
four systems.
slang,
LAN.
slang,
Open
Yeah, yeah.
second
Huh?
slash.
Yeah, first so
SLANG,
you just
slang.
take up the
Slang.
OpenStack
Okay,
Am
okay.
panel.
I
You will keep
Okay.
configuring one machine to the other
Before
machine,
that,
and
Rushil Shah,
the
I am
software
not in
itself will
Facebook.
try
Is it
to
necessary that I should have nowadays
interact
for
on that.
overall
So
group?
if you want to set up a
Rushil
controller
Shah,
machine, then it will
yes.
ask you a series of
Like
things. So the KVM,
my
everything will get
daughter in
put
NIFT
inside, right?
design
That's what
says
is
that
required.
for them it is mandatory, in
Sir,
fact,
I
that
have a
they have
question.
Instagram
Yeah.
or Facebook.
Sir, I have also worked
One
on a
social
OpenStack machine
media
for 5
profile
years
is
work.
required. Right.
I have also
So
implemented for
she
payment
chose
methods.
Instagram rather than
Still,
Facebook
while I
because
was
she didn't
learning,
want to
I have faced a problem
have
related
it
to
at this stage.
making
So
the
you need to
request of the
decide,
API
like,
calls for the
because
dashboard.
as I
So, sir,
said,
I
that's
was
also
just
become an index to your
asking
character
you to give
nowadays.
me a brief information which you are
Especially
having
when
on
people think
how
that they
the
can do anything on
request
Facebook,
would be propagated to the
they
dashboard.
think
Because
everything is fair
I was
and there
facing a
is no
problem of
ethics.
wasteful
So that is where they want to check your ethics.
So
Yeah, actually,
whatever.
the
Ethics
problem is
is
more
where
of the
integrity
speed
is
internet
where
connectivity
people want to check.
that is to be
When you
facilitated.
think
And
that
because we are doing at an
nobody knows
experiment
what you
level,
are doing,
what we
they
are
just
doing
want to
is
see
we
what
are
you are really
connecting them
doing.
through Ethernet
Okay.
cables. That's it.
Mahesh,
Yes,
Menaria, many
so
people are different at
And
social media
that
and
is
face to
where
face.
you cannot
So what can
actually
we
look
do
at an
there?
efficiency
Which one should we
capable
accept?
experimental
Mahesh, on
as
the
required.
one hand,
When you go
there is
for
this
connectivity switching,
Johari
when
window
I
which we
actually
talked
asked for
about
a
in
cloud
the
setup,
last one,
then
where
they
there
suggested
are
what is
at least
called
four different types of us.
InfIBand
The one that
switches,
is known to outside
right, which
world,
are
the one that
non-ox
is not even known to us, the
mains.
blind
So
spot,
when you look at
and the
InfIBand
one
switches,
we think
they are
we
at least
know,
of 25
and
lakhs or
one
something. And
people
when you look at a storage,
actually
whether it is a
know
SAN
about us
storage,
and
you
all
have to
that.
look at
We
a server storage,
play
or you
different
cannot
roles
look
at
at a hard
different
disk
times.
storage.
But
When we are setting up in an
when you
experimental
are
setup, we are
transparent,
using a hard disk
honest,
as
ethical,
storage.
integrated in
But actually, you must
communication,
have a store.
you will
So the
not have
problem we are trying
like
to look at
lot
is
of difference
instead of
between your
setting up in
social
the whole
media and
cloud
face to face
and then trying to
profile.
understand. Of course, it's
Like
always good
you,
to
when
actually do
people
an
meet you
experiment
in
and set it
person,
up
is the same
and
one they
then
should
see.
also meet you
But
in social
because
media.
the
If
internet
if some
connectivity,
people are
or the
having
bandwidth
difference,
speed that I'm
that's
talking
okay.
about,
But as a
the hardware
professional, I
that
am
is used to
suggesting like
connect
try
these
to
cables.
bridge
So
the
you
gap.
need an optical
Do not
fiber cable
have
with
that.
an InfIBand switch.
Akansh,
If
what
you
is
fortunately if
slang
your
if you
institute is
use
able
an
to provide
unofficial
that
message?
for you,
So slang is, for
then you will be
example,
certainly able to set up a live
in
demo.
IIT Kanpur,
Right? Otherwise,
uh,
we were trying to buy
this
a SAN storage, at least a small SAN
dabba,
storage. It
okay,
was also running at a
box.
few lakhs of
It's a
rupees.
slang for
We were trying to buy
computer
a
center.
color switch. It was also running at a few lakhs of
So
rupees. And
suppose
hence, my
somebody
hands
is
were tied.
writing to me,
So
sir,
if an
I'm going to
institution wants to
Dabba
set up a
today.
cloud and
Okay,
they say, okay, why
so
don't
I'm
you
going
buy
to the
all this?
box today.
So
And
then
initially,
you have
as
an
a new
advantage
faculty,
of
I didn't understand
if
anything
they
when
set
they
up
were
an
using
open
the
source
slang.
kind of an
So that
environment,
is
then
why
you will be able to do it.
slang can be
Otherwise,
used.
what you should try
Slang
to
is
do
the
is
local
split the
language
problem into
that you
smaller
use,
chunks.
and that is
So
known
go to the
only to
SAN level, go to the KVM
students
level and
sometimes.
do it. And
Faculty may
then
use a
you can
different kind of
imagine. So
slang.
what actually
So
happens
within the
is
group, it is
only,
fine.
on the
But
open
if you
stack
are
is a
writing to
bigger order.
someone
It
who
is
is
only
not in the
management.
group, then you
But
should
what
not
actually
use
happening,
slang.
everything is getting happening on the hypervisor
So,
level. So hypervisor level is the
baby
setup
Ritu,
where you
my
can capture the
email
data, you
ID,
can run
my
the systems, you can
profile, everything
keep
is
the
open.
workload
If
onto
you
the
just
system. All
Google
those things can
my
be done.
name T Ravichandran IIT
You can
Kanpur, it will
create
take you to my
task force and
homepage.
worksheets. All
Homepage
those
has
can
my
be
Facebook,
given. You can
WhatsApp
use some
number,
command line
everything.
codes also and
So
load a
when
system,
I'm telling you
Yes,
something,
sir. Actually,
I
I
try
need
to
to
keep
see
my
because I just came
profile
by
as an
now
open
in
book.
order to make a
So nothing is
virtualization
hidden.
test.
Everything is open. You will get everything from Google and
these are
YouTube.
the ways
Whatever I'm doing,
trying to
it's
get
all
it,
there.
because otherwise what you
So
live cloud environment, because I have seen I
So,
have seen a
Oral
live
Molly,
cloud setup
Vijay Bono, is a good
in a
question.
center. We
Ethics
have
is different
access,
for different
but
people.
people
How
don't
to go
allow
about
us to
this?
meddle. As a researcher,
As I
they don't
said,
allow. In fact, my student took a virtual machine and set
ethics
up
is
28
relative.
machines on a
So,
single virtual machine,
for
and
example,
it caused a lot of problem for them
I'm
internally.
a
So they said,
non-smoker
sir, we
and
will
I,
disable his
uh,
virtual machine because he will bring
teetotaler.
some
I do
irony.
not
Because
tolerate
that is what
people
he
smoking
is
in
supposed
front
to
of
do.
my
He
space
is
and
working
then
on cloud. When I set up my cloud
like
MFA
a
program,
fashionable
we were
one, they
having some
just
problem
blow
with
the
physical
smoke
cloud
before others.
environment. Hence,
I
we
cannot
discouraged
tolerate
him.
that. So I
So
feel
hence,
that it
we
is
had to move
unethical
from
even that
actually doing some live
you cannot
experiments
make
on an
someone
existing
silent
live,
killers by your
okay,
smoke. Okay.
because it was a
But
production
among the
environment. You can't do
smokers,
a
that's a
R&D
norm. They
environment
don't bother
where the
about it.
students are
So
doing some
it's tricky.
experiments, and
It's a
instead
relative
of
one.
doing some experiments
But on the other hand, as I
their
said, if you're the
presentation
only
may
ethics
fail,
is
right?
the one
So
that you
they
need to think about
tend
others.
to go
Okay.
with
The moment you
trying to
think
have
that
some
is it
powerful
going to hurt
workstations.
others?
On
Is
workstations,
it
we
going
had
to
these
offend someone?
Zen
And is the
ports and
other
KVM
person
ports,
going to think
and we are doing it.
wrongly
Similarly,
about
Docker
me?
also we are doing
Okay,
it on a
if the
workstation.
intention
We
is
have not
going
set
to
up an
misfire,
entire
is
container
going to lead
mechanism
to
with a
miscommunication,
Docker swarm.
do
We
something
have not set it
where
up. We
you
have
are
just set up
right
a
and
simple
then
switches.
that
So
becomes
yeah, these
your
are
ethics.
limitations
Okay.
because any research you can't
So,
actually have a full-fledged environment
I think like there
that's where the
are no
simulation
more
comes in.
questions.
But when
And
you
if
do, when you want to work with security or some
okay,
of these
Saurav
aspects, you can't
Goyal,
actually
these days
have an
people use
environment
many abusive
which
words in the
facilitates that, and
conversation.
hence you
So
have to
how
do
to
the
define ethics
go
for
with the
them? Saurav,
emulation
first of all,
So what
it's a matter of mindset.
was the
I
correct
would request you
steps that
that
can be
you
done?
try to change
Otherwise,
your
you need to
mindset
invest
and
some
you do not use any
few, at least
abusive
3 to
words.
4
The
crores
only way you
in
can
their
change
setup
them
time.
if they are your close people,
Yes, sir.
friends, by
Actually, I have
setting a
also
model.
requested them. They
Okay.
also replied
So
to me the
why
same
would
thing
you,
that they are not
if
joined
a
anyone
server
saying any
raw
IoT work there. They have also told
mango
that you can
when
use the
a
software that
tasty
is offering
fruit
free
is
IoT.
available.
You can use
Yeah.
that only.
So you have to tell them that when good
Yes.
words are there, why should you use abusive words?
Okay. Okay.
And
Thank
it's
you.
creating a very bad impression
Most
about
of
you.
my student
And
also
ignore
struggled,
them.
and
You try
my
to create
student,
an
then
example. Only by
the
that
best
you will be
suggestion
able
that I would like
to
is go back to the
change
literature.
them.
If
And
anybody
first change
says I have
yourself.
set a
So by
website,
mistake,
I
if
have
you are
used so
using
many
any
words,
four-lettered words in
it's
your
like this,
conversation,
and these are,
try to avoid
you
it
should
and
go into that
make
direction.
it a kind of
But none of the people have said that
inbuilt
cloud
mechanism
security also.
now
Everybody
meaning.
talked about we have set up a hypervisor, we have done
Okay,
this,
I think
we
we
have
can
done
take
that,
a
we got
break
this
for
data from
15
there.
minutes,
And the
Dr.
whole
Shyam
push is
Kiran.
toward machine learning now. So finally,
Yes,
nobody is actually saying we
sir.
got
Thank you very
data
much
from this
for
cloud and we have
sensitizing
run
our
this here.
participants
They are
towards
just saying
ethics,
we have got the
which
data
we are
on this
following in
hypervisor
this
and the data
cyber
looks something
communication
similar to
era.
this. This is a
And
similar
you
looking data
have
set, and then run the machine learning
diligently
algorithm on it.
highlighted
Because
the
the spend,
status
the
of
thought process
email
is more on the
writing.
machine learning part
So
than
overall,
on the
it
actual
was
core
an
cloud
interactive
computing
and
part. So
wonderful
what you
session.
need to do is
Very much.
you need to actually pick
So
out
after 15
data from
minutes,
within the
we'll
cloud
start.
environment. Okay, a live cloud environment hypervisor you set up, not necessarily a full
So
open one,
it's
or maybe you
12:35
set up
now.
a full stack cloud network and all, and you understand what kind of
So we'll
data
meet
can be
after
connected.
15 minutes.
Okay, and that you have a similar kind of a data set which may be available for some other application. Take that similar data set and then run machine learning algorithms on that and say that this can be this is what can be. Similarly, I can build a classifier to classify this kind of data also, and I can get these results, right? And it is very much accepted within the research community. You can read. So what I suggest is go back to the community and read the papers. What the papers have done, you please do that, and then you will get through success. Because research is not exactly trying to say that most of the times we cannot have a full real environment like 1,000 node computers. You can never have. If you want to test a protocol, obviously you go for simulation. But these kind of mechanisms, simulators get built. A full kind of cloud sim is not built, right? And hence the limitation. So the thing is, please go back to the paper. So many times when my students come, sir, ye kaisa karna hai? Ye, what are the tools to implement? I said, why are you asking me? You go and read the papers and then find tools, set up those tools, set up those experiments and come back. So that is how I came to know about KVM and Zen Hyper or Zen Server and all these tools. How did I come to know? By looking at the papers which are published. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Sir, this is Balagopalakrishnan. Sir, if I want to set up a non-core IT and core IT functions together, can I do it in that one with the cloud, the other one with my own city, which is part of my organization, or can I combine together in cloud environment?
No, see, the production environment and research environment, if you're talking about, it is very difficult to divide, because whatever you do on one part of the network will definitely affect the other part. That is what I was just sharing now, right? But if you look at, you can use your system to access the resources. Whatever resources you access will not affect the main system. But if you want to do research on the main system itself, see, if you're there is something which is called endpoint. Endpoint is I am connecting through a laptop to a cloud, and I am doing some research on how I am connecting, what are the calls which are going, what are the calls which are coming. That I am analyzing. That is one part of it. Then cloud doesn't get affected. But you are connecting to the cloud and you are doing something on the VM, which is actually sitting there. VM is actually shown on your system, but it is actually sitting on the server there, right? So what actually happens? Whatever you do on the virtual machine is actually getting executed on the server there. Then the things get disturbed. So there is a line where you have to draw a difference between these two things.
I understood, sir. But if one is that core IT, the other one is the services which belongs to that any IoT or any other ancillary services, can I club together for my storage of data, or I need to?
No issue. See, by and large, clouds are used to set up. So when my students started working on big data analytics, right?
Okay.
So we went to cloud. So on a cloud, we set up a cluster, and then we ran the codes very easily, because it was huge resource, multiple cores and more storage. And at that time, Google Cloud was giving $100 or $200 free entry level usage for every email ID you get. Now also, I think you get 1 year $100 free this thing resources. Or Google Colab also gives it now. Most of the people who are working on machine learning, deep learning, they use Google Colab. right? And high data analysis. So all those are basically underneath is what is called a cloud. If you want an IoT data you want to collect, so you can use that. So obviously cloud can be used as a, what do you say, a platform. Absolutely no problem.
Okay. Sir, one more thing. While if I go with that cloud computing system, the patching activity in the data center, it will be done by whom? Then it will be monitored by whom?
There will be a cloud system administrator. So you will have to, anything that is set up, any software that is set up has to be maintained. Like if you have a database, you will have a database administrator. Similarly, cloud service provider, CSP, will have a cloud service administrator who will actually manage all these things, right? Though when I go to cloud, I don't need a physical approval of somebody. When I go to cloud, I'll get a virtual machine created. But somebody will monitor the how the things are moving on. That's how when I try to do research on the cloud in our institute, people observed. People saw anomalous behavior, and then they came and told, "Sir, please don't meddle." Right? So who is he? He is a cloud system administrator. Right? So now another important question: when you look at a service level agreement, does somebody see my data? Yes, obviously the cloud system administrator can see anybody's data. For that matter of fact, any network administrator who is actually managing the entire data, he has the super user permission for everything. But of course, the service level agreement that an organization signs with anybody, like most of the institutes are now using email, which is provided by Google, right? Though their institute ID is used, but the service is actually provided by Google. You get a Gmail kind of an interface, but you enter the email ID like edit@mnit.ac.in, and then you get the login. But you are actually using a Gmail kind of an interface, and Gmail is providing it free of cost. Now, can the institute data be viewed by Google? Obviously, yes. But there is a service level agreement. I will not view. Right? Can an employee of Google view who is working with this Gmail providing service, that part of it? Yes, absolutely. But Google says, please don't view. He can click and open your email and read it. But Google restricts him to do that. And when he does that, Google will know. And Google will question him. So that's a different issue. But can he read it? Yes. Of course, our emails are read, but it is not physical human being who is reading it. It is a machine learning software which is actually trying to learn. Because when I say attachment attached and I don't click it, immediately it says you have said attachment is there, but you have not included the attachment. How did the software know? Because it was reading my email, right? So these are things. Now another dangerous thing that happens, whatever you are doing, somebody is listening to you 24/7. Do you realize that on your mobile phone? Whenever you want to ask something, what is the time, what is the temperature, and all, suddenly you say, hey Google, the temperature, and then it says, now you see, when I said hey Google, my mobile phone said on, and it is waiting for my instruction, right? So somebody is listening. We are not realizing. You please switch it off when you are not using it. So because whatever you are conversing, see here is an answer which is actually now it's giving an answer to me also, right? So somebody is listening. So these are all things which are happening. We have to be careful. Yeah.
So any other query? Any question to be asked to the sir? Okay, so thank you, sir, for being with us and giving your valuable time. It was very, very innovative and valuable talk for us because you have given very much insights of virtualization and cloud computing. And we have also gone through the OpenStack insights where we have learned that how could it be difficult to manage the things if we are not concerned about the security. So this is a very much informative talk that is giving us the insights that where we
Hello.
can go for the research part as well.
Hello,
Sure.
sir. Hello.
Yes, yes.
Sir, I am Praveen Kumar. Hello. Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Sir, I'm research scholar. I have one question, sir. I'm working on load balancing in IoT.
Okay.
Sir, using the Kuja simulator for my research work.
Okay.
So how can
Okay.
I get the data sets for my simulator, sir?
Yeah, some of my students have Puja simulator, and basically you can look at the protocols that are available in IoT and then look at that. So the data sets are basically you go back to the literature. Papers have been published on a problem you're working on. So they would have used Puja simulator. They would have worked on some data set. So you'll have to get the data set. If the data set is not mentioned anywhere, then you have to create the data set. Right? It is what is called a homegrown system, or many times it is called synthetic data sets. Synthetic data sets are data sets which you create because you know what kind of data you want to collect, what kind of data you analyze. You can create your own data set. So these are called synthetic data sets. Most of the time it is difficult for publications with synthetic data set because it will say where are you comparing with. So obviously you need some data set results to compare. So what you have to do, you have to look at some papers which have already been published and you have to see what results they've already published and how they got the results. So they will have used some data set. So you take their data set and run your programs and try to get the results and then say that you can compare. Obviously, it is always better to go back. And of course, some of the data sets are available in websites called kdnuggets.com, kaggle.com. Some of these are very good repositories. UCI, University of California at Irvine, UCI. Some of these repositories are there. You can go there and search, and you will get an IoT related data set also. But best option is to go to papers which talk about contribution. They will say that we have worked on this data set. We have worked on this data which is collected. Most of them may be sensor network data also. Surprisingly, a lot of cloud data is not actually cloud data. It is actually hypervisor data. Similarly, most of the IoT networks data may not be IoT networks. They may be MANET or WANET or WSN data or wireless sensor network data. So you can use that.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you. Sir, could you please share that the slide what you have shown us?
Sure. Okay. I will give it to the organizers and they will mail it to you.
Yeah, please.
Sure.
So thank you, sir, for sharing your time and being with us. Now I request the participants to come back at 2 p.m. For our next talk. Please join 5 minutes before so that we can introduce the expert and we can begin the talk in time. Thank you.
हाँ जी सर,
करिए तैयारी है ना?
ठीक है सर,
ठीक है जी। ये आप वेब पे डालोगे फिर रिकॉर्डिंग जो है कि क्या है?
रिकॉर्डिंग हाँ जी सर, वेब पे एक लिंक भेजेंगे सर कुछ दिन के लिए। मीटिंग तो रिकॉर्डेड ही है सर।
अच्छा,
हाँ जी सर। So good afternoon one and all present here. Now we have Professor Narottam Chand with us, and Professor Narottam Chand will deliver his talk on integration of cloud with IoT. So before starting, I just want to brief about Sir's biography. And Professor Narottam Chand received his PhD degree from IIT Roorkee in computer science and engineering. Previously, he had received his MTech and BTech degree in computer science from IIT Delhi and NIT Hamirpur respectively. And currently, Professor Narottam Chand is Associate Professor at NIT Hamirpur, and Sir also served as the head of the Computer Science and Engineering during February 2008 to 2011 and had Institute Computer Center for 2 terms during Feb 2008 July 2009 and October 2014 to June 2015. He also working as a coordinator accreditation at NIT Hamirpur. In recent past, Professor Narottam Chand also served as key assignments at NIT Hamirpur like campus-wide networking, institute website, and institute office automation. And Dr. Narottam Chand is an active industry consultant for the entities like BHEL, Kangra Central Cooperative Bank, etc. His current research areas interest includes mobile and ad hoc networking, mobile computing, wireless sensor networks, Internet of Things, etc. And he has also published about 200 research paper in international and national journals of repute. He has guided 7 PhDs and guided a few more in these areas. He is in reviewer panel of many international journals from various reputed publishers like Springer, IEEE, and elsewhere. He is also a senior member of IEEE and life member of IST and CSI. So I welcome you, sir, and now I invite you to deliver the talk and enlighten us over the research areas in Internet of Things and cloud computing. Sir.
Okay, thank you, dear Prashant, for the introduction. So, I shall be talking on the topic. Is my screen visible?
Not yet, sir.
I have shared it. Is it? I hope it should be available now. Visible.
Yes, sir. Now
is
it's
it okay?
visible. Yes, sir. Is it okay?
Okay. So I will be talking on the topic integration of cloud computing and IoT, keeping in view the theme of the course that is being organized. So if we focus upon the scenario that how cloud computing and IoT, they can be integrated. So we find so many applications at present. We talk of, we can say, intelligent transportation system. So there we make use of so many sensors, so many devices ranging from smaller to a bigger one. Similarly, we talk of, say, smart cities where different commodities or things, they can be combined or they can be part of the network. At the same time, there is requirement of maybe processing of huge amount of data. So in order to process that data, we require use of cloud servers, and maybe the data has to be stored. So there we require use of storage also. Similarly, in home automation, then any electronic industry, we talk of, we can say, maybe body area network where variable computing devices are fitted onto the body. These devices, they capture physiological conditions of the body, and accordingly data may be sent to the server located at the cloud end. Their data may be processed. Accordingly, we can get responses, or we can get some we can say decisions. So this is the I can say idea at the higher level, that how different devices and different technologies, they have to be integrated, or they are to be integrated in order to provide or in order to exploit the technological services provided by cloud computing and Internet of Things. So if we see the computing scenario at present, we are surrounded by so many technologies. We talk of, we can say, different generations of wireless communication or Wi-Fi communication. We talk of social networking. So there a lot of data is being generated. Here we talk of, you can say, data which is generated in structured as well as in unstructured manner. Structured means as per, you can say, maybe well-defined organizations like hierarchical networking, hierarchical database. Then we talk of relational database, similarly networking database, etc. But in addition to that, say Facebook, blogs, tweets, etc., they also generate data which is not well structured, and hence that leads to the concept of what we call as big data. So in case of big data, there is combination of both you can say structured as well as unstructured data, and also we talk in terms of high you can say uh, velocity, or you can say dynamic data, and there is variety in terms of structured, unstructured, and depending upon sources, depending upon the devices, etc. Then we have, you can say, IoT, where different devices they are put together, and maybe in the future we are heading toward a technology where different devices, or you can say all items or things, they will be part of the network called as Internet of Everything or Internet of Things. Now, uh, at one end we have, we can say, cloud environment, where it has got huge capacity in terms of storage, in terms of crunching or processing of data, and on other end we have, you can say, large number of devices which generate the data. Now this data has to be stored somewhere, so maybe cloud computing or the cloud environment is the solution. Similarly, the constrained devices, or say smaller devices or thin devices which are sitting on the IoT side, they are not so capable to process the data as well as to store the data, and hence processing requires uh, say larger computing capabilities, and hence data has to be sent or transmitted to this end, that is towards cloud. It has to be processed there, and maybe we will extract some knowledge from this side, and accordingly that knowledge will be transmitted to the say edge side, or towards the uh, you can say devices which are on IoT edge. Now data is to be transmitted, so we require, you can say, use of different wired as well as wireless technologies, because existing technologies are there, so they are to be again integrated. When we talk of integration, this means we have to put their capacities together, whether we talk of wired, wireless, we talk of, you can say, varieties of networking scenarios, maybe in terms of grid computing, we talk in terms of mobile computing, mobile network, and their variants. So all these technologies, they are to be put together or integrated together in order to make the vision of IoT a success. So therefore, when we talk of IoT at the front end, at the back end, we have to talk about cloud computing, and intermediate middle layers will be there, which will be playing role of, you can say, facilitator or cooperating technologies, and hence all these technologies, they are to be integrated together for the, you can say, better results. So these issues about cloud computing, they were originated or you can say much focus was there in last decade. And if we see the scenario of maybe computing and communication over last 30-40 years, this is how the different technologies have evolved over the years. So if we focus upon earlier computing era, we realized that this is a centralized computing, and then uh, slowly we moved towards what we called as, you can say, decentralized or distributed computing. But when we talk of cloud computing, again centralization is required. Centralization in the sense that because the devices, they will not be that is the computing resources, servers or storage, they will not be distributed much, but they will be concentrated to a particular location or say set of locations, and hence again we are moving towards old scenario as far as, you can say, placement of resources are concerned. But as far as, you can say, front end is concerned, where users are moving in different locations, they are geographically located in different locations, so there the concept is decentralized. So when we talk of, you can say, cloud computing and today's technologies in terms of, you can say, mobility of devices and mobility of users, Then we have to talk of, you can say, combination of both centralized and decentralization computing. So both have their pros and cons, and accordingly, when we talk of integration of such technologies, the issues are there, and we have to address different research challenges. So during the talk, I will be, I can say, giving you the background of cloud computing, that how it has evolved, what is the objective, maybe in addition to technical issues, there are, you can say, involvement of commercial or economic issues also, and that led to the concept of cloud computing. And when we talk of, you can say, conventional computing, so how cloud computing issues, they are much more challenging as compared to you can say conventional maybe single user or multi-user operating system environment. So research issues, they are becoming complex. And when we move towards, you can say, constrained environments like IoT, where varieties of devices are there, but their resources are not so strong as compared to, say, desktop computers or say server counterparts. In that case, we have to talk about technologies or the issues, that how we can exploit different technologies together, so that their advantages, they can be used for better and faster processing of data and for better results. So when we talk of any computing scenario, objective is that we have to run any application faster. So in conventional way, there are three ways to improve it. Say we have to work hard, we have to work smarter, or get help. And when we can say these are common analogies. And if we talk of, you can say, in terms of engineering or in terms of computer engineering, then work harder means we have to use, say, faster hardware. And when we talk of work smarter, so here we have to talk of, you can say, optimization of different algorithms or the techniques. So here comes the, you can say, engineering aptitude or the knowledge, that given particular problem, how different domains of engineering, they can be combined in order to solve that problem. So here comes the use of, you can say, different techniques, that how maybe in technique of civil engineering can be applied in electrical engineering for the faster processing of data, faster or you can say optimal processing of or use of resources in order to get the result. And similarly, maybe one technique can be applied in other area, whereas in that particular domain there may not be solution to the problem. So we have to talk of, you can say, integration of different engineering technologies, and there comes the concept that how smart applications or smart algorithms, they can be used. Then if we can say work is large in volume, then sometimes we take help of others. So analogy is that how we can use cooperation of multiple devices, or how multiple computers or maybe devices, they can be put together to solve a particular problem, or how their resources can be combined as a single resource. So there comes the use of technologies like cloud computing or grid computing, that different resources, they can be combined, and given the bigger problem, it can be fragmented into different parts, as we do in conventional problem solving technique for say operating system. So there, given the bigger problem, it is divided to sub problems, and these sub problems, they can be assigned at different slots to the CPU, whereas in case of use of multiple CPUs, maybe different processors, they will be assigned different parts of the problem, and that way different parts, they can be processed in parallel, and we will be getting the results faster. These results, they are to be integrated so that the results, they can be presented, or the final result or the outcome can be presented to the user as required. So issue comes that how to fragment a given problem. And when we talk of, we can say, single machine fragmentation, issues are still complex. But if we talk of, we can say, maybe cloud kind of environment or grid computing kind of environment, so their fragmentation has to take into consideration different scenarios, like how far the server is, what is the capability of the server, what is the capability of the network which will be used in order to transmit data from my end or from user end to the server. So those issues, they are involved, and accordingly the problem and the research issues, they become much more complex. So we'll try to, I can say, go into detail of such issues later on, and accordingly I will try to give you some, I can say, solutions that what are the possibilities. So if we talk of, you can say, cloud computing, as I told that this is motivated by technology as well as by some commercial issues. So if we talk of cloud computing economics, so over the years, if we focus, then any infrastructure requires, say, initial investment that we call in terms of economics as capex, that is capital expenditure. And later on, that infrastructure or the hardware has to be maintained, and generally management or administrative or say maintenance cost increases with years. For example, initially, if some hardware is there, it does not require much maintenance, but as the hardware or infrastructure becomes older, then cost of maintaining it increases over the years. So that is, you can say, management and admin cost, and it is some sort of uncontrolled management cost, because it depends upon, you can say, the issues which are coming in the hardware over the years, and accordingly we cannot control it. Whereas initially we can have decision that, okay, this is the hardware, and to this cost we can go for. Then of course, if we talk of infrastructure and if we talk of computing and communication infrastructure, we have to take into account also the electricity or the power that is consumed. So processing capabilities require, say, continuous supply of power, and the power consumption is there. But at the same time, in order to maintain the infrastructure, there is requirement of cooling or the air conditions. Now, air conditions, we see with the passage of time, the requirement will generally increases, because the hardware is such that it becomes older. Maybe we have to maintain it. Whatever you can say, different parts we will be later on integrating, they will not be so compatible with the existing hardware. They will be working, but they may require additional power, they may generate additional heat, and accordingly the maintenance or the power required for cooling, that increases. So this is how that trend occurs in case of, we can say, any establishment of any infrastructure, or specifically the hardware for computing and communication, and accordingly there are involvement of different costs. To make progress, delivery organizations must address the server, storage, and network operating cost problem, not just capex. So therefore, in order to consider the overall cost, it is not only the initial cost, that is capital expenditure, but there is another component that, okay, maintenance is there, then electricity is there, etc. They are also involved. So we have to take them into account. Now, if we talk of, say, traditional IT and similarly, say, cloud computing infrastructure, so there is fixed cost, there is variable cost, as I gave in the idea given in the previous slide. Then if you talk of, you can say, variable cost, so it increases with the years. Now, how a simple organization or single user can uh, take care of, you can say, infrastructure that has to be uh, installed and that has to be maintained. So there comes the, we can say, role of cloud computing rather than, we can say, maintaining the infrastructure or installing the infrastructure, which may become obsolete after a few years. Can we go for something that depending upon our requirement, we can subscribe to the computing, we can subscribe to the storage and other services. So there comes the concept of, we can say, cloud computing, and this was the motivation, including, you can say, in terms of technology, in terms of commercial, that cloud computing was coined, and accordingly this technology has evolved over the years. So rather than, you can say, going for fixed kind of infrastructure, we can go for infrastructure as per our demand. So cloud computing is how we can go for use of infrastructure as per our requirement or as per our dynamic requirement. So over the years, if you talk of cloud computing, say cloud computing, generally there is concept of, you can say, servers, there is concept of storage, etc. So initially we talked of, you can say, maybe simple services over the network, then software as a service, and nowadays we talk of, you can say, maybe different issues which are involved, and with the passage of time that network has become richer in resources, or it has become possible to always be connected to some cloud server. So this technology is becoming, you can say, a reality, and maybe in the near future when even communication will become more richer in resources, this technology will become more popular, and maybe we will be moving towards the scenario like even sitting at home, we can make use of, you can say, cloud environment. So if we go into the background, different definitions are there, and this is something that depending upon how you perceive at the front end, different users, they will give different definitions. For example, you might have heard about blind man story, that few people are there, how they perceive, we can say, an elephant by touching different body parts. So similar is the idea with the cloud computing. Whatever you can say definition, or whatever you can say scenario suits to an individual, accordingly one narrates that, okay, this is the cloud computing environment. But in general, say this is nothing but, as I told, that depending upon demand, we can go for use of resources. So our resources are there which are maybe located at far end location, and sitting at remote location, one can subscribe to the resources, one can submit data, one can use the resources, even including storage, and data can be presented or submitted to the server for processing. The results, they will be again obtained at the user end. So depending upon the requirement, we can subscribe, and even you can say costing models are available, that okay, this particular service provider costs this much, and accordingly one can, or an individual can decide whether one should go for, you can say service provider A, or one has to go for service provider B, and so on. Issues are like load balancing, migration of jobs, etc. So these are, you can see, some of the research issues that I will be discussing in subsequent slides. So in general, we can say that cloud computing is style of computing with the dynamically scalable and virtualized resources provided as a service through the network. So network plays a crucial role, and resources, they are, you can say, dynamically scalable in the sense that as and when I require maybe 1 TB of storage, next day I may require 1.5 TB of storage, so there is a possibility of scaling. Similarly, next day my requirement reduces to 0.8 TB, I can subscribe that. Similarly, requirement of say computing resource. Today I require so many CPU cycles, tomorrow my requirement may differ, and it changes with the passage of time. So as per the requirement, we can subscribe the resources. Now these resources, they are virtualized in the nature. We are not, we can say, aware that where is my server, or from which particular CPU I am getting the CPU cycles, which particular maybe storage, SAN, NAS, or you can say whatever you can say get technologies which are installed at the service provider end are providing me the services. So we are not bothered, and at the front end through different say interactive tools we can subscribe to the resources. So objective is that we have to use the resources, and environment is highly dynamic. We treat it as a virtual kind of environment. Maybe we assume that physically I am allocated a machine, but in actual it may be, you can say, part of the machine or part of the resource. So that way the resources, they are virtual in nature, and there is strong use of network. So unless networking is there, we cannot realize, or we cannot make use of cloud environment. So over the years, if we talk of the scenario, then how evolution of sharing on the internet. So if we talk of cloud computing, so there we use or we share the resources, maybe computing, storage, we make use of, we can say, sharing of even applications, we share the power also. Whereas other environments are there where generally subset of such issues are shared. For example, if you talk of grid computing, then maybe we are making use of software for we can say remote execution. Similarly, World Wide Web is there where pages, they can be shared, and this sharing may be one-sided, that whatever you can say resource lying, we can visualize the resources, but we are not having control to say execute some application which is part of the server, and so on. So with the passage of time, there has been use of, you can say, sharing of resources. And when we talk of cloud environment, so there we make use of resources as listed in the previous slide. Now benefits, of course, we have to talk of reduced capital expenditure. As I told that when we talk of cloud computing environment, we need not to spend much upon the initial infrastructure. Just we can subscribe the existing infrastructure from the service provider, so capital expenditure is minimized. We can go for use of I can say infrastructure which is maintained by others, and people, they can subscribe as service. Then it is scalable. Similarly, other issues are like cost effective and so on. So these are, you can say, different benefits even in terms of security. For example, if we maintain some infrastructure at our office or at home, in order to have security, we have to talk of, you can say, so many investments in terms of hardware, maybe firewall, UTM, etc. We have to talk in terms of different software patches or protocols. But if we talk of, you can say, having this infrastructure being maintained by some well-known service providers, so they will be taking care of security. So that way, if my data is lying on the storage or the server which is located at well-secure premise, I will be not worrying about the security, whether logical or the physical. So that way we can assume that the environments, they are secure. But again, security issues, they are coming on the way, and data is being transmitted from the user end to the cloud environment. Because we are talking about security maybe at the premise of the cloud service provider, but how to ensure the security on the way. Now, if we talk of scenarios where different heterogeneous devices are there, or we talk of, we can say, IoT being used at uh, different layers of the uh, network, maybe edge layer or at intermediate layer, then heterogeneity is there in terms of devices, in terms of software platforms, in terms of operating systems, in terms of maybe configuration of the devices, and moreover, there is no ownership, there is no single control on these devices or over the network, as in case of well-known, in case of internet. Now, if there is no control of an individual, how to ensure that whatever you can say data transmitted, it will be transmitted over the secure network. So we should take care of that, and that way there are different research issues. Similarly, we have to talk of, we can say, management, how resources they are to be managed. Now, there may be the case that, again, due to heterogeneity, whether networking or whether computing, the resources may not always be available. We have to talk of even disconnected operations and so on. So that way, there are, you can say, different research challenges. Research challenges are even due to, you can say, large number of devices. Similarly, these devices, they are contributing, you can say, huge volume of traffic or huge volume of data. Traffic means the load on the network, and that load is not fixed one. It is, say, dynamic, depending upon maybe the type of applications we are using. So cloud computing, other benefits are, say, it mitigates the risks of over provisioning and under provisioning. I will discuss them. For example, there may be some requirement of the resources, but we cannot plan it properly. So say we require some particular server, but we may go for, you can say, the server of higher capacity. Similarly, there is some requirement, but we may go for, you can say, server of other infrastructure of lower capacity. So there is issue of over provisioning. This means just overestimation, and under provisioning means we are underestimating, and accordingly we can, or we will be going for infrastructure that is not as per our requirement. No upfront cost invest on other aspects like marketing, technology, etc. No need to, you can say, just go for different issues involved in, you can say, procurement, issues involved in, you can say, support of technologies. For example, if some server is to be installed at data center of the local say campus, then we have to worry about air conditions, we have to worry about, you can say, uninterrupted power supply and so on. But if we talk of cloud environment, the issues are not there, and maintenance cost, of course, is lower. So we are saving in terms of money, we are saving in terms of say time, and that way the overall solution that we get is, you can say, at a reduced cost. So this is example of you can say over provisioning. For example, say this is the capacity that we have invested, and maybe our requirement is dynamic, and this is the maximum peak that we go for. So just making less use of the available or the created infrastructure. Similarly, we can go for under provisioning, where requirement is higher as compared to whatever infrastructure we invest or infrastructure we install. And this is the outcome as per, or this is the trend as per cloud computing environment, that is, we go for the requirement depending upon our demand. So on demand and it is scalable. As you require higher resources, we can subscribe. Similarly, as we require less resources, we can reduce our requirement, and the subscriptions, they can be modeled accordingly. Now, this was, you can say, maybe from perspective of user, but if you talk of engineering perspective, so issues are there, and emerging computing paradigm where data and services reside in massively scalable data centers and can be ubiquitously accessed from any connected device over the internet. So idea is that we have, you can say, resources which are lying at remote location. They are scalable resources, but from front end they are to be accessed. So engineering issues, they are cropping up. For example, the devices may be something millions or billions of phones are there, or smaller devices are there. Similarly, we talk of, you can say, maybe the sensor nodes today. We talk of, you can say, web enabled devices or IoT enabled things like PCs, TVs, maybe refrigerator, etc. Similarly, we talk of maybe vehicles which are part of vehicular area ad hoc network, or VANET. We talk of maybe sensor nodes which are part of any field deployment in hostile environment. Similarly, we talk of bigger servers which are located in some enterprise. So all these devices and technologies, they are heterogeneous in nature, and they are part of the network. Now, how to ensure, say, foolproof, or how to ensure communication so that protocol which is sitting at one device is able to talk to other device which is having different hardware and software standards. Similarly, if data is to be shared by some bigger machine, how that data can be pushed onto the network or onto the cloud, and how that data can be obtained maybe at tiny devices like mobile phones. Now, these two devices, they are not matching in their capabilities, and therefore we have to take care of workflow, we have to take care of information flow, and so on. At the same time, security has to be ensured. So there are, you can say, issues that come into picture when we talk of integration of such technologies and devices. So when we talk of such environment, issues are, where is my information, or where is my data, who controls it, who has access, who is being, how it is being used, is it being shared with, whether someone is, you can say, sharing the data, or even whether my network connection is being shared, then who is looking out for my interest. So who is there? Because if there is no ownership, then how my data is uh, traveling over the network, where it is maintained, how it is maintained, are the issues which are or which bother an individual. So these are the issues. Now I will talk about some of the research challenges which are existing in, say, uh, conventional computing environment, and how these issues, they become complex when we talk of say cloud environment. So major issue is about resource management. So resource may be the physical resource, for example, computer, storage, database, network, etc. And logical resources are like applications, then workflow. So how these resources, they are managed, how they are say shared with others. So objective is resources must be available and meet performance criteria, whatever you can say, objective functions let down. For example, say there may be the requirement that this particular application should execute within given threshold time, so that we can ensure real time, or we can ensure say online requirement of the application, or online processing requirement of the data. So how to maintain the resource, how to say allocate the resources is the challenge. So if we focus upon or we recall about conventional operating system, we have seen that resources are like CPU, resources are like our main memory, similarly even secondary storage, that is a resource. So these resources generally they are allocated to different processes which are part of the same system. When processes they are part of different systems, then the resource allocation is a highly dynamic and complex scenario, because here the user requirement may change, or there may be the case that particular user is connected, its application or process is executing at the, you can say, cloud server. In the meantime, that user is disconnected. So maybe the process is not available for execution. So there will be imbalance in the load at different CPUs. Then how to say do the load balancing? At the same time, there may be the case that uh, maybe particular process is executing at particular CPU, then during the execution maybe the CPU fails. So how to migrate the executing process from one CPU to another? So there comes the issue. The problem becomes much more complex. That is how to migrate the processes. So migration of processes during the execution is big challenge when we talk of such environment. So maybe we have to go for different checkpointing protocols. We have to take care of uh, the point from where the execution was halted. What is the status of, you can see, the result, temporary results, what are the data which is maintained in different registers. So all these temporary, that is, as we do in case of conventional process execution, we talk about PSW, that is process status word. So how we can maintain this kind of PSW for cloud environment, and how process can be migrated from one CPU or from one machine to another. So open issues are, say, multiple layers of schedulers. The higher layer level scheduler has less information about remote resources. Local resource managers actually control the resources. So when we talk of local machine, this means the conventional, say, machine where operating system is there and it is trying to manage the resources. But when we talk of, you can say, cloud environment, so different levels or layers of, you can say, scheduling we have to use. Now, at cloud environment, we are not aware that what is happening at lower layer. Lower layer, even they may correspond to remote users. So remote users, they are generating the data or they are generating the processes, and according to these processes, they are to be migrated or they are to be communicated to the remote server. They are to be executed there. So there has to be well synchronization between different or among different layers of schedulers. Then lack of control over the resources. Cloud scheduler does not have ownership or control over the resources. Because the resources, they may be physically located in different areas, and hence it is difficult to have, we can say, common control. Similarly, shared resources and uh, their variance may be there. So no dedicated access to the resources, because resources, they are shared, and they cannot be allocated to one user or one process as a dedicated resource. So how to ensure sharing of resources? Now we have seen that in conventional system, issues like deadlock situation is there. So how to resolve deadlock, which is a part of, you can say, the network. So maybe the conventional deadlock resolving techniques, they are not uh, much useful, and we have to talk of, we can say, different techniques which are suitable to the environment in order to resolve the issue. Then there may be conflicting and say different target oriented goals. For example, many participants have different conflicting preferences. Say multiple users, they are making use of same CPU or multiple CPUs, then they can dictate their requirement that my process or program should execute within threshold time T1. Then another user may also dictate the requirement that my programs or processes they should execute within time T2, where T1 and T2 they have, you can say, maybe delta T time is overlapping in among them. Now, how to ensure that if the requirement from different locations or from different users are there, then how to meet out the deadlines. So issues are there. Similarly, there may be conflicting requirements in terms of memory, in terms of other resources. So that way there are issues with the execution and say handling of applications and processes. So I already talked about, you can say, deadline constraint applications that when we talk of, you can say, conflicting requirements from different users. So how to ensure that the user requirement, which is having, say, given deadline, will be honored. If we are not able to honor that deadline, or if we accept the request that yes, the deadline will be met, but later on we realize that there is huge load on the uh, server, and maybe we are not able to meet all the deadline. So how to, say, search for new resource, how to locate the optimal or better resource so that this particular job or program can be migrated from current resource or from current CPU to another resource so that deadline can be honored. Similarly, uh, issues related with the costing are there. For example, if some resource is being used which may be costly, then depending upon the requirement and depending upon the, you can say objective functions, taking into account the cost, uh, the data or resource may be allocated as per the requirement of the user. So in addition to, you can say, processor jobs, then resources may be the memory or hard disk. There is a requirement of connectivity. So we have to talk of, you can say, maybe connectivity, which is uh, uh, stronger available in terms of physical resource. Then we have to talk of maybe connectivity at application layer. We have to talk of, you can say, connectivity in terms of data. For example, data may be located at other location, and accordingly that has to be migrated, or how data bases are used, and how different fragments or different parts of databases they may be say maintained at different locations in terms of replicas of data, so that deadlines or whatever, you can say, targets for different users, they can be fulfilled. So generally how this is the environment looks like when we talk of cloud environment, and how different resources, then issue of connectivity comes into picture. So resources, they are available physically at different locations, and at the premise it may be private kind of cloud. In that case, maybe connectivity issue is not much prominent, because we talk in terms of local area networking. When we talk of, you can say, maybe public cloud, or we talk of enterprise cloud, which is remotely located. In that case, connectivity is a prominent issue. Then we have to talk of techniques that how to ensure that the volume of data that has to travel from one place will be traveling as per the requirement of the applications, because application or the CPU may be faster in order to execute the application. The application requirement is such that the data should be available at this particular point of time, but maybe data will be coming from remote location, it is not available. So how to ensure that data is replicated at multiple locations so that we can have a copy from the nearby location. Then similarly, how the results which require maybe some intervention from the user should be populated to the user so that user is able to visualize the data and accordingly make further decisions. So there are, you can say, issues related with the logical workflow as well as hardware infrastructure or the physical infrastructure required to say exchange the resources from one part to another. So of course networking issues are there, so we require a network, and there should be strong internet or network connection. So we have to ensure that we have or we are available with strong connectivity and we are able to have consistent connectivity between the user, between the data, between the application and the service premise, so that data can be exchanged at faster speed. At the same time, we have to ensure that data is safely traveling over the network, so security concerns, they also come into picture. So different networking issues are there, like advantages are distributed denial of service protection, VLAN capabilities, we can exploit that, how our data can be, I can say, ensured to be to travel over such kind of dedicated links between the user and the service provider, so we can make use of VLANs. Then in case of cloud environment, because the cloud servers, storage, etc., they will be installed at safer locations, we can ensure or we can assume that the physical as well as logical security is maintained. Physical security means it is free from maybe natural disasters, and at the same time logical security, so huge investment has to be made, or sufficient investment has to be made in terms of say firewall, in terms of UTM, etc., to have licensing for, we can say, cloud service provider. Now, because already we have well-defined infrastructure in terms of hardware and software in place, so there is no need to worry with the user, or user need not to go for, you can say, separate subscription for security purposes. And challenges nowadays, we talk in terms of maybe application mobility is there, as a user may move from one location, the application may move from one location to another, so mobility adds additional layer of complexity in comparison to whatever we have discussed in just now, that related to processes, related to migration of data, related to processing, related to security. Mobility becomes an overhead, so that data can be migrated or data can be provided at a new location of the user. Now, user here does not mean the human being, it may be the machine. For example, if we talk of vehicle being part of the network, then vehicle may move from one location to another, and that way we have to ensure that data is made available to the vehicle as per the requirement. So when we talk of these issues, the networking scenarios such that we have to deal in terms of IP addresses, we have to deal in terms of bandwidth, we have to deal in terms of maybe different types of network. So how to ensure that different machines, they are able to get IP address as and when they become part of the network. So we have to talk of, you can say, maybe provisioning of IP addresses to individual device as they become part of the network. And when we talk of uh, maybe scenarios like IoT, where a number of devices or number of um, uh, or even varieties of devices, they are differing in nature, so a lot of heterogeneity is there, and how to ensure that these devices, they are having some naming conventions or they are having some unique identity so that they can be part of the network. So this uniqueness is required to become part of the network. So maybe IPv4 is not the right solution, and hence we have to migrate to IPv6, and IPv6 addresses, they are to be assigned to the things so that they can be part of the network. Now I will give some idea about IoT, and later on we'll talk that how integration of both leads to, you can say, uh, maybe better services, but at the same time how it increase the uh, uh, you can say research issues and challenges. So IoT is the network of physical objects, devices, vehicles, building, and other items embedded with electronics, software, sensors, and network connectivity that enables these objects to collect and exchange data. So here, as we discussed, that it is combination of, we can say, different devices, whether electronic or non-electronic, and they are being made of part of the network, but there is requirement that they have to exchange the data. This means, again, there is requirement of strong connectivity. And when we talk of, we can say, huge number of such devices becoming part of the network, this means the volume of data generated is quite high, and maybe the traffic situation in some part of the network may become so difficult to handle. So here this shows chronology that how the slide talks about or shows that how different devices or different things, whether they are electronic or they are non-electronic, whether they are already having capability to connect to the network, or they are to be enabled in the future in order to be part of the network, are targeted as part of Internet of Things. So idea is that everything, every household that we think of, maybe my pen, mobile phone, maybe some book, some chair, table, whatever you can say, things we are using or we are encountering, they are to become part of the network. So idea is that these devices or these things, they will be part of the network. We can find out their status, we can control their status, and maybe if something is missing, for example, if my pen is missing, some unique identity is there, and I can have, you can say, some uh, initiate some search and find out the location of the pen. Or similarly, there may be, you can say, maybe the key is there which I have missed, I can locate that key. Similarly, there may be some chair. I'm not aware in which particular lecture hall that particular chair is lying at present. So depending upon maybe identity with the associated with the chair, say IP address, we can search it, and accordingly we can have idea about its location. Then even we can say find out the status whether particular chair has been occupied by the user or not. Similarly, if we talk of maybe some seat in the bus or maybe some berth in the train, whether that has been occupied or not, we can have idea, and accordingly uh, uh, its location as well as uh, status can be found. So in order to make this, say, connectivity and interconnection of devices a reality, maybe we have to go far, you can say, different wireless use of different wireless technologies. At the same time, we have to think of, you can say, making use of wired technologies also. So different wire technologies, whether depending upon say copper or using say optical fiber, they have to coexist at the back end, and at the front end we have to make use of different flavors of wireless technologies, whether we talk in terms of maybe Bluetooth, we talk in terms of local area network like 802.11 standards, or we talk of uh, maybe the technologies available on handset side like 2G, 3G, 4G. Then we talk of maybe technologies available at access points in terms of uh, connectivity. Then there may be technologies for, you can say, uh, like metropolitan area counterpart like WiMAX, etc. So all these technologies, they are contributing technologies for IoT. And when we talk of integration of IoT with the cloud, then maybe wired technologies again they become uh, or they play the key role, because the data has to migrate over huge pipe of or thick pipe of, you can say, fiber, so that big volume of data can be transported from one end to another end. So at the front end we have to talk of flexible wireless technologies or mobile technologies, but at the back end we have to talk of, you can say, strong or thick wired technologies. So this is the slide that gives an idea that different look, you can say, uh, applications we can think of where IoT can be used or is being used. For example, we can talk of something building management. So in building, some water tap may be there, or maybe some other doors are there, windows are there, so they can be controlled uh, by making them as part of the network. So uh, similarly, there may be some surveillance system, so that if I am at different location, I can have idea about the camera, or I can even control the camera. If mechanical movement is allowed, then I can zoom it, I can pan, tilt it, and similarly, we can make use of maybe sensor technologies for studying the health of particular building. Within the build, you can say wall, but sensors, they can be embedded, and they will be you can say capturing different physical conditions. And if some crack or some maybe fault develops in the wall, then sensors, they will be sending the data, and accordingly data can be analyzed, and we can have idea that something is going wrong. Similarly, some bridge may be there, we can study whether the bridge is safe for vehicles or not. So continuous data can be captured, and about the health of the bridge information can be obtained as per the data can say supplied by the sensors, and that data can be processed. Now, if we talk of, you can say, different such scenarios, then uh, we find that huge number of devices, they are contributing for the technology. And if more the number of devices, this means there is issue of uh, assigning them IP addresses, there is issue of assigning them identity so that they can be made part of the network, as well as there is a huge volume of traffic or data that will be generated. Now, how to ensure that strong connectivity is there? So different wireless technologies, they have to play the role, and hence, in order to integrate the technologies, IoT and cloud environment, the role of wireless technologies and mobile technologies is major, because they have to extend the connectivity. And if we are dependent upon maybe only the wired technology, that then flexibility at the front end will not be there. We cannot put different sensors which are wireless in nature as part of the network. So every sensor has to be wired one, which is uh, not you can say, as per the requirement of application scenario, because the sensors, they can be deployed in hostile environment where it is difficult to wire them or difficult to feed them with the continuous power supply. So therefore, there is a use of say wireless technologies, and whatever you can say revolution which has been there in wireless networking or communication the recent past, that is becoming a major contributor for support of IoT, for support of, you can say, making IoT as part of network, then providing services at the back end by IoT, by a cloud environment. This is about, you can say, the environment that, or the issues, those we have been evolved over the years. So already we have discussed them. Then in terms of, say, IoT, and in terms of maybe in other counterpart technologies like pervasive computing, ubiquitous computing. So initially the concept was centralized, maybe bigger mainframe computer is there, or say other supercomputer is there, so that is providing service to number of users. So it is maintained at one place and then being used by multiple people at that place only. So there is a centralized concept. Then distributor concept came later on during 90s, that different maybe desktops or PCs, they can be clustered together in order to have computing power, which is almost at par with the, say, centralized computing power like mainframe. So maybe 1000 computers or desktops, they can be combined in order to have cluster environment technologies like tile technology, or there are, you can say, again, concept of grid computing is also byproduct of that scenario. So different devices, they can be combined together physically as well as logically, so that they can work in cooperation, and they will produce better and faster results. Then thereafter, of course, the role of internet, then mobile scenario is there. So today we talk of transport technologies, we talk of maybe sensor technologies, and in you can say recent years we have started talking of, you can say, putting these technologies, or maybe computing and communication, being embedded in everything, so that there is concept of Internet of Things, and they have capacity of computing as well as communication. And now there is requirement of cloud environment in order to meet our huge requirement of storage, to meet huge requirement of data processing required from such a large number of devices, maybe the sensor nodes, the vehicles, the mobile phones, and similarly the bigger devices like desktops, mainframes, servers, etc. Okay, so wireless standards, you may be having idea that so many standards are available, and they are having or being available with devices like mobile phones, tabs, pads, then PDAs, etc. And they can afford, say, data transfer up to few Gbps, even at, if we talk of, we can say, say richer devices. Otherwise, up to few Mbps, almost every device is able to afford. So similarly, we talk, or there is a contribution of 4G, which is convergence of all the technologies, 2G, 3G, 2.5G, and so on. So all, you can say, technologies, whether in terms of wireless interfaces or in terms of other flavors existing on devices like mobile phones, they contribute to what we call as 4G. So this 4G plays major role, and that way there is concept of overlay networking or overlay technologies on devices. For example, at my mobile phone, different networking interfaces are available, say Bluetooth, and then 2G, 2.5G, 3G, 4G, then Wi-Fi is there, which has different flavors, maybe 802.11, um, G is there, and even N is there. Nowadays we talk of AC or AX technologies. So it is, you can say, combination or say integration of different wireless interfaces and mobile technologies. So such integration is called overlay technology. But issue is that depending upon the requirement, which particular interface has to be used, because different interfaces, they may consume different levels of resources. For example, for transmission, for making a call, it may consume uh, different levels of power. So hardly any application is there which intelligently can decide that this particular interface is best one for this particular requirement. So that kind of applications we have to talk of. We have to talk of, you can say, intelligent applications which can make a decision that if I want to send small text message, maybe 2G will be sufficient. If I want to transmit some multimedia message, then what particular interface has to be used. So there is lack of such intelligent applications at present. So given the scenarios, whether we talk of, you can say, maybe uh, wireless or mobile kind of interfaces, we can have different types of collaboration of devices. So there may be collaboration which may make use of some wired technology that is called infrastructure based, and there may be cooperation which may require use of purely or which uses only wireless technologies or wireless interfaces, that is cooperative kind of network. So or ad hoc kind of network. So different applications, for example, rescue team or even warfare or somewhere, we can make use of such technologies, and that way different application areas are there. Even we can think of 5G in the future, which will provide, you can say, even stronger connectivity or bandwidth as compared to 4G. So if it is provided, then maybe in near future, if we can think of making cloud environment, more use of cloud environment for multimedia applications also. That rather than cable kind of TV, every TV will be purely, you can say, wireless, based upon wireless technologies. Similarly, if I want to subscribe to some, say, TV serials, depending upon the demand, they will be played as per my requirement. Then there may be that the cases that even lecture notes, etc., to the students, they will be available on mobile phones and almost in real time. So this is a snapshot where vehicles on the highway, they can form a network, and that network generally is called PANIT, used for the purpose of intelligent transportation system, ITS. So here different standards or different technologies, different applications are there. Issues are in terms of handling of data at service provider called RSU, roadside units, how to broadcast the data, how to schedule different requests. If something goes bad, how you can say that is some accident occurs, how information can be passed to hospital, to ambulances, etc. If traffic scenario is such that there is some congestion in part of the highway, how cooperatively vehicles, they can pass that information, so that if being maybe 5 kilometers away from that particular location, my vehicle may alert the driver that alternate route can be taken. So that is the objective. Similarly, other objectives are there. For example, if you're driving on the highway, if frequent lane changes there, what is the safe we can say, lane to be used during the driving. If there is some hilly region that some vehicle is coming on the turns, and how we can have forehand information about the, we can say, other side. So maybe these are the future applications where such technologies can be used. So they are making, or there is a scope of say wireless as well as sensor technologies. For example, if we talk of, we can say, lane change, if we talk of uh, having information on the turn, then maybe surveillance cameras, then sensor nodes or sensor technologies, they are to uh, be integrated so that the vehicle on the dashboard will be giving a picture of other side of the turn. So that way different technologies are to be integrated, and it will be effectively contributing to intelligent transportation system. But uh, again, there is requirement of, we can say, processing, there is requirement of exchange of data. So connectivity has to be ensured. Then there has to be sufficient processing capability with the devices which are maybe installed on the dashboard of the vehicle, so that they can process the data. And if RSUs, they have to send some data, then that data again has to be ensured to be delivered almost in real time, so that it is available to the vehicle almost in real time, and accordingly strategic planning or decisions they can be made. So and maybe objective is something like driverless cars. So already in some labs the work is going on, and people, they are working in this area. Then there is another kind of wireless technology where we make use of indoor and outdoor access points for data as well as voice communication. So this ensures that there is strong connectivity among the devices, and users are provided connectivity at all the places. So generally these technologies, they are concentrated to particular campus or particular region where huge number of users are there or devices are there, and they are to be provided service. So it has got different objectives. One of the objective may be to provide intercom of kind of facilities, so that service need not to be routed through service provider. So without making use of service providers, the data and voice, they can be communicated by making use of local infrastructure. So such kind of devices and technologies, again, they generate huge amount of data. And if some decision are to be taken, even maybe at private cloud, then data has to be communicated to those servers, or it has to be stored. Then according data has to be processed, the results, they are to be communicated back. So it requires strong connectivity and uh, resources like for the purpose of computing, storage, etc. Of course, sensor technologies where we make use of sensors or tiny devices for the purpose of networking. They are having applications in areas, for example, habitat monitoring, or serving military field, reporting radiation level at some nuclear plants, or maybe at the location where it is difficult to deploy some other devices, or human deployment is not possible. Uh, there may be location such that we want to study what is the level of pollution in terms of maybe carbon monoxide. So human deployment is not possible in those locations, and accordingly deployment may be there of the sensors. They will be sensing physical conditions, and accordingly data can be sent to the user. Then similarly applications may be there for purpose of, we can say, fire detection, landslides, even in farming, etc. So huge amount of uh, traffic or data is generated due to these applications. Now, depending upon uh, the type of application we have to decide whether that data has to be sent to the faraway servers or only some summarized data is to be sent. So we can make use of machine learning or AI techniques or data mining techniques in order to extract the useful information from huge volume of data, and the smaller summarized information or abstract information can only be migrated or transmitted to remote locations, so that uh, we can reduce the volume which is to be transmitted. But there may be cases where or applications where whole data is to be migrated. For example, there may be some requirement security perspective. Then in that case, the huge volume will be transmitted. So there is requirement of strong connectivity. So maybe wired and wireless technologies, they are to be used for transmission of data. Then on the cloud side or on the server side, there is requirement that their data has to be processed or that data has to be stored. So there is strong requirement of storage and CPU cycle. So data will be processed. The results, they are again to be communicated to the field. So they will be communicated over, you can say, wired and wireless technologies. So different technologies, they are working in cooperation with each other, and hence we cannot say that cloud environment will be working in isolation, or maybe IoT or sensor technologies, they have to work in isolation. So we will be making use of, you can say, these technologies, but in between there is a huge requirement of computing and communication resources. So cooperation of different technologies, and hence their integration is essential. So when we talk of integration, issues related with the, say, exchange of data, related with how they will be talking to each other, how they will be making use of different protocols is a challenge. So as we understand that in case of networking, when different two types of protocols, for example, if we IPv4 and IPv6, they talk to each other, we talk in terms of tunneling, we talk of, you can say, different maybe data or application hiding techniques, so that exchange is possible. So similarly, if we talk of heterogeneity, uh, maybe at device level, at application layer, at operating system, at networking layer, at the level of servers, etc., then a lot of complexities, they arise, and accordingly there has to be provision or there has to be technical solution to the problem, that how different devices or different technologies, they are talking and uh, exchanging the data. So some examples where we can make use of IoT. So any scenario we talk of, but idea is that a lot of devices are there or a lot of things are there which are part of the network. If these devices, they are part of the network, how to, say, assign them identity like IP address, how to take care of data which is generated if they are having constant computing and storage resources, how that data can be migrated to, say, servers, how data can be stored on the server, is the research challenge. And if we talk of, you can say, maybe distributed, because this environment is highly distributed, if we talk of such distributed environment, how process management, how different resources they are to be allocated, deallocated, how say security issues are to be addressed, all these concerns, they become much more complex. If we talk large in terms of large devices, we talk in terms of large volume of data, or we talk in terms of, you can say, heterogeneity uh, in terms of hardware and software. Of course, when we talk of IoT, there is requirement of, you can say, connectivity of devices and then exchange of data. So discussing different technologies are present, but at the same time, complexity increases in terms of handling of the issues, in terms of addressing some issues for which there is no solution at present. So this slide displays that how from the first phase providing the service, and second phase is machine is shared and data is shared at different locations. So it can be processing, and if there is another machine on other side, even data can be say presented to the user as a result. So third phase is say cloud one. So initially we are having standalone machines, second phase use of network, and third phase suppose we talk of cloud environment. So where data can be submitted for processing at different locations. So data is there at different locations. Similarly, applications, they can be shared. So different applications, they can process the data. It will be generating some results, and there is two-way communication between resources. Then if we talk of IoT, then the user end is not having, say, simple computing machines, but it is having different devices. For example, aeroplane is there, some warfare tank may be part of the. Similarly, even table, chair, vehicle, whatever you can say, we can think of has to be part of the network. If such heterogeneity is there, research issues are of course complex in nature, because whatever you can say, processing capability available with the maybe sensor node is not available with the or it is different than whatever available with the laptop. Similarly, and available way different devices are there.
Hello.
हाँ sir.
Okay, sir. Actually, not audible. I think network issue.
लग रहा है सर यार कुछ अभी सर
Okay.
है मीटिंग.
I think participant, please wait 1 or 2 minutes. I
Please,
think
please,
there is
please, please wait. Please wait. Please wait. Hello, sir. If you are listening, sir, you are not audible. Sir, please check your microphone setting. I think it is off.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now it is fine, sir.
Yeah, by default it was set off. Okay.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Screen is available.
Yes, sir. Screen is available, sir.
So when disconnection was there, this slide was.
Next slide, sir.
Yes,
sir. Yes, sir. We are discussing the fourth phase, cloud and IoT of this.
Okay. So I will continue from this point onward.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, there was some disconnection problem. So maybe up to third phase, it was clear that during third phase we talked that application and data, they can be shared, and there is two-way communication between the user and the application data. When we talk of fourth phase, huge number of devices are there, and there is variety of devices. For example, there may be some sensor on the front end, there may be some aeroplane, warfare, tank, computing device like desktop, similarly some camera, some table, chair, vehicle, etc. part of the network. So these devices, they contribute a lot of data, and their you can say applications, their protocols, they are different. So how to exchange data, how to make them communicate is one issue. Then how to take care of, you can say, huge volume of data is another issue. So there has to be strong connectivity between the device and maybe this cloud end. Then even security issues, they are much more complex. For example, there may be some army tank, which would like to exchange the data, but data has to be securely transmitted so that others are not able to interpret it. So there has to be strong connectivity. Prashant, is it okay?
Yes, sir. It is okay now.
Oh, okay, fine. So there has to be, we can say, strong encryption techniques so that others are not able to decrypt the data. But at the same time, when we talk of encryption, so how to exchange the keys? So key exchange or sharing of keys is big challenge, even in simple wireless scenarios. When we talk of maybe Wi-Fi or wireless local area networks, so key exchange is a big issue. It is an issue in case of sensor networks. And when we talk of such an environment where varieties of devices are there and large number of devices are there, we talk of open network where there is no single control and ownership, then it is a big challenge. So how to address these issues, we have to think. So another requirement was in terms of assigning unique identifiers or names or identities to the user, to the maybe devices. So existing technology in terms of IPv4 is not having, say, capacity sufficient to meet all the requirements. So maybe we have to go for IPv6. So there is a comparison that how IPv6 will be able to meet all the requirement. So there is a huge scope of address space. Examples are given in this slide, and from here we can advise that we have sufficient number of addresses, and that way we can meet out the requirement of all the devices which will be part of IoT maybe today as well as in near future. So there is a huge, tremendous scope of, we can say, addressing the devices, and that way at least one problem, that how to assign identities to the devices which are part of IoT, and how these devices they will be connecting to the cloud environment, is solved. So IPv6 is one contributing technology. So today you can say or we are at the stage where devices they are compatible with IPv6. We can say TCP/IP protocol stack that has already provisioned for IPv6. So all devices like our mobile phones and networking equipment or switches, routers, etc., they are coming. You can say fitted with this technology. Now, another issue is that how to address the resource constraints. So resources which are available or with maybe smaller devices like sensors, then we talk even PDAs, etc. So there is requirement of memory, then hard disk processing speed. So if we focus upon these technologies, they have substantially progressed in recent past. For example, maybe um, uh, storage capacity, if our main memory has increased at the rate of maybe or by the factor of 10 during last 15-20 years. Similarly, if you talk of hard disk, it has increased at or improved at larger pace, and accordingly, if we take example of processing speed, it has also improved. As per Gordon-Murray law, the capacity of processing has to double every 18 months, but we have not gone with that technology, and it has been discontinued with, I can say, multi-core architecture. So objective is differing there, that rather than having single core, we can have multiple cores so that we can switch on as per the requirement and we can save the resources. But if you focus upon battery or power as a resource, then the technology has not progressed with that pace. So therefore, something we have to do, we have to optimize this resource in terms of hardware, or we have to optimize this in terms of software, so that that is software tools or software algorithms, so that we can improve or we can optimize this resource. So therefore, objective becomes that how to use say optimal algorithms or power conserving or energy efficient algorithms at different levels or technologies at different levels and layers. So this kind of scenario can be seen for wireless say cards, for network interface cards, similarly at operating system. So generally when we talk of energy consumption, it is proportion to the frequency at which particular device operates. So higher the speed, lower is the higher is the consumption of resources. So how we can reduce the frequency? So one solution is, rather than going for single core architecture with larger frequency, that is one machine operating at maybe rather than operating at 10 gigahertz, we talk of multi-core architecture, so that machines, they do operate at lower speed, but they are larger in number, that is large number of cores we are using. So there we can optimize the resource. For example, if my requirement is something 5.6 gigahertz and I have, say, CPUs operating at 1 gigahertz, but multi-core is there, so I can put 6 CPUs on. Here are 64 CPUs may be there, and depending upon the requirement, say rest of the CPUs, they will be switched off. So therefore, they will be conserving the resource. Similarly, we can have such kind of provisioning at all levels. That is, we talk maybe at hardware level or at physical layer. So we today talk of thin technologies, we talk of VLSI techniques, we talk in terms of say configurable computing, so that resources, they can be optimized. So even for the purpose of communication, we talk of, you can say, maybe techniques which have less interference or noise interference when we talk in terms of communication. So similarly, in terms of computing, we can optimize the resources by reducing the leakage current, or we can optimize the voltages. We can talk of, we can say, better say PN junctions, etc. So those people who are involved at hardware level, they talk in terms of such researches at present. So maybe in the near future, technologies will be there where we can think of optimizing the say power requirement at physical layer. Then at higher level, when we talk of architecture level, we talk in terms of parallel processing, pipelining, etc. So we are aware that such uh, techniques, they can produce faster results, they can reduce the resource requirement. Similarly, we can think of techniques, maybe software uh, tools like compilers, editors, etc. So if you focus upon, you can say simple writing of code, then if you go into detail of that code, we can think that how much switches are there or how much jumps are there when data is to be read from different locations of main memory. So if we write a simple for loop, then it will even make impact. So how to optimize it, that is again a concern. So therefore, system level programming that can be concentrated, and accordingly we can write our code more optimal so that we can reduce the delays, we can reduce the even power requirement to read data, to write data, to process the data. Similarly, at operating system level, we can think of, we can say provision of partitioning, compaction, then power down particular say portion of the hard disk or of the storage, so that we can optimize the we can say uh, use of available battery or available power. So therefore, by taking care at both hardware and up to the higher layer, we can save in terms of energy, or we can save power, which is otherwise a constrained resource when we talk of things which are contributing technologies or which are contributing devices to IoT. And hence, if we have to talk of integration of IoT and maybe the cloud environment, then most of the devices, they will be such devices which are not consistently fed with the battery power, and hence we have to optimize their battery. So that way, such issues, they can be considered and research can be directed with focus to these issues, and accordingly we can contribute for effectiveness of the technology. Of course, data security, I have talked much that this is again an issue. If we talk of, we can say wireless environment, then data security is much complex as compared to complex as well as critical as compared to wired counterpart, and issues like exchange of data, intrusion detection, and even in sensor network, that some compromised nodes, they can be placed, how to identify them. So all such issues are there which are to be addressed. And when we talk of IoT, then such devices, they will be large in number, such networks which are integrated together or combined together as a contributing technology to IoT or integration of IoT and cloud environment are large in number, and we have to take care of them because they don't have single control, they don't have a single use of protocol or similar protocol, and hence the issues, they are complex. So we have to be conscious that we are making use of such open network. So what data can be transmitted, what data can be migrated is the concern. So other issues are quality of services, then service level agreement, then what benchmarks can be taken in order to ensure that data is processed as per the requirement, then how green technology can be we can think of, that is how we can optimize the use of resources, battery, etc., so that it is not contributing as a harmful technology for the environment. So already we have talked much about integration of IoT and cloud so that we can reap the benefits. but at the same time issues are there. So issues they are to be considered in view of resource constraint objects or the things. So flexibility of resource allocation, more intelligent applications. We have to think of energy saving. I gave you idea that how it is a critical resource and how we have to think at different levels or layers. No on-site infrastructure is there because it is not a centralized kind of environment. Heterogeneity of smart environment. So it is heterogeneous in terms of devices, in terms of hardware, and similarly in terms of operating system, in terms of software tools, etc. Then scalability we have to talk of. Then of course virtualization issues there. So how to maintain it. So future challenges are there. Sometimes we don't go for say use of IP-based IP protocol. So maybe some naming conventions are to be used for naming of the devices. So how it can be done? So naming is one issue. Then other issues are there like we talk of interclours. So how to optimize the resources, how to migrate the jobs, how to take care of checkpoints, whatever I discussed during early part of my talk. Then security, how to ensure that geographically resources they are located such that we can ensure say delays, we can ensure other parameters within the given threshold values. So how to maintain, we can say, well-planned geo-distribution of devices and resources. Mobility, of course, is issue. Then we talk of application awareness has to be there with the devices. For example, same application if executing at different devices, say on mobile phone and say on sensor node, how it has to behave differently depending upon the context of the device or depending upon the resources available at the device. Similarly, big data is a challenge. We talk of heterogeneity in terms of data. It is structured plus unstructured from plus generated from different resources. So how it can be addressed. At the same time, highly dynamic data is there, high volume of data is there. Then we talk of, you can say, connected objects and interdisciplinary fusion services. So how different services they can be fused together so that for the purpose of maybe particular objective we can treat them similar and accordingly processing etc. can be done. So this is the you can say last slide. I would like to thank, and if any questions are there, I will be pleased to answer. So I try to, you can say, cover about background of cloud computing, then IoT, then how their integration is required and why integration has to be done, what are, you can say, contributing technologies for integration, and how as a byproduct research challenges they are emerging and how they become complex. So I try to describe it. Right. So any question?
Thank you, sir. Any question, participants?
Any questions from the participant?
I think there is no question. So I would like to thank you, sir, for your. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Hello. हाँ जी बोलिए.
Sir.
Sir, this is Dr. Mohit Kumar from IT department.
जी बोलिए मोहित जी.
Sir, I have some little bit doubt at the energy consumption. Sir, suppose there is a machine that have the high frequency, so it can consume the applications very fastly, but it consumes the more energy.
Yes.
And when we reduce the frequency, that will compute the application slowly, but energy consumption is low. So how to find a compromise solution between these two? That's the main.
Yeah. So as I told that, as per Gordon-Murray law, say computing speed generally doubles every 18 months. So this was the scenario maybe up to 10 years earlier, that we could have machines like operating at 1 gigahertz, 2 gigahertz, even up to 3 gigahertz, but that trend has been broken. Nowadays, we have thereafter moved to multi-core architecture. So generally, suppose there is requirement that, okay, particular application within the given threshold time, it requires, say, 3 gigahertz CPU cycles. Okay, then if we execute the same job on machine operating at 1 gigahertz, it will be, of course, taking more time and maybe energy still be higher. Fine, but I mean, the time and as per that time, the energy may be higher in terms of quantity. Now, if we operate a machine at 1.5 gigahertz or say 1 gigahertz, the power consumption will be that is CV square F. That is even B is if we work out internals, and B is proportional to F. So generally power consumption will be proportional to the F cube. So if we operate a machine at 1 gigahertz, it will be consuming power that is 1 raised to power 3 in the, you can say, order of 1 raised to power 3. If we operate a machine at 3 gigahertz, it will be consuming power at the rate 3 raised to power 3. So it will be much higher. But how to reduce the time? So we can go for multi-core architecture. We can have, say, 8 cores, for example, every core working at 1 gigahertz, and when there is requirement of 3 gigahertz, we will be putting 3 cores on. So it will be meeting all the requirement of 3 gigahertz. Now, what is the power consumption? Power consumption will be 3 times 1 raised to power 3. That is almost 3 units. Fine. Whereas in other case, it will be 3 raised to power 3. So this is the scenario, and this is how the research trend has changed in the recent past, that rather than using single core machine, the technology is making use of multi-cores, even on mobile phones, on desktops, on other, you can say, bigger devices like mainframes and supercomputers. So that way we can put other cores off, and only the cores which are required for the purpose of execution will be on. But issue is that how we have to divide our job into different parts so that it can be assigned to different cores. So here comes the role of, you can say, operating system. So of course, operating system has to play a bigger role so that jobs, they can be fragmented, and accordingly they can be assigned to different CPUs. So this is how the technology works at present.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello. Sir, one question.
Okay.
Hello. Sir, can we consider IoT as the extension to cloud computing?
No, it cannot be considered. It is not extension. Basically, IoT generally is extension of sensor technology. So a lot of sensors, they are being used. In addition to those sensors, we make use of other vehicles or things as part of network. Now, this is one technology which is generating huge volume of data, and there is requirement to store that data. So how to process the data and how to store that data? So there is need of, you can say, a technology which is almost centralized in nature, which has, you can say, got huge capacity at particular central location in order to store the data and to process that data. So these two technologies, they can be integrated together. So these are two different technologies. One is highly distributed, other is highly, you can say, centralized or concentrated technology. But in between, strong connectivity because of today's years earlier. But we can think today because of, you can say, strong wireless and wired technologies for the purpose of communication. So these two technologies, they are different in nature, but they can be integrated for, you can say, purpose of, we can say, meeting or the requirement of computing, the storage, and other one which otherwise economically driven or financial motivation, you can say, commercial motivation is that they have to attract more number of users and more number of data to be processed. So that is the objective of cloud computing, whereas the objective of sensor technologies and IoT is to generate huge amount of data and to process and store that data. So these two technologies, they can be integrated, and accordingly they will be making use of each other.
Okay. Sir, I mean, is there any load balancing algorithm, especially in case of the IoT? So,
pardon me.
Do we have any load balancing in IoT? These things.
Do we have any
load balancing, sir? Can we do load balancing in IoT, because there are more number of resources from where
load balancing is required when we talk of, we can say, making use of CPU, okay, for the purpose of execution. For example, CPU should not be highly loaded, and other is, you can say, lightly loaded, so that imbalance is there, and that imbalance will increase the delays and cost of execution. So load balancing requirement is generally on the side of cloud environment, rather than more prominent being.
Hello.
I think again we have lost the connection. So, so thanks participants, and we must thanks Professor Narottam Chand for his informative talk over cloud integration with the IoT. So participants, thank you, and we will see you in the morning session tomorrow.
सर को थैंक यू बोल दे भाई.
मैं फोन कर लेता हूँ सर.
ठीक है ओके. थैंक यू पार्टिसिपेंट. Tomorrow we'll meet at 10:45. ठीक है सर, थैंक यू.
Okay sir, thank you.
Okay.